Hi, welcome back guys. This is your friend, the D and WhatIf, with another fanfiction. This is the movie of what if Deku's past is exposed during a fight against class 1 degrees Celsius for an exercise. All credits for this video go to their respective authors, so please support the real author. Check out the link in the description for more details. Please give this video a like and subscribe to the channel if you want more videos like this. Now let's get into the fanfic. Izuku woke up excited. It's been a while since he had been happy by waking up. It was just him and mom before, but now he had 20 people to share his morning with. The dorms were the best decision that the school had ever made. They got to bond with one another, and for the past month he got to know things about his classmates that he didn't know before. Like this one day he found Ochako's door opened and he entered her room to see if everything was okay. He was amused to find the girl floating as she took a nap, which he absolutely didn't take a picture and save it as his cell phone background. Nope. Sometimes he would find Asui swallowing her meals whole and would see what he suspected to be dead flies on it. Another day he found her almost falling asleep in front of the open fridge, the coldness almost sending her into a hibernating state. Koda knew sign language and opened up to the class saying that he would rather sign than speaking. They gave him their support and asked Aizawa if they would learn JSL in the future. The pro hero seemed to be taken aback at how many students were so eager to learn it. He asked Netsu to find a way to fit it in their scheduled JSL lessons. His students were more than happy to provide a 300 essay about how beneficial that would be for them. Needless to say, the rodent was more than happy to comply with their request. One morning Midoriya was making his way to the kitchen. Passing by the living room, he stopped in his tracks when he heard a loud sneeze followed by fire and ice destroying a plain new couch. When Todoroki finally saw him staring at him mouth agape, the boy burst into flames in embarrassment and sneezed once again, unable to suppress it. This one wasn't as strong as the early one, but Izuku couldn't help but squeal since instead of a huge ice spike, snowflakes came out. Dark Shadow was a cat and nobody can change his mind. He was a bird, yes, but he was such a little shit as a cat. Now, he loves cats, but he can't deny that they were evil as hell when they wanted. He found Takoyami in the living room this one time. He was staring at his quirk like a parent scolding their child. Dark Shadow was next to a vase looking at his companion with malice as he inched closer to it. The last thing Izuku heard was his classmate yelling no, and a loud crash following next. Kaminari was found several times gazing at nothing at the middle of the kitchen. They didn't think anything of it at first, but one day Izuku woke up to take a glass of water and saw the boy staring at the wall. He tried to get his attention only to see that his classmate was snoring. The blonde was a goddamn sleepwalker and didn't know about it until then. Anyways, they got to know each other better, know their tastes and their hobbies, which several of his classmates had hobbies that they didn't think they would have. Jiru liked to sing and oh boy, she was really good at it. They were stunned at her vocal talent. She also knew how to play the guitar, which wasn't a surprise. Momo wrote fanfiction on her laptop. She was embarrassed to let that slip, but the other girls and a couple of guys asked her username so they could read it. It was a surprise when they found out she wrote about Star Wars and Lord of the Rings. Even more, when they read her own version of the final of the series Game of Thrones and found it better than the original. All his classmates were talented at something, and when it was Izuku's time to share his hobby, they weren't surprised when he said that he liked to analyze quirks, but they were really interested in listening about his notes. Another thing that had happened because of the dorms was that by living together, they not only got to know each other better, but also some people ended up finding out feelings they had for their classmates that they didn't notice before. One fine day, Momo came to the living room with her face so red that the others almost asked if she was okay. They didn't have time to do that when she ran towards Jiru, who was playing Mario Kart with Kaminari and Shiro, and threw a letter at the girl before sprinting back to her room. Jiru, who looked like the embodiment of confusion, opened the letter and read it carefully. Each line she read, she grew a darker shade of red, and by the end of it, the poor girl was steaming from how hot her face was. She stumbled her way to the other girl's room, leaving everyone but two people confused. Shiro, who wasn't fazed by the scene, extended his hand to the boy at his side and grinned at the whining Kaminari, who placed 5,230.23 yen in his hand. The next day, the two girls were holding hands and were trying their best to ignore all the whistling from their classmates and the loud cheering from Mina and Shiro. Yaorozo's confession was what triggered the others to do the same in the next couple of weeks. Takoyami confessed to Shoji by reciting a poem that seemed to have been written by someone in their emo edgelord phase. Kirishima had asked Bakugo to help him with homework after class, and the next day the red-haired boy was grinning like a child in a candy store. Of course, not all confessions were reciprocated. Kaminari had disappeared with Shinsu one day and returned with tears in his eyes. The purple-haired had told him that he liked someone else. Shiro comforted him and took the opportunity to confess to the blonde as well. He didn't push it though, said he wanted to try this out and take their time to see if it would work. The class could tell that Denki was falling for the black-haired after a couple of dates. The rest of the class who had crushes on someone took their time, planning on how to confess or choosing to ignore it. Nina had her eyes on Pony from Class 1B, and by digging some information to try discovering what the girl liked, she ended up finding out that their class president Kendo Itsuka seemed to have developed a crush on Hagakure after a sparring match they had with their class. The other two people who seemed to be ready to confess were Todoroki and Uraraka, and the Greenette couldn't help but feel sad at that. He was planning to take the two of them out and tell them how he felt towards them, but it seemed like he wouldn't have this chance anymore. Maybe that was for the best. He was so mad at himself, he couldn't even like one person. He had to be greedy and like two people at the same time. He heard the girls talking to each other in class that Uraraka was going to confess that very day. The boys were also gossiping. They were curious to know who was the girl that Todoroki was going to confess. Kaminari and Shiro betting that it was Uraraka. Connecting the dots, Izuku felt his stomach drop. They were going to confess to each other, weren't they? He skipped lunch and didn't talk for the rest of the day. He went to the gym Gamma to train that night to blow off some steam. After taking a shower and making his way to his room, he was surprised to find both Uraraka and Todoroki in front of his door with conflicted expressions in their faces. "Ooh, hey Deku-kun." Midoriya, they spoke at the same time. Hey guys," he said nervously. His friends frowned at noticing the sadness in his tone. They traded worried glances with each other. "Are you okay?" Todoroki asked softly. It made Midoriya's heart clench. He wished the bi-colored boy talked to him like this all the time. "Why yeah, Jay just tired." He scratched behind his head awkwardly. Did you guy want to talk to Emmy?" The other two didn't buy it at all, but decided to confront him about it later. Nodding to each other, they both bowed, taking him by surprise. Deku-kun got out on a date with him. The girl said it so fast that Izuku almost couldn't make out what she said. Wide-eyed, the Greenette turned a dark shade of red, not really trying to hide the expression of shock on his face. Midoriya, Todoroki said his name with passion, getting the teen to look at him with even wider eyes as he noticed the boy was on his knee looking at him with those beautiful heterochromatic eyes. "I also want you to go on a date with me." He straightened up, looking into his verdant eyes. "Whoever you choose, or if you reject both of us, we still want to remain friends with you." The brunette at this side nodded quickly in agreement. Bursting into tears, Izuku tried to speak out, but his words were stuck on his throat. Was this really happening? It can't be, can it? The gravity girl panicked at seeing tears falling down his cheeks. "We're so sorry, Deku. Maybe this wasn't a good time to do this," she apologized in a hurry, bowing repeatedly. The red and white-haired was about to apologize as well, but Izuku didn't give him time to. "And no, it's not like that. Just that. I never thought someone like you 2W would like me that way." He tried and failed to wipe his tears as more trailed after. Todoroki arched a brow at that. "Someone like us?" Uraraka at his side tilted her head in equal confusion. "Why yeah, you two are so brave, beautiful and amazing. You two are like the strongest people I've met, not just by strength, and I'm just beautiful," said Uraraka, fluttering her eyelashes. "Charming and completely adorable," the heterochromatic boy said softly. "Intelligent, brave and inspiring." The Greenette grew a darker shade of red each time they spoke. "WYW would even now like me that way," he sputtered in embarrassment. "Are you sure you guys aren't mistaken?" "Yeah, maybe they were mistaken. Some people tend to mistake friendship with love." Bringing her hand to her chin, the girl seemed deep in thought. Let me see. Your capacity for kindness is boundless, and your smile makes me feel like I'm in paradise," Uraraka said with determination, to make it clear she was serious about it, but you still could hear the fondness in her voice. "You make me see the world in a way no one else ever has, and I feel warm and confident every time I'm around you," Todoroki said shyly. "Your laugh is my favorite sound, and I would do anything to hear it again. Around you, I'm the best possible version of myself. When we're together, everything seems possible." They both smiled softly as the boy burst into tears once again, relieved by knowing it wasn't a negative reaction. "So you don't have to answer now. We just wanted to let you know," Shoto said, not wanting to rush the other to make a decision so soon. Izuku wiped his tears away and looked at his two friends with determination. He had made a decision. Both he deadpanned. Todoroki and Uraraka exchanged a confused look with each other before looking back at the freckled boy. "Both?" they both asked. "Yeah, both is good." After Shoto and Ochako's confession, the Greenette felt like he was in heaven. They hadn't told anyone about their relationship, afraid of being judged for being in a polyamorous relationship. They only told Ida because the boy was close friends with the trio, and would find out eventually. Ida seemed to want to argue about it, but ended up just saying he was glad that they were happy together and that he would research more about poly relationships to get a better understanding. They were grateful for that. For all the rest of their classmates knew, Uraraka and Todoroki got rejected or were dating each other in secret. The three were amused to watch them theorizing what had happened. When asked about it, they both would just reply that something unexpected happened. The trio was happy with their arrangement. The gravity girl and the bi-colored boy didn't share romantic feelings for each other, but they were more than okay with sharing their loved one with each other, especially when it made their sunshine happy. They have been together for 2 weeks and a lot of things happened in this short period of time. As much as living in the dorm had Izuku feeling safe, he still had panic attacks from waking up from his nightmares. It was always the same dreams. Bakugo and his lackeys beating him up and using their quirks on him, the names they call him, and the day his once friend told him to commit suicide. It always made him feel weak for reacting this badly at those memories. He had fought villains, survived several attacks, and yet he couldn't bring himself to move on from his past. He began to cut himself again. It always made him feel better. He was beginning to lose himself to depression once again. He hasn't taken his meds since he got into UA. He thought he didn't need them, that now that he has a quirk he would be fine, but at the end he was still unhappy. It wasn't even his quirk. It was All Might's, and he still managed to be useless, breaking his bones and taking so long to improve his move. Yagi could have given his quirk to someone better, some who wasn't completely useless as him, but Yagi wasted it on him. His state got worse after he started dating Shoto and Ochako. Don't get him wrong, they were wonderful, but he felt like he wasn't worth their love, not like they said they love him. Why? He was weak, he was annoying. He knows how some of his classmates stare at him when he mutters. He tried to stop this habit, but he couldn't help it. Jiru called him out on Monday, asking him to stop. Even if she didn't mean to sound rude, it still made him feel upset and insecure, especially when he saw the smile of satisfaction from Bakugo when she said that. It was like he was in his old school again, when he was still quirkless and bullied. People giving him annoyed looks and smirks when someone would yell at him, his mere existence being enough to anger anyone. After that day, he stopped talking and tried his best to not mutter when in class. That day was getting worse each second. Bakugo looking over his shoulders at class from time to time just to mock him didn't help. What was worse was that the so-called Baka squad just laughed when he did it, like it was nothing, like it wasn't hurting him every time he called him useless and annoying. The final straw was when he was making his way to the lunchroom. Bakugo bumped into him and making him lose his balance and fall on the floor. The blonde scoffed and took advantage that no one was passing by to make fun of him. He said that everyone was confessing and getting together and that a useless freak as him would never get someone who wasn't pitying him or playing a prank on him. Were Ochako and Shoto doing that? Did they confess as a joke? Were they laughing at his naivety? Oh, of course, why would the most amazing people from his class ever like him that way, right? God, he was so dumb, he didn't even hesitate. He accepted both their confessions like it was true, like they could ever love the pathetic, worthless Deku. Uraraka and Todoroki were worried when he stopped talking in class and didn't sit with them at lunch. The two of them confronted him after class was over. They asked if he was okay and if there was anything they could do. He just faked a smile and assured them that he was just tired and went to his room. At his room, he took the switchblade under his pillow and examined the sharp blade. Maybe he should have done what Bakugo told him that day, but couldn't jump from the UAS roof. It would scare the other students and they would call the emergency. It would attract the media's attention and they would ask why such a prestigious high school couldn't prevent this. He liked his teachers. They didn't deserve to deal with that, so doing it in his room would be a better option. His homeroom teacher would come to see why he didn't come to class the next day and find his body. They would be able to deal with it privately this way. He began to make small cuts on his wrist and his thigh, hissing at the pain and crying, afraid to see the other side but still wanting to end it all. After another couple of cuts, he finally held the switchblade to his neck. Maybe in my next life I'll be useful, I'll have a quirk, and I'll be loved. I won't be a Deku. Ochako was really worried about Izuku. He seemed to be on the edge of breaking down and she didn't know what to do about it. Should she give him space? Should she push him to talk? In the end, she ended up deciding to at least give a look to see if he was okay. She took the elevator to the second floor and made her way to his room. Stopping in front of his door, she took a deep breath. She can do this. She is here to make sure he is okay and nothing else. If Izuku felt the need to talk about it, he would do this on his own time. After composing herself, she brought her hand to the door handle and was about to turn it when she heard sobs coming from the other side of the door. Her heart clenched at hearing the pained whimpering from the small boy. He's absolutely not fine. To hell with the leaving him to take his own time thing. She opened the door quietly, not wanting to startle him, and as she entered his room, she froze as she took the scene in front of her. Izuku had so many scars all over his body, burn and explosion marks among others, but what made her stomach turn were the self-inflicted cuts on his wrists and thighs. Distracted by taking the courage to make the final cut, the boy didn't take notice of her presence. The girl was horrified at the sight before her. She had to stop herself from throwing up, but failed to hold back her tears. Before the boy could slash his throat, she quickly texted Shoto to come to her aid. She ran towards the greenette, knocked the knife from his hand, making it float, and wrapped her arms around Izuku. The boy snapped out of his daze and paled at realizing that someone was in his room holding him. By the soft brown hair, he knew who it was and begun to panic. She saw how weak he is. She saw how fucking pathetic he is. It didn't even take a minute for Todoroki to arrive at the scene. He was panting and had a worried expression, which turned into a horrified one when he noticed the blood coming from the other boy's wrists and thigh. Izuku expected them to break up with him, to tell him how weak he was and that they didn't want to deal with him. He wouldn't blame them. To be honest, they were amazing people and deserved someone who wasn't fucked up, someone who wouldn't be a dead weight for them. But instead of that, his girlfriend and boyfriend just stayed there, comforting him and tending his wounds. They whispered softly into his ears that he was safe. He was okay. They were here for him and would keep him safe, and that no matter what, they wouldn't leave him because they loved him so much. He couldn't help but tear up at hearing those words. They weren't going to leave him. They actually loved him and wanted to help him. He cried himself to sleep covered in blood, and when he woke up, his mates were cuddling with him and very awake. Both of them had blood on their hands and uniforms. His blood. They took him to Recovery Girl. It took half an hour to convince him that they should let her know about his situation, that he needed help. The old lady was frightened when she saw the cuts. She asked if she had permission to touch him and clean his new and old wounds, a frown present on her face. Shoto and Ochako stayed by his side the entire time, holding his hands, only letting go when the pro-heroine wanted to give a look at his hands. Izuku asked to tell no one about it but Hound Dog and Nedzu, since the principal would end up finding out one way or another. She accepted his condition just because he was willing to talk to the school counselor. She contacted and explained the situation. Izuku would have to talk to Inui every day after class or after curfew. After setting that up, Recovery Girl asked the greenette if he used to take any antidepressants so that the school could provide it to him. After he gave her all his medicines information and was free to go, both Ochako and Shoto made him promise that when he felt that way again, to call them. They would listen, they wouldn't judge. They would be there for him. And if he had a breakdown at the middle of the night, they wouldn't mind breaking curfew and sneaking into his room to spend the night with him. Which is why they were in the greenette's room, lying on his bed once again for the third time this week. Hiraraka was doing the role of the big spoon, and that made Izuku feel warm in his heart. Who doesn't want to be the little spoon? Everyone likes to be the little spoon. It makes them feel safe. Todoroki was hugging him by the front, his chin resting on his curls as he mumbled on his sleep. Looking at his clock, he sighed. They had 20 minutes to get ready for class. Izuku gathered all the forces within himself to get off of his bed, trying to get the other two to let go of him. Why did they have to be so strong? Izuku, the brunette, whined from being awakened by his poor attempt to get up. The bi-colored teen groaned at the movement. More 5 minutes, he mumbled, tightening his hold on the greenette. God, they are so adorable, the small teen thought to himself. Come on guys, we are going to be late for class this way, and we don't want to get on the wrong side of Aizawa-sensei. Ooh. The girl groaned as she got up from his bed. He chuckled at seeing the brunette groggily making her way out. Todoroki rolled from his bed and ended up falling on the floor. Instead of getting up, the boy crawled his way out. Izuku got up and went to his room entrance, snorting as he saw the long-haired rolling his way into the elevator, whining. Entertained with his boyfriend's suffering, he only notices Aoyama's presence when it's too late. He freezes, looking at the blonde in panic. His classmate saw the other two walking out from his room. How can he lie his way out of this? Yuga Aoyama simply looked at him with a shining smile, gave him thumbs up and walked away. Izuku blinked slowly, trying to understand what just happened. Was that his classmate's way of insinuating that he approved of their relationship? He sighed, a bit relieved. They need to be more careful. He got himself ready in 5 minutes. He didn't want to be late at all, and getting his bag, he made his way downstairs to the common room. He was about to turn a corner to a corridor when the brunette and bi-colored boy cornered him, taking him by surprise. Owacha, show. Someone see could be end near. He peeked between them to see if anyone was passing by. But Izuku, we didn't get our morning kiss. The girl pouted. How can I live through the day without it? She said dramatically, putting a hand on her chest and wiping a non-existent tear with the other. The greenette laughed at that. He liked this playful side of her, and she seemed to do it more often around him after they got together. Hiraraka smiled. She felt warm at hearing the sweet sound of her sunshine's laugh. She placed a kiss on his cheek, and Todoroki simply stayed at his side holding the boy, enjoying the sound as well. Oh Monda, you two are the cutest couple I've ever seen. Izuku and Ochako yelped in surprise. Shoto just looked at the source of the voice, wide-eyed in shock. Aoyama was giving them a knowing look, and at their startled faces he smirked. It seems like my assumptions were right. Before any of them could start to panic, the boy waved his hand dismissively. Don't worry, Miss Amy's. I won't tell anyone, but you should be more careful if you want to keep it a secret, he said amusedly. Hiraraka scratched behind her neck awkwardly. They were doing a shitty job, weren't they? Both Midoriya and Todoroki were blushing for being so careless and obvious. Yuga turned to leave but stopped halfway. Looking over his shoulder, he met Izuku's eyes. "By the way, Monami, if you ever need someone to talk with, I'm always here to be your shiny prince." He winked and walked away. They all blinked confusedly. Why the hell Aoyama always knew things he shouldn't? At this point, they were beginning to think that he has been stalking them. Todoroki stared after the blonde with a determined gaze. "I think he is some type of an omnipresent entity," he said seriously. "Oh my god, Shu, no." Izuku groaned, knowing very well where this was going. "Are you starting a new conspiracy theory?" Uraraka asked amusedly. Instead of replying, he turned to the two with a dead serious expression. "I think Aoyama is God himself." Both couldn't help but burst out laughing. "I'm serious. Just think about it." They made their way to their class, laughing all the way as Todoroki tried to convince them that his theory was solid. Izuku was having a great time. He had a girlfriend and a boyfriend who loved him and were taking care of him. Everyone seemed to get along with each other and he was slowly getting better. What could go wrong? Oh, he just jinxed it, didn't he? Bonus art. When they got in class, Todoroki and Uraraka were both ambushed again, being showered by questions about who they were dating or by who they got rejected. The two of them kept amusedly playing with them, dodging their question with another question, toying with by insulating something, inevitably leaving them confused. Izuku had to hold himself from laughing mockingly at his classmates' whining. Maybe one day, if their class proved to be more open-minded than they already are, maybe then they would inform them about their relationship. Until then, he would leave Shu and Acha enjoy their fun. They all went to their respective seats when Cementos entered the room. Modern literature constantly had Izuku muttering. He couldn't help it. Thinking out loud helped him keep focused. When someone would interrupt his mutterings, he would get disoriented and lose the will to keep going with his thought process. Jiru was about to vulgarly call him out again, but as soon as the girl stood up, she froze, feeling threatening aura coming from the other side of the class. Turning slowly her head, she was encountered with a cold glare from Uraraka, who motioned to her to go back to sit. The brunette ripped off a piece of paper from her notebook and scribbled something while keeping eye contact with the earphone jack girl, who was sweating bullets at this point. Most of the class was too focused on writing their texts, but the ones that noticed the girls' interaction looked between them confusedly. They wanted dreadfully to intervene, but the precise moment that they opened their mouths to say something, they felt the brunette's aura get heavier. They restrained their tongue. Nobody had the balls to confront the pissed-off gravity girl. Jiru was still looking at the wicked girl, awaiting her fate. Having has no idea what she had done to piss the girl off, but she would implore genuine forgiveness anyways, because Kyoka has never felt so frightened for her life as much as right now. Uraraka finished transcribing what she wanted dreadfully. She walked towards her desk and slumped the piece of papers on her desk with a terrific thud. Cementos, who was observing the scene, just arched a brow amusedly and went back to grading some of the other class's text. Kyoka gulped as the other girl left and went back to her seat, going back to work on her text like she didn't, just practically tried to slay her with a harsh glare. Jiru collected the piece of paper on her hands and began to read apprehensively. As she read critically, she went pale, bringing a hand to her mouth. Kaminari, who was still side-eyeing the scene, frowned when the purple-haired girl wiped off the tears that started to gather at the edge of her eyes. "Jiru, I know that your quirk can't be deactivated. I know that it bothers you when there's someone talking when everything is silent. It bothers you, it takes off your concentration, and your quirk makes that even worse for you. But do under no circumstances talk like that to Izuku ever again. Do you recall all the times you called him out with such bitterness? Every time Bakugo or another classmate laughed and made fun of him because you brought attention to him. Because if you don't, Midoriya does. He recalls every single day. You have noticed how skittish he is, how low his wounded self-esteem is, his anxiety and stuttering. There is a reason for that. A reason I won't be telling you because it's not my past to tell. But I can tell that every time you tell him to shut up, it hurts him. It hurts him so badly. Last time you did it, I found him crying in his room. He felt like he was a bother and felt insecure about talking for a couple of days, if you haven't noticed. He kept saying that he was remorseful, that he didn't mean to upset you and that he didn't want you to despise him, that he would try to keep his mouth shut and wouldn't bother you anymore, and kept beating himself for being so annoying. He can't help it. It's something he is used to and it helps him concentrate. Therefore, if you were to ask him to tune it down, at least do it kindly, because I don't want to see my best friend beating up himself for such a frivolous reason." She didn't mean to. It wasn't her intention. She knows she shouldn't have yelled at him. She could have asked without being abominably rude. But it's just repetitive noises and people talking when everything else is supposed to be quiet always puts her on edge. She tries to ignore it, she really does, but it's so hard to. It always makes her angry even when she tells herself that she shouldn't, because it's such a small thing that she shouldn't feel so angry about it. It's like an emotional trigger. She inevitably goes from totally calm to pissed the fuck off. Not too long ago she researched why the noises upset her so much and she found out why. Misophonia, that's what they term it. The person is overly sensitive to sounds and may display aggressive outbursts. There is nothing that can be done about it. Needless to say, every other slight noise annoyed her, but she mostly picked up the loudest noise, which in this case was the greenette's muttering. It didn't affect her when she was using her quirk to something she wanted to do, but when it wasn't, when she was desperately trying to concentrate or enjoy the silence, it annoyed her. It's one of the reasons she prefers cats over dogs. Dogs bark at anything, from someone passing by the street to an insect on the floor. She never sleeps properly because of it. Every unusual time a dog from her neighborhood barks so suddenly it startles her. She can't ignore the noise and she merely wants some peace and quiet. Sometimes it comes to the point that she cries because they won't stop making noise and she can't make them stop. She doesn't despise dogs. She doesn't condemn them or anyone that makes noises. They don't how it affects her. It's something she couldn't change. She can't help it, and Midoriya was the same. He couldn't help it. It was something they both couldn't control. But the fact that she had hurt him because she didn't even try to make a different approach made her feel bad. Especially when she knows how he feels. Before UA, there was this classmate who would whistle every time they were making a test. She couldn't concentrate, so she asked him to stop. The boy just looked at her and noticing that the noise was affecting her, he grinned and continued. Her teacher said she was overexerting. Her classmates thought it was fun and joined in. Nobody took her unusual problems seriously. She just wanted them to understand, to keep quiet. Why could they stop yelling when it caused the blind student startle, but couldn't keep the noise down when it drives her insane? Hence making the similar thing that her classmates allegedly did to her to someone she considered a friend made her feel terrible. She would talk to the boy after class and apologize. Maybe she could explain her situation and he would understand. Maybe he would be different. Izuku was taken aback when Jiro asked to talk to him after class. Her sorrowful eyes were red and she seemed to be about to cry. That got him worried. Was she hurt and needed help? He saw Kaminari sending death glares to Uraraka for some unclear reason. The earphone jack girl struck the boy on the back of his head so he would stop glaring. When he looked at her in confusion, she just bobbed her head. After class was over, he followed the girl to her room. She closed the door and for a moment they stayed on an uncomfortable silence. But then she gathered the courage she required and voiced to him about her misophonia. How it hurts sometimes if she can't stop the source of the dreadful noise and that people don't take her feeling in consideration when she tells them. He sympathizes with her. People at his old school overwhelmingly thought that he muttered to irritate them on purpose and yelled at him for not being able to stop doing it. As a result, he understands where she is coming from. The anxious girl bowed to him, apologizing over and over again for hurting his feelings. He just gave the girl a smile and extended his arms to her. She couldn't help but cry as she accepted the invitation. They stayed like that for a while, just comforting each other. He solemnly promised to tune down his muttering as much as he can during the teacher's explanations. She said he didn't need to. He was about to protest when something came up to his mind. They both went to the teacher's lounge and informed them about their situation. They all understood and came to an agreement. Power loader Jiro came back with a headphone on his gaunt hands. Kyoka was now allowed to use noise-canceling headphones when at class and a quirk suppressant bracelet if deemed necessary. The dark-haired girl thanked him for his overwhelming support and apologized once again. They both got more familiar after that. Jiro started to hang out with the Deku squad. All of them were really considerate about her misophonia. One day she forgot to bring her headphones with her to class and Ida offered himself to quickly get another one from the support department before the test began. The Baku squad seemed a bit upset at her distancing from them, but seeing her so happy and so talkative with them caused them to let it go and move on. Kaminari still talked to the girl, but not as much as before. Another odd thing that had changed with the dark-haired girl connecting with his group of friends was that she was more than willing to also join the Deku protection squad in secret. She never took shit from anybody, so whenever Bakugo was about to be a little bitch, she would talk back for Izuku. She scarcely knows Bakugo doesn't experience a similar problem as her, because if he did, Midoriya wouldn't be the only one to be yelled at for being noisy and he would be uncomfortable with any other noise just like her. No, the boy absolutely enjoyed making the greenette cower and cause him to feel small and insecure. The first time she allegedly confronted the blonde was at Modern Hero Art History. She had her headphones on and since the other sat to her right, she observed by the corner of her eyes the boy's lips moving. He was snarling and the smirk that came after he finished yelling confirmed her suspicions. She took her canceling noise headphone off and turned to look at the smug boy with a heated glare. "Shut the fuck up, Bakugo," she hissed at him. The aggressive boy was taken aback at the pent-up bitterness of her tone. "You're causing more excessive noise than him, you dumbass. Now sit your pompous ass down and shut the hell up." Needless to say, that day went peacefully quiet. The Baka squad had to keep a look on the blonde since it seemed like Bakugo.exe has stopped working. It's like this is the first time someone called him out on his bullshit. So, things were going great. She had friends who understood her struggles and supported her. She had fun talking with Uraraka about music. Sui would frequently send her lo-fi playlist to listen to when working on her homework. Todoroki was quiet, but he was admittedly a pleasant company. Ada was constantly trying to help her feel comfortable and meekly asking if any peculiar noise was bothering her. And then there was Midoriya. They both talked a lot. It was fun. The Greenette had asked her if she could demonstrate to him how to play the guitar, and she didn't even hesitate when she said yes. They shared secrets that they wouldn't ever reveal to anybody else and vent to each other when something was too much for them to handle it alone. Both of them were getting along pretty well. When there was too much noise on Hagakir's room, she would go to his room and sleep on the floor. He had offered for her to stay the first time she complained about the noise, and after that, her unusual presence on his room was relatively constant. And that was how she found out about his relationship with Uraraka and Todoroki. She got used to entering his room without knocking, and one day she was received with the scene of both the brunette and dual-colored boy cuddling with the Greenette. When the trio took her presents, they froze. Uraraka and Todoroki looked at her like they wanted to explain the situation but didn't know how. The poor freckled boy seemed to be on the edge of a panic attack. They waited for her to say something, judge and run to notify everyone, but she just stared at them for a consecutive minute before arranging the pillows she brought with her on the floor and getting the extra blanket Izuku reserved for her. When she said everything for her to sleep, she just said that they looked cute together, that she would tell no one about it, and went to sleep. She could hear the trio sighing in relief and one of them getting up to lock the door before going back to cuddling. After that night, she started to knock on the door first again. Midoriya's partners were okay with her presence. It's not like they were going to do something more than cuddling. They were still extremely young for that. Sometimes Uraraka would even invite her to cuddle with them, just as friends, nothing more. It was a new experience for her. She didn't know about queer platonic relationships. It was genuinely enjoyable. Everything was going lovely, and she was more ecstatic than before now that she possessed people who supported her and helped her out. So, why she feels like something terrible was going to happen. Jiru woke up feeling well rested. She stretched for a solid minute before gathering the courage to get up. Looking at the bed at her side, she noticed Todoroki wasn't in the room. Uraraka, who was awake playing on her phone, noticed her confusion. He went to his room early. He forgot to do the rest of his homework. The brunette giggled. It's not even for today, but he wants to finish it now so the next day he doesn't need to worry about it. That makes sense. I'll be going to my room to change. She looked at the clock on the boy's shelf. We have like 15 minutes. Better wake up the broccoli boy. Uraraka chuckled but nodded in agreement. She gently shook the Greenette awake, receiving an annoyed whine from him. Wake up, Izu. She placed a kiss on the crook of his neck, making him yelp and fall off his bed. It tickles. I know, she said in a sing-song voice. The Greenette sent her a stinky glare, but his cute pout made his glare lose its effect. Jiru snorted, receiving a betrayed look from the short boy, who decided to get up and change so he, quotes, won't have to deal with these two's teasing. The girls rolled their eyes amusedly before leaving the room. They couldn't afford to be late today. First class was with Aizawa, and every time someone is late, the man looks like he wants to end his own life. Because contrary to what other people believe, he actually gives a shit to teach all of them. So when someone is late, he has to start from the beginning. So yeah, they had to go to their rooms as soon as possible. Once the two girls got out of the room, they were met with a surprised set of red eyes boring into their figures. Takoyami eyed the two girls wide-eyed by a moment. He was about to ask why and what they were doing here when he heard a loud gasp from behind them. What the hell? I can't believe Midoriya is going to bed with two hot babes. Mineta whined. Jiru froze. Oh no, of all the people she wanted to avoid being seen, Mineta had to be the worst one. The little pervert already jumped to conclusions. She hates this guy so much. Why didn't Aizawa expel him on the first day? He has been nothing but a nuisance to the girls. Before any of the girls could protest, Izuku walked out of his room groggily. He was already wearing his uniform, his poor tie hanging loose around his neck. Minoru looked at the green-haired with sparkles on his eyes. Hey, Midoriya, the little fucker yelled, getting the others' attention. Share with you bud next time you bring girls to your room, the purple boy said, not even trying to wipe the drool dripping from his mouth. The freckled boy was confused at first, still not fully awake, but as soon as it sank in what the other was insinuating, Izuku's eyes darkened. He walked in front of Uraraka, who seemed to be about to sprint towards the great boy to strangulate him. The Greenette made his way to the other slowly, and when Mineta was about to open his mouth to talk once again, Izuku chopped the short boy on the back of his neck. The purple little shit fell forward unconscious. Midoriya got him by the collar of his shirt and threw him back into his room, right into the floor. Taking the boy's bedroom key, he locked him in. Takoyami, who had watched the entire scene in silence, looked at the trio slightly confused before bowing. I won't tell anyone about your relationship, the boy promised. Though I'm curious, is Momo aware of this? He asked directly to Jiru, squinting his eyes. Because if this was something that the other girl wouldn't know about, then he wouldn't be so quiet about it. He has a deep respect towards Yaoyorozu, and the thought of her being heartbroken by the one she loved made him somewhat angry. The earphone jack girl looked at him bewildered for a moment before shaking her head quickly. No, that's not it. God, no. Uraraka instantly took a deep sigh before walking resolutely towards the bird-headed boy, Izuku religiously following her, back to his sleepy state. Well, since you don't look troubled with the likely possibility of a poly relationship between the three of us, I think we can tell you about us. She scratched behind her neck awkwardly. They were getting too sloppy lately. At this rate, everyone will find out about them because they keep getting caught when leaving Izuku's room. Subtlety, don't know her. Fumikage arched a fierce brow curiously. He carefully folded his arms, motioning with his sleek head for her to adequately explain. Dark shadow formed behind him, looking attentively at the three of them judgmentally. Jiru can't sleep sometimes because there is too much continuous noise on the third floor, so she spends the night in Izu's room since it is quieter, but that's it. They're just friends. Me and Todoroki, though, we are both in a relationship with Zuzu, she explained fiercely. The boy sighed contentedly in evident relief at that. Oh, that's a relief to my soul. I wish the best for you three. Then he bowed once again. Dark Shadow instantly gave them a thumb up. Thanks. Achako beamed. Izuku gave him a small smile from her side. Just keep it a secret for now, please. Of course, your grand secret will be safe with me. Now, I'll be departing. Farewell, my companions, the Raven justly said before promptly leaving to take the elevator. We're really bad at keeping secrets, aren't we? Jiru commented, quite amused. Achako whined, earning a laugh from the other girl. If they want to keep it a secret, they need to be more careful. 3 people found out about their complex relationship already. Well, 2. Mineta thought Kyoka was in the relationship, and the way that little shit is, he would never think that Midoriya has a boyfriend. The little shit was homophobic as fuck. He didn't comment on the gay relationships from the class, but anyone could see that he heartily disapproved. He would intentionally shoot disgusted glances at Kaminari and Siro and made it clear to everyone how disappointed he was that Momo and Jiru were lesbians. Ugh, damn pervert. She was snapped out of her private thoughts when she heard a muffled screech. The trio turned to look at the source of the noise and found nothing until they heard loud, strong knocking on the door. Mineta room's door, to be more precise. And Midoriya. This isn't funny. Let me out. So, I'll be going to my room, Jiru said blankly. Same here. Uraraka nodded, equally as emotionless. The trio took the elevator, intentionally ignoring the desperate screams coming from the second floor. Aizawa-sensei apparently had other plans for today, because as soon as everyone was in the room, he crawled stealthily into the class, engulfed in his yellow sleeping bag with that "I'm done with you all" face. He just told them to meet Vlad King outside and follow the man. So now they were at the gym Gamma. Both Eraserhead and Vlad King were standing in front of them with crossed arms. It was an unexpected event. There was no warning. Their prospective teacher just told them to follow him, and now they were all standing side by side with Class 1B waiting for deeper explanation. Today we are going to be putting selected students from 1A and 1B against a couple of students from the general department, Aizawa justifiably said, his voice blunt as always. Before any of the local teachers could explain any further, they were disrupted by a loud explosion that naturally had some people flinching away from the familiar source of the generated noise. Why the fuck are we fighting some useless weaklings? Bakugo snarled out, still letting out loud, mighty explosions. Sensei's shrewd eyes narrowed in evident disapproval as he activated his quirk. To show not to underestimate your potential opponents, like you just did, he retorted not kindly. If you use your quirk or interrupt me once again, you will get detention, am I clear? The blonde scoffed, folding his arms but kept quiet. Kaminari and Siro giggled behind him along with Monoma and some other students. You kids need to learn how to adequately deal with villains with mental quirks, Eraserhead said fiercely. Vlad King nodded. There are some students from the general ed course with quirks like that, and they were willing to help us out on this exercise. This is so you all learn that your quirks mean nothing if you don't have a strong mind or a good handle of hand-to-hand combat. At the end of the exercise, we will watch the recordings from the completed matches and analyze why you failed, Shouta said slyly as his contemplative gaze went over the students. Both classes paled at that. The man didn't say if they failed. He undoubtedly knew they would instantly get their asses kicked. How strong could those quirks be? Now go change to your hero costumes and meet me at the ground beta in 1 hour. Take this time to know each other or whatever. They were all about to leave when the man spoke once again. Wait, where is Mineta? Aizawa asked, annoyed. Uraraka and Jiru exchanged a look before both met their homeroom teacher's tired eyes and said in the most innocent way possible, who is Mineta? Eraserhead gave them a knowing look before shaking his head. That's fair. Oh, is that a smirk I see, or do my eyes deceive me? Uraraka thought to herself amusedly. Now shoo, get out of my sight, he said without any bite before naturally leaving. Yes, sir, both innocent girls said firmly before sprinting away. In the locker room, everyone was silently changing clothes, well, until a certain blonde decided to instantly break the silence. Hey, Todoroki, when will you tell us who is the girl you are hanging out with? Kaminari asked teasingly. All the boys instantly turned their attention to the bicolored. They were all still curious. Some thought he was with Uraraka, but they didn't really act as a couple with each other at all. They have been asking their classmates about it. It's been weeks now. Hopefully soon or later they would give in and promptly tell them. Takoyami and Aoyama were at the corner completely ignoring the others' eager curiosity. Todoroki was accurately informed that the bird boy found out about his unique relationship in an unpleasant way. So it was no surprise that he wasn't trying to get him to talk, to be honest. The Raven isn't the type of person to do that at all. Shadow, just to fuck with them, arched a brow, faking profound confusion. Girl, he said like he was offended, bringing a hand to his chest in mock offense. I'm dating someone, but it sure as hell isn't a girl. Wait, you're fucking gay. Kaminari yelped. The dual-colored boy blinked slowly. I thought that was oblivious. I mean, you don't really look like the type, Jiro commented, baffled. No offense, man, but he is right, Ciro wittily said. Trust me, the only hetero thing about me is my heterochromia. Ciro wheezed in the background. He saw Fumikage genuinely trying to hide a smirk from the corner of his eyes. After the blonde recovered from his shock, he decided to persist in getting an answer from the other. So who is the lucky guy then? Todoroki met his eyes and with a completely serene look. Wouldn't you like to know, weather boy? He deadpanned. Kirishima and Ciro were clacking at this point. The other boys were trying to hold tenaciously their breathless laugh but were failing spectacularly at it. Who taught him how to meme? Todoroki sighed. He genuinely liked to make fun of their poor attempt to figure out who he is dating, but they were being too pushy lately. Why can't they just let it go? Izuku has been quiet this entire exchange. He didn't need to look at him to feel that he was starting to feel uncomfortable with the non-stop questions. Thankfully, Tenya came to his aid, sensing his and Izuku's evident discomfort. You really shouldn't be bothering our classmate about his love life, Ida exclaimed fiercely, making chopping movements with his eager hands. Bakugo scoffed from the other side of the room. I don't know why you idiots want to know who the half-and-half bastard fucks behind doors. Bakugo, Ida reprimands him. Oh, come on, we're just curious. The electric boy whined. Takoyami, who was done changing to his hero costume, walked past the blonde, bumping into him. You should read the room better. You are all making Todoroki-kun feel uncomfortable. If he doesn't want to tell us who he is dating, then he undoubtedly has a good reason for that. We should respect his wishes instead of pushing him to talk about it. Within the Raven left the room. The boys who were pushing him to talk let out a nervous laugh. Kirishima unanimously gave him an apologetic smile while Ciro dragged Kaminari through the room. Sorry man, the red-haired sincerely apologized. Todoroki just shrugged nonchalantly, but the other could tell he was instantly relieved. After that, they didn't take too long to promptly change. Thankfully, nobody tried to ask him about his relationship again. At the ground beta's waiting room, they found Class 1B and 1 degrees Celsius all talking with each other. There were only a couple of students from the general ed class that were wearing comfortably gym uniforms, probably the ones with mental quirks. Izuku, being naturally the nerd that he is, dashed furiously towards the two students that were talking incessantly with Shinsu with the personal intention of taking notes on their quirks. Hitoshi was talking animatedly to a tall girl and a boy. The girl had white spiral pigtails. Her skin was pale and she had glowing blue eyes. She looked like an angel. The tan boy had black eyes. His left iris was a purplish mesmerizing tone and his right iris was a stunningly beautiful yellowish color. His hair was a darkish tone of deepening blue, much like Ada's, though he had a messy undercut instead of the boring cut his friend had. The cheerful girl was the first to instantly notice his presence and immediately gave him a cheerful smile as he got closer. Hey there, you must be Midoriya. The girl took his hands in hers abruptly. She frowned for a quick second before forcing a smile. Shinsu wouldn't stop talking about you. She beamed. The lilac-haired boy who was at her side blushed madly. He elbowed her in the side. Shut up, he muttered incoherently under his nervous breath, earning a mischievous chuckle from the girl. Izuku gave her a blinding smile, happy that Shinsu had talked about him to his dear friends from his former class. Hitoshi blushed harder at that. The other boy at his opposing side laughed at his undeserved suffering. I'm dating Garia, by the way. She presented herself before pointing eagerly to the other boy at her side. This is Misao Masahiro. Said boy merely gave him a gentle smile. He didn't seem to be too much of a talker. It's nice to meet you. He gently shook her frail hand. See, can I know your quirks? Mental quirks can be so interesting. They are so rare and powerful. The way that sensei talked to us earlier makes me think that we have no chance against you, so I got curious. Does your quirk have something to do with emotional manipulation or something that allows you to take control? The boy dissolved into a glorious mess of muttering. Dayton laughed lightheartedly. So it's true that you tend to mutter a lot? Oh, sorry. It's a bad habit, the boy apologized ashamedly. Why can't I stop doing this? The girl scowled for some apparent reason before severely shaking her head. It's not something to be ashamed of. It's kinda cute actually. Before the visible, now embarrassed Greenette could retort promptly, she merely continued talking gaily. Now, you wanted to know what my quirk is, right? Why yeah, my quirk is mental disorder manipulation. I can sense what disorder someone has by touching them and induce, remove, and manipulate any disorders, including mood, anxiety, eating, impulse, addiction, personality, dissociation, and behavioral disorders, she said excitedly, like she has been waiting anxiously for this unusual moment, and to be honest, she was. When Shinsu candidly told her about how supportive this Midoriya boy was towards his brainwash quirk, she was exhilarated to properly meet him. Those who were hearing their conversation took a step backward, muttering among them how such a cheerful girl could have a villainous quirk. Shinsu sent them a harsh glare that instantly made them shut up. Garia didn't seem to care though. She was still smiling despite clearly hearing the hostile comments. Izuku's calculating eyes were sparkling from childlike glee. Can you radically change the intensity of someone's disorder? If so, how much? Could you intensify it enough so the target can hardly function? Also, is there any specific mental illness that you can't manipulate in WH? Shut the fuck up, Deku, or I quote I'll make you. Bakugo snarled viciously at the greenette, letting out big explosions from both hands and startling everyone who was in the ample room. The foolish boy was fuming with overwhelming anger, and if looks could kill, the greenette would be dead where he stood. Izuku grew pale. He was cruelly used to be yelled at, but the fierce anger on the other's tone was stronger than the usual. Flashbacks from his middle school had him shivering when the blonde was this angry. The greenette would walk away covered in bruises and explosion marks. Uraraka and Todoroki, who were fondly observing the boy talking excitedly with the 2 1°C students earlier, frowned at their loved one's peculiar expression. It rubbed them off the wrong way. He looked genuinely terrified of the explosive boy. The blonde looked at his shaking form with raw anger. When he noticed that all the negative attention was towards them, he smirked, allegedly taking their annoyed expression the wrong way. You're just bothering everyone with your annoying muttering. For fuck's sake, shut the fuck up, you useless Deku. The other students nervously watched the chaotic scene uncomfortably. Monoma and a couple of the other hero class students were glaring daggers at the blonde. Nito had become friends with the greenette after a fruitless attempt to antagonize Class 1 and not too long after moving to the dorms. While the other students were merely annoyed by him, Midoriya just looked at him with those green innocent eyes, shining brilliantly with curiosity, and just asked about his quirk. The boy wanted to know about it since the sport festival and pulled out a notebook to take notes on him. Since then they have been hanging out after school, and making fun of the other hero class became more of a friendly teasing than antagonizing. Izuku was a wonderful friend. He didn't look down on him. He respected him and would always offer tips on how to deal with his quirk and understand it better and how to progressively improve. The boy was nothing but kind, and by befriending Monoma, he quickly became friends with the rest of his class as well, making the personal animosity between both classes forcibly disperse. So watching the sunshine ball of ultimate happiness cowering from one of his own classmates made their blood boil in burning anger. Todoroki gritted his teeth aggressively, trying to rigorously suppress a vicious snarl. He walked wearily towards his boyfriend, carefully laying both comforting hands on his shoulders to ground him. The boy under his gentle touch shook harder. Uraraka walked towards the explosive boy with a fierce scowl, leaving Shadow to comfort the greenette, who seemed to be close to legitimately having a panic attack. How dare he try to humiliate Izuku in front of everyone? All the confidence Todoroki and her have been helping the greenette gather was being turned into ashes. Shut the hell up, Bakugo, the girl said with such raw anger that it threw Bakugo off. His muttering wasn't even that loud. Back off for a goddamn moment. Stop being an asshole for once in your life and pull your head out of your ass. She wanted more than anything to beat his ass. He has always been an asshole, but the aggressiveness he showed towards her boyfriend had her blood boil. Yeah, Bakubro. Chill out, Kaminari said, sending the greenette an apologetic smile. Kirishima frowned at his side, eyeing Bakugo carefully. What's up with you all getting so defensive of useless Deku? You didn't give a shit when I yelled at him before. Some of the Wana students fidgeted uncomfortably at that. They naively thought that the two boys were friends, that this was Bakugo's way to show affection since he typically acted the same way towards the Bakuquad. Hey, stop calling him useless, man. That's rude. Juzo Honuki from Class 1B exclaimed indignantly, clearly uncomfortable with the chaotic situation. Yeah, dude, no need to be such a dick for no reason. Away stared down at the blonde with unutterable disgust. Misao glared at the blonde from where he was. He heartily hates people like this guy, thinking they are superior just because they had a flashy quirk. It doesn't matter if you have a powerful quirk but has a shitty personality. Since the sports festival, he has been wondering why the hell Nedzu had willingly let this guy into the school with this violent temperament. His class and both the hero classes were aggressively looking at the blonde with something akin to disgust and anger, not liking how he was cruelly treating the greenette. The copycat blonde guy was being held by the orange-haired girl. He was looking at Bakugo like he eagerly wanted to punch him in the face. To be honest, most of them looked like they wanted to slap some sense into the teen's head. Some looked utterly done with this shit now. That's a mood, like they were shamelessly used to what was happening, like it was a daily thing. I think you should shut up, fam, he spoke out. Those who hadn't heard him talk before were startled. His distinct voice was rough but at the same time soothing. You are disrupting the nice atmosphere that we had going. Besides, Midoriya wasn't even talking that loud. Your stupid Pomeranian ass, on the other hand, not only ruined the good mood, but you're loud as hell. Why don't you mind your own business instead of being such an attention whore? He said so calmly, like he hasn't just sassed the other. Bakugo turned furiously his focused attention to the teen and glared daggers at him for calling him out on his bullshit. Most of the students present looked at him wide-eyed, some in paralyzing shock, some shaking uncontrollably their heads exasperatedly, begging piteously him to not mess with the guy. The explosive boy was red with pent-up anger. The greenette at Misao's side flinched and cowered behind him. The bicolored followed, still comforting the poor boy. How cute, he thought to himself. Side-eyeing the brunette who was still shaking with anger, he grinned. What an interesting relationship. The blonde finally snapped. Letting out a huge explosion, the boy sprinted toward him. Who the fuck you think you are? I said. Shut up, he said sternly this time. The blonde immediately snapped his mouth shut with a loud clatter of his teeth, his savage eyes widening in terrific shock as he forcibly stopped in his tracks. Why don't you go take a walk? Come back here 10 minutes before the exercise. The others nervously held their steadying breaths, thinking he was crazy and waiting anxiously for the red-eyed to explode. But Bakugo only stared at him, still in shock. He kept opening and closing his mouth like a fish out of water until he inevitably ended up sorely pressing his lips into a thin line. Blinking rapidly like there was something in his dull eyes, he frowned. The boy looked at the general ed student in evident confusion for a moment and turned to leave, muttering a whatever under his breath. The deafening silence that instantly followed after the blonde left was instantly broken by Midoriya, who looked at him with profound awe. Wow, was that your quirk? Can you use it on multiple people, or you can only focus on one person? Masahiro was taken aback by the cheerfulness the other was typically emitting by the small demonstration that his quirk could do. He noticed the people around them let out a contented sigh of overwhelming relief. They were all worried about the short teen. Seeing the sensitive boy so excited about something after almost having a panic attack was an unspeakable relief. He genuinely likes this boy. He wasn't an egocentric idiot like the blonde and didn't judge a book by its cover, just like Shinsu told him. He desperately hopes he doesn't have to go against him. His quirk wasn't one of the most pleasant things to experience. What he had done to the Bakugo boy was not even close to what it could actually do. Is it like Hicken's quirk? The boy beamed, merely taking a notebook out of thin air. Where the hell did that come from? Masahiro looked at his former classmate, arching a puzzled brow. Shinsu turned a deep shade of violent red and looked away, desperately trying to hide his aflame face from him. Hicken, he saved this embarrassing information on his mind for later. The general ed student put a hand on his waist and gestured with the other. Well, yes, but actually no. He grinned maliciously. You will know when the exercise starts, he chuckled grimly as the green-haired boy pouted. Everyone went back to talk with each other after that, choosing to merely forget about the earlier stunt. They enjoyed the last couple of minutes before the exercise. Shinsu, do you know the guy's quirk? Kaminari asked curiously, since even the other students from his former class seemed to not know. Not really. He never showed off his quirk or talked about it. He scratched behind his exposed neck nervously. He was the only person in class who was friendly towards me other than Gary. He looked wistfully to where his friend was. He was looking amusedly at the greenette, who was vainly trying to bribe him to tell him about his quirk. Garia was touching Izuku's shoulder, subtly using her quirk to remove temporarily his anxiety and depression that she had sensed early. I think it was because we are the same. Shinsu trailed off. The blonde noticed the unspeakable sadness in his hoarse voice and frowned. A villainous quirk, Izuku was nervous. He was tremendously excited to learn about new quirks, but will he be able to properly complete this exercise without progressively risking his mental health? Recovery Girl didn't know about this exercise, so it makes sense that she hadn't intervened until now. Hound Dog was also unaware of it, and it wasn't his legitimate business to know what the hero course was doing after all. He didn't want to withdraw in case he was unanimously chosen to fight anyone, the general education students. That would be suspicious, and he didn't want his classmates wondering why he didn't want to participate. When nobody was looking, he took his glove off. His scars itched so much, especially when he was anxious. It made him want to sink his nails deep into the reddish patches of skin, but that would make it worse. He made a mental note to talk to Recovery Girl after the matches were over to see if she had anything to ease the itching. He carefully put his shabby glove back on. If this exercise was similar to the one where he and Bakugo had to fight All Might, then fleeing would be the best course of action for him. Clenching his fists, his expression morphed to a determined one. He can do this. On the other side of the room, Blue Eyes were cautiously watching the greenette. Are you going to tell a teacher? Misao asked from behind Garia. His kind eyes also focused on the freckled boy who naturally went to talk eagerly with his possible love partners. Garia ruefully weighed her options. The teachers had intentionally let them know about who they were going to go against a day before. The pro heroes undoubtedly wanted it to be a surprise for the heroes in training. So Class 1 and 1B were going out blind while the chosen students from 1 degrees Celsius had the upper hand. She was going to go against Jiru, Oase, Kirishima, and Midoriya. The worst outcome possible that they could have chosen. The boy had more mental disorders and trauma than an entire group of veteran heroes together. Garia wouldn't allow this to happen. Not when she could do something about it. The white-haired girl finally nodded. Masahiro, who was now at her side, hummed. Tell them to take Todoroki off as well. He eyed one of his classmates who also had a mental quirk like them and that was voluntarily participating in this practical exercise. Suzuki Nagisa had a memory absorption quirk. It allowed them to view any important memory of their target, but it also made the victim relive them. Since the exercise naturally requires the general education students to instantly win, it was obvious that Suzuki would typically choose to see the bad memories to neutralize their overmatched opponent. They didn't need the bi-colored boy and Nagisa to have a panic attack because of a silly exercise. Reliving all the bad memories would destroy both of them emotionally. It doesn't take an extraordinary genius to notice that Endeavor wasn't a good parent. The hesitance from Todoroki Shoto to use his fire quirk confirmed that, and that burn scar over his left eye was more than enough for him to get the picture. Dayton thoughtfully examined his peculiar expression for a moment before promptly giving him an emphatic nod and leaving the waiting room quietly. Shinsu, who was talking incessantly to Monoma, walked towards Misao a couple of minutes after the girl voluntarily left. He looked around confusedly for a moment before turning to look thoughtfully at him. Where is Garia? Shinsu asked anxiously. He was sure that he saw the girl here not even a minute ago. The dark-skinned boy looked at the greenette on the other side of the room cautiously. She wanted to ask your homeroom teacher something before the matches start. Garia was thankful that she didn't have to naturally spend too much time to find who she was looking for. She quickly approached Aizawa and Vlad King on the corridor. The two teachers were making their way to the ground beta. Both men eyed her suspiciously but didn't stop her. Mr. Aizawa. She bowed politely. The dark-haired man gently waved his hand dismissively. Aizawa is good enough. Right. She intentionally kept looking from him to the other hero. Getting the message, the pro-hero sighed tiredly. Go ahead of me, Vlad. We'll catch up to you soon. The blood hero naturally hesitated for a moment, but wisely decided to leave before the other promptly lost his long-suffering patience. He would properly ask about what the kid wanted to talk about later. As soon as the white-haired man was out of sight, Dayton turned to look at the other teacher. I don't want Midori on the chosen group to go against me, the white-haired girl asked exasperatedly. Shoto arched a puzzled brow. Why would she ask for that? She could totally win this match with her quirk. Did the problem child get on her bad side when he wasn't looking? He sighed resignedly. He can't leave his kids for one meaningful minute without them making new enemies. Listen, kid, if you have anything against Midoriya, then I suggest. He'll die if I use my quirk on him. The frightened girl blurted out. Aizawa instantly felt his heart skip a beat at her tremulous voice. The terrible words got stuck on his throat. The nervous girl was staring anxiously at him with a serious look. He frowned at seeing the small flash of fear deep in her eyes. Explain. Okay. But first of all, I just know about this because of my quirk. I didn't mean to breach his privacy. I'm just a touchy person, so I forget to not get in contact with people, she gulped. I'm telling you this because I am required to do my best and show the extent of my quirk, and if I do that with Midori, I don't think he will recover from that, she said, inevitably meeting his frightened eyes. Eraserhead took a moment to properly process the information. Taking a deep breath, he legitimately had a bad feeling about this. Your quirk can intensify any mental disorder ... and for you to be so sure that the kid can't take it. He closed his eyes, praying that he was wrong. How bad is it? The girl seemed to hesitate to give her answer. She didn't want out the boy like this. It was his dreadful secret to tell. But if telling his homeroom teacher could help her avoid the upcoming situation. She sighed tiredly, nervously playing with her fingers. He has a terrible case of PTSD. His depression is chronic and it seemed to have gotten worse recently. I can tell that he has at least 2 panic attacks per day. His anxiety is eating him alive. He can barely talk when he is not muttering. He flinches at loud noises, and even if he acts kind towards everyone, there is this spark of fear in his eyes, like he is expecting everyone to turn on him, to beat him up and humiliate him. He recently has stopped eating properly as well, and I saw. She let out a shaky breath. I saw deep cuts on his wrists when he wasn't looking. There are old and new scars. The flesh was really damaged, probably from how much abuse it endures. Aizawa had his eyes closed. He was pale, and as the girl went on, he felt an overwhelming sense of dread wash over him. How hadn't he noticed this before? Looking back to the first days of class, it was obvious. The boy was the embodiment of a red flag. flinching every time someone got near him, jumping nervously when someone talked too loud, among other signs of abuse. And he had undoubtedly noticed that the boy had become skinny these last couple of weeks, but he didn't think much about it at the time. I could tell that he tried to kill himself not too long ago. The girl was holding tears as she spoke. The sharp gasp the man let out had her look away, avoiding his eyes. And maybe last week. I don't know, I'm as sorry. He felt a single tear going down on his face. He was shaking. He was just a kid. What could have happened that was so bad to have him try to commit suicide? What has this kid been through? Why wasn't he there when the boy desperately needed him? He couldn't help but feel like he had failed his kid, even if he wasn't at fault. He should have noticed it early. How the hell was Midoriya able to smile when he was clearly suffering? He would properly fix this after they go through this exercise. He would talk to the kid. There is no way that he is going to let this continue when he is aware of the situation. He just hopes he's not too late to save the boy. I'll be taking the problem child out of the exercise. He pinched his nose in annoyance. Their idea was putting the strongest student against people with mental quirks because he wanted to make a point that it didn't matter how flashy their quirk was. Raw power could do nothing if you can't deal with quirks that can mess your mind up. The girl promptly let out a deep sigh of profound relief before gasping abruptly. Oh, Misao told me that it would be a wise choice to take Todoroki-kun off as well. Aizawa's astonished eyes widened in unspeakable horror. Am I going to get an explanation for that one? He asked exasperatedly. No, sorry, she gently scratched the back of her head awkwardly. He merely let out a tired sigh. Alright, he was sure that he would be bald at the end of the year if things continued like this. Misao was in the preparation room, and as soon as both teachers were back, they called the first group of heroes in training to go to the fake city. They were still unaware of who they were going to fight. Masahiro was going against Kota, Monoma, Kendo, and Bakugo. Fucking great. He grinned triumphantly. Misao closed his eyes, relentlessly focusing on the info his quirk had gathered from the blonde. He was way too easy to read, but he needed something to trigger him, to make him hurt, and from what he saw today, he knew who could provide such info. Midoriya Izuku. He had given a quick look at his mind earlier on and had gotten info enough. Quirk discrimination. Bullied, hurt, tormented by others, profound depression, many cuts, scars all over, loud noises, it burns, dread and self-loathing. Suicide. If you want to be a hero so bad, why don't take a swan of the roof and pray to get it? You can't be a hero. Useless. I am so sorry, Izuku. Such a fucking Deku. He concentrates fiercely and carefully formulated the possible scenarios from the little information. His quirk and his analyses gathered from the small interactions with the UA students. Bakugo was temperamental, desperately wants to prove that he is better than others, probably has the protagonist syndrome since he calls others extra. Problems with self-esteem, likes picking fights with anyone who seems to be more powerful than him, looks down on those who look weak, always seems to stare every once in a while at the green-haired boy with deliberate malice. Said boy flinches when the blonde calls him Deku when he seems okay with others calling him that. Midoriya Izuku. The boy flinches when people approach him from his back, is a nervous mess, stops muttering when Bakugo is near, has burn scars in form of sparks on his back, was probably bullied for unknown reasons, flinches at contact and at loud noises. Both him and the blonde frequented the same school, glances at the other with expectations like he wants the other to talk to him despite how he is treated, probably wants to be his friend again. He doesn't need to gather much valuable info on the other three. He would take them down quickly. His main target was Bakugo after all. He allegedly wanted to make the boy undoubtedly suffer. He wanted to make him see the extensive damage he has allegedly done. A huge part of his personal motive for this was that he was pissed off. The way the boy had cruelly treated the greenette early hit home. He saw himself in the boy. Someone who desperately needed help but couldn't tell anyone from instinctive fear. The same thing could be typically applied to the precious Todoroki boy, but his case was more complicated. He wants Midoriya's tormentor to see the terrible consequences of his actions. He wants everyone to know that their precious little hero was nothing but an abuser at the precise moment. Because if no one does anything about this critical situation, then they will have another endeavor in the making. Are you ready, Masahiro? Megumi, his homeroom teacher, politely asked politely. He grinned delightedly, chuckling deviously. I'm more than ready, sensei, he said, licking his lips like a predator savoring the blood of its prey. He was going to have so much fun destroying Bakugo Katsuki. Mizuki shivered involuntarily at the mischievousness in the teen's sinister eyes. Masahiro Masao was one of her best students, but she knew how the boy could lose himself in the sadistic pleasure of using his quirk after not using it for so long. It wasn't his fault. She knows that quirks can be cruel with their users. Some would lose their sanity or change their personalities completely, and the quirks that couldn't be turned off, those were the worst. She just prays that Misao won't take it too far. Misao was thrilled. He hasn't felt this particular way in such a long time. He didn't take his quirk suppressant pills today, so his quirk was screaming hysterically for him to use it. He walked carefully around the fake city for a couple of uncomfortable minutes and impulsively decided to stop in a dark alley. He didn't have to wait for too long to find his first target. He had instantly noticed a couple of bunnies allegedly stalking him and leaving to somewhere not too long after the exercise started. So he just waited patiently for the shy boy to reluctantly decide to cautiously approach him. He heard soft steps coming from the right side of the street. Koda turned a corner to enter the alley and came face to face with Misao. The quiet boy startled at seeing yellow and purple mesmerizing eyes glowing mesmerizingly from the dark. The hero in training nervously commanded a couple of local birds to instantly attack him, but it was in vain. The moment Misao made eye contact with the ravens, they went still and dropped to the filthy floor with a small thud. Koji's eyes widened in unspeakable horror, looking at the unmoving birds' unconscious bodies in fear, thinking that they were dead. The critical moment the boy's terrified eyes locked with his, Koda went still. His eyes became glassy, and not long after that, the boy was falling down to the floor. Koda, Koji is down. Misao chuckled quietly. He felt bad for horribly scaring the boy, but well, he had to conserve energy, so he just ended this match quickly. Now, where is his next target? I should have used him to locate the others, he sighed regretfully, resigned and walked away. Monoma was pissed off. Bakugo, the other blonde, didn't even stay to carefully formulate a coherent plan. He just stormed off, merely saying that he didn't need their help, and went to find their opponent on his own. He growled ferociously. If the teen wanted to get his ass beaten, so be it. Nito was patrolling the filthy alleys. Izuku was on the top of a ruined building, desperately trying to get a better view from there. She had reluctantly sent Koda to a small part of the abandoned city. The boy had sent instantly several unusual animals to find Misao's whereabouts, but neither of them had heard of him. It's been a couple of minutes. That was until Koda, Koji is down. Already, the copycat exclaimed indignantly in dreadful shock. It has been only just 5 minutes since they went separate ways. How could this have happened? Monoma, can you hear me? Kendo's familiar voice echoed exasperatedly through the communicator device. Pressing a button, he replied, "Yeah, how are things up there?" "So far I'm out of luck," she sighed stressfully. "Damn, I can't believe we already lost Koda. I'm kind of scared now." "I share the sentiment." He looked around nervously before talking quietly this time. "We should be careful. I'm passing by the street near the restaurant." "Got it. I'll be moving to another building then." Monoma sighed as the call ended. This was bad. If their opponent could take one of them so easily, then they should act fast. "Hey there," a gruff voice whispered tenderly on his right ear, its tone full of deliberate malice. Monoma instantly jumped, turning to instantly see a smug Masahiro. How the hell I didn't hear him coming. Misao was smiling toothily at him. He shivered involuntarily. There was something definitely wrong with that smile, and it unnerved him. He quickly went to instantly press the button from the sophisticated device on his ear to call Kendo when the other inadvertently opened his mouth. "I wouldn't do that if I were you," the teen said coolly. His nervous hand froze mid-air. "What the? You have a copying quirk, don't you?" the frightening boy asked curiously. He didn't respond. He was still trying to figure out why he can't move. First, it was just his hand. Now it was like his entire body was instantly frozen in place. "I sincerely believe I have asked you a question." The boy's tone was still soothingly, but Monoma could hear the unmistakable hint of authority on it. "Why yes," he stuttered his direct answer against his will. He was starting to feel numb. His head hurts. What was he doing at the ground beta? Who was this person in front of him? His mind was a confusing mess. He couldn't remember. "Interesting. Talk to your partner. Tell her that you saw me passing by and act normal when she is distracted. Chop her on the back of her neck and wrap her body with your capture weapon." Masahiro paused for an odd moment, undoubtedly thinking about how he could still use the other's quirk to his own favor. "After doing that, take her headset and give it to me. I'll call when I need your help. Is that okay?" "Yeah, sure." Monoma found himself agreeing with what the other was saying. He shouldn't be taking orders, he thinks, but somehow he couldn't really find in him to care for some reason, so he just obeyed and used his device to talk to Kendo. He told her to meet him in front of the local restaurant. The moment the red-headed girl saw him, she ran toward his direction, asking where he saw Misao disappear. He pointed to one direction. As she turned to look at the empty street, she felt a jolt of pain at the back of her neck, and the next thing she knew, she was unconscious. Kendo Izuku has been captured. At another side of the abandoned city, a furious blonde was cussing like there was no tomorrow. "Where the fuck are you, you piece of shit?" the blonde snarled impatiently. He was naturally expecting to fight someone strong and have some fun beating their ass, but the teachers had to put him against some weakling wimp. What's the point of this exercise anyway? Those Gen Ed students looked like they couldn't even throw a punch. Sensei said they had powerful mind quirks, so what? He had beaten the shit out of Shinsu in one of their sparring sessions without breaking a sweat. He could beat these little shits too. Though as much as he had confidence that he would win, he wonders bitterly how the hell the other two were defeated so easily. "Hello," a sweet sing-song voice came gently from behind him. From combative instinct, Bakugo turned and let out 2 big explosions in the direction of where the voice assuredly came. He saw a familiar figure making an acrobatic move to tactfully avoid his violent explosion. Well, you know that could have killed me if I haven't dogged it in time, right? It was that fucker from earlier. He didn't remember shit after yelling at Deku, but he had a feeling that this guy has something to do with it. Bakugo growled furiously. I'm gonna beat till you're black and blue. Fucker, he threw a punch which the other easily dodged. Oh, now I know why the League of Villains tried to recruit you, the bastard chuckled lightly. Bakugo instantly froze, turning to look attentively at the other slowly with a confused frown. His reaction had the other grinning wickedly with deliberate malice. Your attitude isn't of a hero at all. You know this is just a test, and yet you were trying to seriously hurt me right now, see? Masao brought a hand to his chin like he was deep in thought. Katsuki's ominous frown deepened. That fucker was just trying to get on his nerves. He squinted his eyes. Was this somehow related to his quirk? Whatever, he is going to end this match, so he won't have to look at this useless piece of shit longer. He prepared to use his gauntlets to create a big explosion that didn't seem to faze the other team, though. You're just a bully, aren't you? It doesn't even take that much to realize that the boy purred contentedly the negative words. I can see it in your eyes, that glee when you are about to hurt someone. The students in the waiting room that were watching warily through the huge monitor flinched at that. They traded glances between them, inevitably asking what he was up to. Some were fidgeting uncomfortably at how pleased the others seemed to be when speaking. One certain brunette was watching the scene apprehensively. He had a bad feeling about this. The teachers and the principal were frowning thoughtfully at the student's obvious chosen tactic, but scarcely seemed to be in what the teen was aggressively trying to do. The teacher from class 1 degrees Celsius, on the other hand, looked pale for some unknown reason. She was nervously looking at the match like she desperately wanted to intervene. Masahiro Masao licked his lips as his quirk unlocked new information at the blonde's favorable reaction. Oh, his humorous smile widened. He was loving this. So many buttons to push, so much to reveal, so easy to manipulate. The other teen seemed naturally to be confused, Masao's quirk doing its work with the other's disordered mind. He took a step forward, obsessively watching as the ash blonde was hopelessly lost in his own thoughts. You like hurting them, don't you? Like to mark them with your quirk. It's like your signature mark, to let other people know that was your doing. His eyes sparkled with joy as the other flinched. You like to make them cry while you severely burn their skin until the raw flesh is exposed and the blood is sprawled on the floor. I have no idea what the fuck you're talking about, you bastard. Bakugo snarled, growing defensive. Masao carefully noted the hesitance in his tone. Ah yes, that's good. His quirk was doing a good job at molding the other's thoughts. He saw it in the boy's eyes. He could see that he didn't quite believe his own words. Do you really, though? Maybe you just forgot. He let out a sigh. It was to be expected from someone like you, he said in mocking, keenly disappointed, solemnly shaking his head. What the hell is that supposed to mean? Bakugo growled menacingly, taking a step backward unintentionally. Oh, you know, people like you tend to not remember the atrocious things they had done, simply because they couldn't bother to. They don't care enough. He got another step closer. He held himself from laughing contentedly as the other carefully took another nervous step backward. How about I remind you? He purred. Do you remember when you crushed his dreams? How would you beat him up and mock him? How every single day you would bruise him and use your quirk, make him bleed, beg for you to stop. How you watched him with pleasure as he cried for help or squirmed under your gaze. Remember that day where you had hurt him so badly that you broke his ribs and he lost consciousness? Bakugo went pale, his pupils twitching from fear. No. How did he know? How the fuck did he know? Masao parted his lips slightly in sadistic pleasure at the other's reaction. He gathered even more information and he found something that would help him break this boy. You loved to call him useless and let your explosions on his face every time he tried to approach you. I can't understand what he saw on you to have him think you could be friends after all the shit you put him through, he said in a sad tone. He didn't have to fake it. He truly felt sorry for the greenette. He seemed like a nice kid. The way he acted after he used his quirk had him feel a deep fondness for him. But the foolish boy in front of him, he felt nothing but profound disgust. He had to deal unjustly with people like him his entire damn life. He wanted nothing but to make him suffer the way people like him, people like Midoriya, had to suffer keenly on the violent hands of kids like him. He naturally felt extraordinary pleasure at merely seeing the other shaking in horror. The boy was afraid, because he belatedly realized that he wasn't supposed to know any of this. He was afraid of what else Masahiro could intentionally expose when his dear little group of loyal friends were anxiously watching. The Baka squad were all defensive as they heard the first-year student talk. They desperately wanted to believe that what he was saying wasn't true. Come on, he's a bit rough, but that's just how he is. He would never hurt someone, Kirishima said with conviction. Mina, Kaminari, and Siro nodded, but deep inside, they all carefully considered the other's words hesitantly. Did their friend really do that to someone? Aizawa was staring at the screen with a grimace. He knew Bakugo had a bad temper, but he didn't expect the boy to be the kind of person who would bully someone, especially to that considerable extent. He had a hunch that he knew who Katsuki's potential victim was, and for Bakugo's sake, he better be damn wrong. Turning to the homeroom teacher from the class 1 degrees Celsius, he gently tapped on her frail shoulder to get her attention. She aggressively looked at him with a nervous look. Is what your student is telling is true? He asked exasperatedly. He was praying for the helpless woman to say no, that this was just something her student had to do in favor of his quirk to work. Everyone in the room turned to look at Mizuki, wanting to know what she would say. That just made her even more nervous, but she knew she couldn't avoid the sore subject. His quirk is a mix of his parents, mental manipulation and memory gathering. It allows him to compel people by speaking. He can persuade people into doing anything he wants. Misao can manipulate, modify and control the thoughts, mindsets, and upper brain functions, allowing the ability to render others unconscious, suppress their memories, and negate the use of abilities. Increase, decrease mental capacity, modify minds to be agreeable. It also allows him to see bits of personal information about someone's life. She took a deep breath. His quirk makes him enjoy manipulating and can't be deactivated. That's why he doesn't speak as much as my other students. In other words, yes, everything Misao had just said is true. Most of the class 1 gasped in profound horror, not wanting to erroneously believe that this was true. Todoroki wasn't fazed at all. He had shrewdly suspected the boy would have done something like that considering his aggressive personality. The way he usually acted towards Izu forcibly reminds him of his cruel father, so he has always been wary of him. Uraraka wasn't surprised, but instead, she was disappointed. She was reluctantly beginning to naively believe that the explosive blonde wasn't so bad after their sports festival match. But she guessed she was wrong after all. Both of their attentions were brought to the shaking form of their boyfriend. The boy had tears gathering at the edge of his eyes. They could see the pain and sadness in his eyes. Was he disappointed that his childhood friend had done such a thing, or, connecting the dots, they felt their hearts stop beating for a moment. Their eyes darkened as they stared at the screen with raw anger. Bakugo's mind was a mess. It was like his thoughts were louder and he was starting to feel numb. He had tried to use his gauntlets, but his body wouldn't obey him no matter how hard he tried. How the hell this prick knew about his past with Deku? Did that weakling tell him about it? Did he go crying into this guy's arms to cry about how useless he was? Kasi-chan, the clever boy, purred his longtime nickname. A shiver went through his spine. That sounds so fucking wrong. He didn't like hearing this nickname coming from this guy. Nobody calls him that but Deku. It felt wrong having someone else call him that. Do you remember when you told him to commit suicide? He took a sharp inhale through gritted teeth. He, unfortunately, does remember. He had waited after school that day at the stairs that led to the roof. He was so afraid that the damn nerd was going to do it. But when he didn't show up, he felt relieved and went home. Did you know he had followed your little advice later on? Misao's cruel eyes were cold, penetrating deep into his unfortunate soul. Bakugo felt his heart stop as he held his breath in utter horror. No, the nerd wouldn't. He didn't mean it. Deku never took his words to heart. Why would he give him ears when he has stubbornly ignored all the times he had told him to stop chasing his dream to become a hero? From all the things he has said, why was that the one thing that the greenette decided to take to heart? Misao took a deep sigh. He looked around until he conveniently located a camera and merely asked for the teachers to mute the audio. Aizawa, who was shaking from anger in the waiting room, was glad to complain. He took the opportunity to take the students out of the waiting room to calm down. After a couple of minutes waiting passively to make sure nobody was hearing them, he instantly turned to properly look at the blonde. Do you know how much Midoriya hates himself because of what you had done? The teen flinched. His contemplative eyes were focused on the ground. His hands were shaking and the boy's heart was beating so fast that Misao could hear it from where he stood. Garia had to ask for your homeroom teacher to not put him against her because she knew if she used her quirk on him he would never recover, he said with a fierce snarl, making the blonde shrink into himself. Do you know how much you fucked him up? Because I do. I know that every single day he thinks about killing himself, and when you're a piece of shit towards him he cuts himself. I know that he genuinely thinks he is worthless and that he doesn't think he is worth being in the hero course because he keeps remembering all the time you said he was useless. Now tell me, Bakugo, what did you gain doing that? What good it brought you terrorizing the only friend you had for 10 years? What excuse you have to have abused him for countless times to the point that he tried to commit suicide? Bakugo couldn't bring himself to respond to him. He had no excuse. He just hated how Midoriya was so determined to be a hero even when he was quirkless. He was jealous because he knew he would be a great hero. He knew that Izuku would surpass him and he saw him as an imminent threat to his foolish dream of becoming number one. He felt bitter, like a spoiled brat that couldn't take it when someone was better than him. Oh, he was a spoiled brat, wasn't he? His entire life he had naturally heard people showering him with doubtful compliments about how amazing his quirk was and how he would be a great hero. Nobody had stopped him when he severely burned Midoriya for the first time. They merely said that the boy justly deserved it for being so weak, so that means that it was okay to do it, right? Everyone called him useless and joined in when he would cruelly beat him up, so he wasn't wrong when doing it, right? Tell me, the dark-skinned boy said soothingly, getting back his attention. Was it worth it, Bakugo? Was it worth losing the only person who genuinely cared for you all these years? No, it wasn't. Thought so. Monoma, take him down for me, won't you? Behind Bakugo, Monoma was standing unsteadily with big fists laying on his sides. The boy's eyes were dull, and at the direct command, he used all his strength to throw a punch that sent the explosive boy through a building. Katsuki lost consciousness as he hit the hard concrete. Bakugo has been taken down. The precise moment Aizawa had led them out of the room to another one, chaos took over. The Baka squad was a terrible mess, and Kirishima seemed to be the most affected by the terrible revelation. He was sobbing while Mina was doing everything in her power to console him. Kaminari and Siro were still trying to find a plausible excuse to defend the explosive boy. They didn't want to accept that their friend would have done such horrendous things to someone else. After the Camino incident, they got closer than before. They have shared with each other how their school life was terrible. They were all bullied over something, Mina for looking ugly and demonic. Few girls dared to be friends with her. The rest would badmouth behind her back and even corner her after school to brutally beat her up. Siro had his arms constantly being broken by his classmates because he was a freak, and his constant smile and his disgusting elbows made them feel uncomfortable. Kaminari was always made fun of because his quirk severely affected his brain too much after he would use it. Having to listen to everyone from your class call you retarded every single day was tiring, and for a long time he just wanted things to end. Then there was Kirishima. Mina went to the same school as him, so she knew how bad it was. His classmates would often call him useless and that he would be better off dead for having such a pathetic coward's quirk. They would go as far as to drag him to the school's rooftop and tell him to jump, so knowing that his boyfriend had done something similar to someone made him feel sick. The others were all talking among themselves, mentioning how villainous Misao's quirk was and that he didn't have to go that far. Garia and Shinsu threw a nasty look at those who voiced their opinions on their classmate. The rest talked about how Netsu and the teachers intentionally let someone like Bakugo in their prestigious school. The guy didn't seem to care about his actions until Masahiro spilled his well-kept secret. When they were watching attentively the scene through the TV screen, they could see the exact moment that he questioned himself if what he had done was wrong or not. He wasn't aware that he was as bad as a villain until the other boy threw the terrible facts in his face. Izu, you need to breathe. Uraraka's desperate voice snapped the students out of their trance. The frightened girl was on her sore knees desperately trying to get Izuku to follow her, breathing in vain. There were tears on her frightened eyes and she looked genuinely terrified. Todoroki was kneeling at the boy's side, rubbing circles on his back and whispering soft words on his ears. The greenette was severely shaking under his gentle touch and didn't seem to be hearing either of them. Before any of them could offer him any kind word of comfort, the greenette pulled away from his friends and ran away using full cowl. The other two yelled his name in desperation and ran frantically after him, and their homeroom teacher followed the lead. A couple of classmates were about to do the same, but Ada blocked the exit, merely giving them a look that said to let those three handle the situation. The rest of Tenya's classmates all wore an unreadable expression, like they were trying to figure out something. He could see them beginning to draw a conclusion from the facts. Kirishima seemed to be the first to figure it out. He let out a sharp gasp in unspeakable horror. The others soon followed suit. Shinsu has been carefully trying to with difficulty suppress a fierce snarl all this time. He had already put two and two together and couldn't keep still anymore, so he made his way to leave the stunned silent room. Ada didn't try to stop him. The lilac-haired boy stomped angrily as he passed Ada, bumping into his shapely shoulder accidentally. Ada didn't mind it though. He could see how Hitoshi looked at Midoriya when he wasn't looking, so it was understandable that he would be this angry towards the matter. Tenya was also clearly angered about this situation. He knew Bakugo's violent temperament was bad, but it never crossed his mind that he would have bullied his friend for years before getting into UA. He wonders uneasily if Aizawa-sensei would promptly expel Bakugo after this. It is obvious from his raw anger that he also realized who the blonde's victim was. He saw from the corner of his eyes the white-haired girl from earlier leaving the room through the other door. As she left, the examinees that were overwhelmingly defeated in the test entered the room. Monoma looked like he was ready to brutally murder someone, while Kota and Kendo were just tired and looked nervously at the horrified faces from the cheerless room in apparent confusion. Nito looked around the room and tensed at not finding the green-haired boy. He walked towards Ada and asked in an urgent whisper, "How is he?" He also knew. Maybe he was still conscious when Masahiro was bashing Bakugo. They saw on the screen the possible moment that the 1°C student had promptly ordered him to merely wait behind an abandoned building before going after Bakugo. Not well, I can assure, Ada sighed tiredly. Did you see how Midoriya reacted? Mina said out loud what everyone was afraid to speak out, getting both Tenya and Nito's attention. I wonder why he panicked. It was like the foolish girl was asking for someone to say that it was nothing, to instantly tell her it was probably something unrelated to Bakugo. Jiru looked at the girl with a perplexed frown. She wouldn't be the person giving her the comforting answer that she desperately wanted. I think it's obvious why. Kaminari, despite his homeroom teacher confirming it was true, was still trying to figure out if he should trust what Misao had said. Biting his upper lip, he turned to the pink girl. You don't think? I'm sure as hell do, Jiru spat bitterly. You know it as well, you just don't want to accept it. Watching Midoriya's reaction made them all connect the dots. Only one thing in their mind. They remember Misao tauntingly calling the blonde Kakin. But just now, after watching the greenette having a panic attack, they finally understood. He was the boy that Bakugo had bullied, wasn't he? Izuku ran. He heard muffled voices calling for his name. Two of them undoubtedly made his heart clench. Acha and Shu are probably worried, but he can't face them right now, not after all of that. He used full cowl to move hastily. His partner's footsteps became soundless as he kept running. He made his way to his room, taking the stairs instead of the elevator, and as soon as he was in his room he broke down. Why did this have to happen? Everything was doing great. Oh god, Bakugo is going to kill me. Katsuki is going to tell the teachers that Izuku is the one at fault like he always did in middle school, and they will blame him for being useless, for not being able to stand up for himself. They will see how worthless he is and will expel him. He had gotten so far. He worked so hard to get into UA to be a hero. He can't get expelled now. Izuku couldn't breathe. He was hyperventilating, he belatedly realized. The blood pounded in his ears. His heart thudded in his chest so hard that he could feel his ribcage rubbing against his flesh. It hurt so much. He brought his shaking hands to his chest. His vision was disfiguring as if he was looking through a fisheye lens. In a blink of an eye, he was on the floor desperately trying his best to keep breathing. But it was in vain. His lungs clenched in protest. The lack of air was making him feel dizzy and felt like he was going to pass out at any moment. They all knew. They all know how pathetic he is now. Were they going to join Bakugo's side? Because he doesn't think he can deal with another class full of bullies. He has made so many beloved friends. He didn't want to lose them right now. He heard someone enter his room. He tried to see who it was, but his vision was too blurry. He flinched when the figure got closer. It stopped for a moment before crouching down and reluctantly approaching him slowly this time. He couldn't make out who this was, but he felt that it was safe to allow it to get near him after noting its hesitation. The person's arms carefully wrapped around him and Izuku felt warm. He felt safe. He hugged back, snuggling into the person's chest desperately. Whoever was gently holding him started to rub circles on his back and breathe deep in and out. Kid, follow my breathing. In and out. Come on, you can do this. The voice was muffled, but he followed what it asked. He heard it counting to 10. It undoubtedly helped him somehow to regulate his breathing. The arms around him tightened its hold. He felt grounded. Izuku nuzzled into the crook on the person's neck and let out an uncontrollable sob. SHH, you're okay, you're safe, I got you. Problem child, I'm here, the voice said softly, supporting its chin on his curls. Izuku felt a hand tenderly caress his curls, carefully bringing him closer to the person. He leaned into the affectionate touch, finding himself genuinely enjoying the paternal affection. They stayed like this for a couple of minutes, and the green-haired teen calmed down slowly. His chest hurt severely and he felt extremely exhausted. He hated having panic attacks. It inevitably made him feel like shit later on. His body was heavy, so he didn't make a move to lean away from whoever was in his room. Are you feeling any better, kid? Aizawa asked so soothingly. His voice weighted with legitimate worry. Oh, now that he wasn't focused on not dying, he recognized the voice. He flushed. Oh god, he just hugged his homeroom teacher like his life depended on it and cried all over him. Aizawa snorted at feeling a sudden heat on his shoulder. The tired boy nodded slowly but didn't move. He guessed that the boy was extremely tired. Well, at least he properly managed to calm down his problem child. It broke his heart to see the greenette gasping for air and in pain. The way the boy sobbed after he embraced him made his heart sink. He never wants to see any of his students like this again. Listen, kid, I'll be dealing with this problem on my own for now. You're scared and tired, so I won't be asking you to explain yourself, but I will be calling your mom for a meeting, all right? He explained rationally. The boy tensed at the mention of his fond mother and instantly began to panic again. Aizawa tightened his secure hold and gently swayed him back and forth slightly. Izuku was so desperate to ground himself that he didn't care that it was his teacher that he was clinging onto right now. He completely buried his face back on the man's neck and tried to even his ragged breathing once again. You're not in trouble, kid, but Bakugo sure as hell is. He spat the last part bitterly. Izuku was taken aback by that. He wasn't in trouble. Every time he told a teacher about Bakugo, he would get detention and the principal would tell him to stop trying to ruin Katsuki's chances of being a hero. After he had got himself to calm down again, he nodded. All right, his voice cracked. tiredness naturally getting the best of him. "Okay, tomorrow you have the day off, and if you appear in my class I'll drag you to your room by force," he said before the other could protest. To be honest, I think everyone should have a couple of days off after that. He could try requesting Nenzu to give the kids a break. After all, they were all clearly shaken by what happened today. He sighed tiredly. This was going to be a wearisomely long day. Aizawa gently lifted the boy with him as he stood up. The boy was still clinging to him. Shouta didn't mind. If it made his problem child feel better, he would stay hours like this, but he had to properly sort things out with Nenzu before things got out of hand. He gently placed the freckled boy on the bed. Taking a better look at him, he frowned. The boy's eyes were glassy. He may have calmed down, but what happened today clearly affected him badly. He brought a hand up and ruffled the boy's hair. The boy looked at him with a small smile and thanked him for helping him through his panic attack. "Don't thank me. I wasn't just going to let you break down when I could help." He walked towards the door, still making eye contact with the teen. "I'll be talking with Nenzu about Bakugo's dire situation. Stay here and rest, and if you require my help, don't hesitate to call me, okay? No matter what it is, I'll come here as soon as I can." His student nodded wearily, a bit taken aback by the heartfelt sincerity in his kind words. He took that as a confirmation and gently opened the door. As soon as he did that, he found a tired Uraraka panting in front of the door like she had just run an Olympic marathon. The brunette blatantly ignored Aizawa's miserable existence entirely for the sake of checking on her loved one. "Izu." The girl let out a deep sigh of content relief at seeing that he wasn't panicking anymore. She tackled him into a hearty hug. Todoroki, who arrived a couple of seconds later, joined in, gently wrapping him into a tight hug. They both had tears falling down their rosy cheeks. Aizawa kept silent, not really wanting to ruin their moment. He was a bit surprised. He had a hunch that Uraraka and Todoroki possessed profound feelings towards his problem child, but he didn't expect the boy to be dating both of them. He sighed fondly. At least the kid had those two to be there for him when he can't. As he left, he could still hear the desperate cries from the odd trio as they frantically tried to comfort each other. Aizawa merely shook his head with an amused expression. Midoriya's excessive crying was contagious. Now he had to deal with the principal. He wasn't looking forward to talking to Midoriya and co. Last time he saw her, she was ready to take Midoriya out of UA. They promised to fiercely protect him, but they had negligently failed since day one if they couldn't tell that he was a victim of possible abuse, and they allowed his abuser to frequent the same school, the same class as him, and did nothing about it until it was too late. How is he going to inform the woman that her son has tried to commit suicide several times? How will she react when he notifies her that her so-loving Bakugo was the cause of her son's depression? Ugh, what about Bakugo's parents? Bakugo Mitsuki was as bad as her son, to be honest. But she was even worse since she was an adult. At least Katsuki would shut up when he called him out. He genuinely didn't want to conduct this conversation. Misao felt dizzy. It was like he has just woken up. He felt a bit numb. The dark-haired had taken a couple of quirk suppressant pills after Vlad King walked him out of the ground beta to the now uninhabited waiting room. So now he was slowly going back to normal. He could think straight again, and oh boy, what the fuck had he done? Misao felt terrible as he anxiously watched the recordings. Vlad King and his homeroom teacher had allowed him to watch them before they left to talk to Nenzu. He wasn't supposed to be so nasty. His intention was to taunt the blonde a bit, but what he had done while under his quirk's control was absolutely cruel. The way Bakugo looked at him with utter horror made his stomach turn. This shouldn't have happened. Yes, the boy deserved to face the consequences of his actions, but he didn't deserve to be exposed in front of those who consider him a good person. And the Midoriya boy must be panicking right now, since from what he overheard from the others, they seemed to have instantly caught on that the boy Misao was talking about must be Izuku. Garia was at his side. The girl was quiet. She had her hand on his shoulder, using her quirk to calm him down and prevent any panic attack. He was grateful for that. "I fucked up," he sheepishly admitted. The white-haired girl hummed. "Yes, you did," she said softly. "It's been years since you've last used your quirk. This was going to happen no matter what. If not now, it would have happened later on." She sighed resignedly. "You can't keep using suppressant pills forever, Misao. It's not going to solve the problem. It's just hurting you," the girl said sadly. "Yeah," he chuckled bitterly. "And how else am I going to control this? I can't even talk without manipulating people if I don't take the pills." He yelled the last sentence. He took a deep, tremulous breath. It's not like he wants to take the pills. But if he doesn't, nobody would be safe. One time he manipulated his entire class in middle school for months, and he didn't realize that until a new student pointed out their weird behavior. "I should have declined to participate in this exercise." He groaned in agony, bringing his hands to his face. Since this morning he has already been losing himself to his quirk. The thoughts of wanting to make the blonde suffer earlier have already been a bad sign, but he has thought it couldn't get worse from there. He was so damn wrong. "I'm not going to say you're not at fault, because you are. You don't have control over your quirk, and you knew it was going to end up badly, so yeah, you should have declined. But what's done is done," the girl muttered under her breath. But to be honest, I'm glad that you lost control. Maybe that's just what he needed, Gara mused. Misao looked at her in shock. Before he could question her, she brought a hand up, motioning him to be quiet. I'm glad that asshole got what was coming for him, as much as I rather solve things with conversation. Anyone can tell that he won't get that what he did was wrong unless you acted like a douche and rubbed all the shit he did on his face. So yeah, I'm glad you did that. I know you hate when your quirk makes you lose control and do shit like this, but I see no other way to get to him. Certain times we will find people who can't be fixed by kind words, and you need to treat them the way they treat others. As much as you have been unkind because of your quirk, you still managed to bring some positive results. He has room to improve, and you gave him a push to start his recovery. If it weren't for you, this would go unnoticed by everyone and would have a second endeavor in the future. So yeah, don't be so sad. At least he will be confronted about his actions and will have the chance to improve. She took a deep breath and finally turned to adequately meet his eyes. She was genuinely surprised to see how much sincere admiration his heterochromatic eyes held. Moments like this remind me why I love you so much, damn. He faked a passionate sob. Dayton blushed. You big sap. She punched his shoulder lightly, earning a laugh from the other. She smiled. At least she managed to get him to lighten up a bit. But for real, thank you. I needed to hear that, he said softly. Her features softened. She gave him an understanding smile. You're welcome. Mizuki, who was watching the scene, fondly faked a cough to get their attention. They both jumped, startled, and turned to look at her in surprise. I talked with Vlad King and Nenzu. We both came to the conclusion that you're not completely at fault. I should have told them to not let you participate as well. She sighed contentedly, getting close to her student and gently shuffling his hair. You won't face any negative consequences, but you will have to attend quirk classes to learn how to control your quirk properly, and if you're okay with, we can mark an appointment with Hound Dog for therapy. Your mental health is clearly affected by your quirk, so it would be good for you to attend. Think about it, his homeroom teacher said worriedly. Thanks, sensei. He smiled gently. You're welcome, kid. She smiled softly at him before remembering why she was here. Nenzu told me to request your help. Misao exchanged a brief glance with Garia before arching an anxious brow in suspiciousness. Help with what? He asked hesitantly. His teacher gently waved her hand, blithely dismissing his excessive worry. When we presented him the recording, he instantly went to dig into Bakugo's middle school to see if he had missed any marks on his record. He didn't find any, which is strange since bullying is a thing the school should put on his record if they saw it. So either Bakugo was really good at doing his bullying somewhere the teacher couldn't see, or ... the teacher saw it and decided to not do anything about it. We need you to use your quirk to find more information. As a result, we are going to start an investigation, and we require someone who can gather some info from them. She smiled serenely at him. Misao stared at her a bit surprised. He wasn't expecting the principal to ask him to help after what he had done. All right, his quirk caused him to say some nasty shit, but it was still his fault for getting angry and not withdrawing when he had the chance. He sighed. He will apologize to Midoriya and Bakugo later. Yeah, sure, I'll do it. It's the least thing I could do to make up to Midoriya. Midoriya & Co. was kind and a patient person. She has forgiven a lot of people who had done terrible things to her, but that's just how she is. She believes in second chances, so she was always willing to forgive someone. She gave her best friend Mitsuki a second chance. She gave Masaru a second chance. She gave her husband a second chance. But sometimes, in certain occasions, she can't bring herself to even consider forgiving someone. It usually applied to people who haven't hurt her, but who had hurt her family, because she can deal with shitty people and getting hurt, but nobody messes with her family and walks away unpunished. If anyone dares to lay a finger on someone from her family, there will be hell to pay. She won't be giving second chances. She tenderly cares for her family more than she cares for herself. She would do anything to protect them. So when she receives a call from Yue, she is already on edge, expecting the worst. Was Izuku hurt? Was he kidnapped? As soon as she promptly accepted the call, she heard a male voice. She recognizes it. Aizawa Shouta. She remembers him. He was with All Might when they asked for her permission for Izuku to live in the dorms. To be honest, the only reason she let her beloved son keep going to Yue was that Eraser had promised to keep him safe and protect him with his life. All Might had promised the same thing, but the black-haired had so much more emotion in his voice when he said it. She could tell that he cared for his students, that he would die protecting them if necessary, and for a moment she felt like she was talking to a parent. The man had adopted 21 children or didn't seem to realize it, or maybe he just doesn't want to admit that. The man's voice was tired. She frowned worriedly, but before she could ask if he was okay, the man told her the motive he called her. He spent an hour on the line properly explaining everything that happened. What the girl from class 1 degrees Celsius told him about Izuku's mental health, and it worried him how bad it was. It broke her heart when the pro hero mentioned that her son had tried to commit suicide a couple of days ago. She thought he had gotten better, he seemed fine. Years of medication, and he had finally recovered after entering UA. But maybe he never did get better. He was good at pretending, good at hiding bruises. It was a bad habit that he got from her. Hide your pain so you won't worry your loved ones. She would need to talk to him. Aizawa continued to explain the next events, from how the exercise was supposed to work and how it got out of hand because one of the students couldn't control their quirk. A quirk that ended bringing up to their attention how Bakugo had hurt her son, that he had told her Izuku to kill himself, about all the beating and burned scars that he gave her child. Midoriya and Co was kind and a patient person, but the moment someone hurts her son, she's everything but kind. After agreeing to meet them in a couple of hours, she made a call that she should have done a long time ago because she has a feeling that just her presence won't be enough. Her son needs as much support as he can, and she knew that calling this person would brighten his day. Because as much as she hates the man for not being present, her child loved him despite only receiving calls from his father. She waited for whoever had his number to pick up. A surprised voice answered. "Hello? Yes, it's Inko talking," she sighed. "Tell Hisashi to bring his ass home in 2 hours or he can forget that we're married," the woman said fiercely. "I don't care that he is in a complicated situation. Or he is here in 2 hours or is over for him, got it?" A moment of silence, then a sigh could be heard from the other line. "Thank you. Oh, and tell him that it's about Izuku. He is hurt mentally and physically," she thinks to herself. She rolled her eyes as she heard the man take a sharp intake of fear. He knew that Hisashi would be beyond angry that someone had hurt his son. He may not have been present in Izuku's life for the last 9 years, but he still loved both of them. "Remember, he has 2 hours or he will never see me and Izuku ever again. Have a nice day, Jurin." She hangs up. The precise moment her husband gets home, she is going to have a little talk with him. The man had the audacity of merely disappearing for 9 years and then one day appearing on TV engaged in a fight against All Might and getting sent to Tartarus. Why couldn't he have just told her about it and given up villainy? Was his family not more important than whatever reason he had to fight the former number 1? An hour later, a purple mist appears in the living room. 2 figures walk out from the portal. A tall man wearing formal clothing steps onto the floor. He is holding a little girl with snow-white hair and one single tiny horn on the right side of her head. "Hisashi ... Why is there a little girl at our house?" Her husband turns quickly at hearing her voice, his blank expression morphing into a delighted one. "Oh, hello love," the man greets her enthusiastically with those passionate eyes of his. The woman he fell in love with still looked as beautiful as ever. Even when she clearly gained some weight, she still looked gorgeous. He would love this woman in any shape or form, no matter what. Inko blushed a bit but didn't allow herself to fall for his lovesick red eyes. He had done too many terrible things for her to completely forgive him, like he didn't just disappear from her life and lied about working abroad. "You still haven't answered me, Hisashi," the woman said coldly. The man sprung, startled at her tone. Who could imagine that the man who had terrified thousands of people would be scared of his own wife? The horned girl turned to look at her with big red eyes. Her white hair was messily tied into a bun and she had a big lollipop shoved in her mouth. The man, who was now looking at the greenette with a thin smile, sweat dropped. "Surprise?" He chuckled nervously. If a stare could kill, Midoriya Hisashi would have died 5 times on the stop. For the sake of not scaring the little girl, she won't maul this dumbass right here and right now. Later on, though, she was going to kill him. Looking back at the little girl, she sighed. At least he didn't hurt her. "Hisashi ... You better have done something, so no one can tell that you've miraculously escaped. Our son's mental state isn't really good right now, so finding out that you're a villain, it won't be helping him out at all," she said sternly. The white-haired man frowned worriedly, thinking how bad could it be that his wife asked him to come even after seeing him on live TV fighting All Might. "I left a clone in my place," was all he could manage to say. He didn't want to anger his wife more than she already was. If there was anybody in this world that he feared, it was this woman. He, however, can't believe how much power she has over him. She didn't have a powerful quirk and could easily kill her, but he would never dare to lay a finger on the woman he fell in love with. "Good." She sighs tiredly before looking at the troubled girl. "Now, sweetie, what's her name?" the woman asked softly. The little girl was taken aback by the genuine kindness that radiated from the greenette. She promptly pulled off the lollipop of her mouth and responded in a timid, low-pitched voice. "It's Iuri." Inko gave the girl a smile, the kind of radiant smile that would make anyone's day better. "Iuri, that's a lovely name." She chuckled gleefully at seeing the girl blush at her compliment. "So, sweetie, how did you end up here? Are you hurt?" The woman threw a suspicious look at the man. He looked offended that she would even assume that he had done anything to the girl. But to be honest, after everything he has done, he didn't have the right to complain. His wife was right in thinking the worst of him after what she saw. Now love, I would never hurt a child. I would not lower myself to that level, he huffed. The woman merely stared at him with a deadpan expression which made him very uncomfortable. Her attention was brought back to the girl when the little one started to speak once again. I was hurt, but Potato Man saved me from the bird people. He asked me to help him. I was afraid of using my curse, but he taught me how to use it. I healed him so he wouldn't look like a potato anymore. I did good, right? The girl looked at the woman with sparkling eyes, waiting for her approval. Inko blinked slowly for a couple of seconds, the words still sinking in her head. Then she burst into boisterous laughter. Potato Man, she wheezed. Yeah, he looked like an ugly potato. The lovely girl nodded eagerly with sincere conviction. Ouch, the man pouted at them. The audacity of this child. He didn't even look like a potato back then. He was just slightly disfigured. He may have looked atrocious, but a potato. Inko allegedly took a struggling couple of minutes before recomposing herself. She sighed ruefully. We can't leave her alone. Hisashi perked up at that. I freed Kurogiri, maybe he cowl. I'm sorry, Hisashi, but there's no way I'm letting another villain take care of her, she deadpan. I wouldn't let you alone with her at all if I could. The white-haired looked at her hurt, but she didn't falter. We're taking her with us. She took the girl from his arms, ignoring the saddened look he had. We better go now. The situation is really bad. The villain's anxious eyes widened for a fraction of a second. You said Izuku was hurt. How badly was it? Is he in a hospital? Worry wandered on his voice. He heartily hated seeing his son hurt. The only reason he hated his son's ambition to be a hero was that heroes risk their lives daily. Because he knew his child would be an astounding hero one day, even if he was still quirkless. The day of the sports festival, Kurogiri had to hold him from going to the arena and taking his son till he could heal his broken arms. Endeavor's perspective air had done a number on his Izuku. He wanted to snap recovery girl neck from steadfastly refusing to heal him any further to teach him a lesson. Maybe he could pay her a visit when he is at UA. Inko carefully observed the show of expressions passing on her husband's face. The more constant one was the utter anxious, saddened look. And that's why she called him, besides figuring out that he was a villain. He may be the most treacherous villain in Japan, but she wouldn't deny the man to know about his son's precarious state. She wouldn't prevent a father from worrying about his ill child. Let's go, they will explain everything. I don't have the heart to tell you what happened, she says grimly. The man didn't even know that Izuku had depression and anxiety problems. She didn't want to be the one to tell him. As she merely opened the door to leave, she stopped awkwardly, a thought crossing her suspicious mind. Why didn't you break out before if it was so effortless for you? She arched a brow. The man fidgeted uncomfortably under her judging gaze. You wanted to make a dramatic break out of prison, didn't you? Inko rolled sluggishly her expressive eyes at noting the embarrassed expression that her husband made. She can't believe she had married such a buffoon. We're going to have a serious conversation after we're done, the greenette said threateningly. Toshinori was feeling like a wrecking mess. He was busy grading some tests from Class 1B this dull morning, so he couldn't attend the exam that the hero and general education classes would participate in. He desperately wanted to watch young Midoriya fight. He would be cheering for him. He knew his boy would do great. He has gotten better at controlling his quirk. Yanti was so proud of his boy. When he finished triumphantly grading all the papers, he made his way to the ground beta. Maybe if he hurried he could manage to get a glimpse of the greenette's fight. He was caught by surprise when a familiar green lightning sprinted past him. Midoriya was in such a desperate hurry that he likely didn't even notice that he bumped into the blonde retired hero. Before he could even react, he saw a racerhead sprinting towards the same direction. The man quickly threw him a look that said, "We'll talk later." He reluctantly decided to wait. Whatever happened to the greenette, he didn't want to piss off Aizawa by butting in. But he couldn't help but genuinely worry. Had something in the exam terribly upset young Midoriya in any way? He would have to wait for the other pro hero to tell him about it. Not even 5 minutes later, he saw both Uraraka and Todoroki run to the dorms. They were both crying, a desperate expression in their faces. Okay, it must be really bad if the stoic Todoroki was crying desperately and with another expression that isn't the usual blank one. It just made him worry more. Later on, the underground hero came out of the elevator looking like he was about to die from stress. The man quickly explained what happened. Yagi paled in horror about knowing that his successor has been going through so much and didn't tell him. How could this be possible? He would have never thought that his boy had depression, that he was abused by one of his classmates, that he tried to commit suicide. How could he have missed the signs? He should have paid more attention. He could have done something. But Aizawa told him to not approach the boy. For now, to let him take his own time. He would come to him when he was ready. The tired man left to attend the meeting with Bakugo's parents after that, so Toshinori was left alone, wandering through the school's corridors thinking about what he could do to help his boy. He was passing by the main hall when terror thundered down on him. There was this terrible aura paring through the air. It made his blood froze in his veins. He knew this aura from somewhere. Oh, if it's not All Might in his pathetic form, someone said amusedly behind him. Toshinori froze. He turned slowly to confront the person behind him. Blue eyes met red. He felt his face grow pale. His heartbeat rate went frenetic. It was like everything around him froze. He couldn't hear anybody else talking around him. He could feel nothing but blind terror at seeing the person in front of his eyes. It's been years since he has seen his face, but he recognized it in a heartbeat. The pale skin and white hair, the freckles on his cheeks and that crooked smile, his face was no longer disfigured. This person in front of him was without any doubt All For One, and he wondered how the hell did he escape Tartarus? Did he come to finish the service? He didn't have much left of One For All's power in his body. His career as All Might is gone. Anyone could take him out without trouble, a perfect moment for villains to approach him. But why here? How did he get in without setting the alarm? This is no good. He has to take this fight somewhere else, and he doesn't want any of his students to get hurt by this man. You did quite a number on me in our last reunion, the man chuckled coldly. I had to search for someone with a quirk to repair the damage. Toshinori's heart leaped into his throat. Who was the poor bastard whose quirk he stole? When were they going to find the body? The two men glared at each other. Toshinori summoned the last remaining bits of One For All to spread through his body. The other was eyeing him with that malicious smile. They were about to fight when Asashi, a stern voice came from behind the man, making him freeze. A familiar figure walked towards them, stopping at All Might Nemesis' side. Green hair and eyes, he knows who this woman is. Midoriya Ko was standing next to the most dangerous villain in Japan like he was any other normal civilian. She was holding a little girl in her arms and had an angered look plastered on her face. The child was looking at the men curiously, looking back and forward between them. Dread twisted in Toshinori's gut when the woman turned to look at Fo with an expression that sent shivers down his spine. His heart hammered in his chest stronger. What was she doing? Doesn't she know who this is? Run! Don't you dare make a scene right here and right now, or I swear to God I'll make sure no one finds her old body. You hear me? Her tone was cold. You're already on thin ice for disappearing for 9 years and hiding secrets from me, so you better watch yourself. She smiled at the man, but that smile wasn't a kind one. It was one that promised pain and suffering. Toshinori had his jaw hanging. Wait, hold on. She knows him. Why was she acquainted with the most notorious villain in history? Never mind. He can't question her about this later. Right now he had to get the woman away from this monster because there is no way that Fo will stand someone threatening him. He can't let young Midoriya's mother die when he was the reason for this man to be here. He got into a fighting stance. He may not have much power anymore, but he had enough to lead the villain somewhere else. But before he could even think of attacking, he heard a sharp intake. He followed the woman's threatening gaze and he froze at what he was seeing. Fo, the most infamous villain in history, the Lord of Chaos who had killed millions and spread fear among humanity, was cowering under the woman's gaze with a panicked expression. What the fuck? He whispered loudly. Not able to suppress the utter horror and confusion in his voice, his brain was trying to come up with an answer to this mess. Oh hello, All Might. Forgive me for being so impolite. I was too focused in restraining this beast to notice you, she says, bringing her hand to her chest, feeling a bit embarrassed and ignoring completely the offended look on Fo's face. Oh, it's nothing, Miss Midoriya. He sputtered. How the hell is he supposed to react to this? Should he call enforcements? Maybe attacking the man right now by surprise would give him a chance, but should he? The man wasn't attacking and he didn't want to make the people around him panic. Is that a friend of yours? He decided to ask, a forced smile on his face. Yeah, he should keep his composure. Panicking wouldn't help him at nothing in this situation. Oh, that's my husband, Midoriya Hasashi & Co. said with a nervous smile, trying to act as normal as she could in front of the man that her husband had tried to kill multiple times. A sudden coldness took over Yagi. Oh my god, no. This can't be true, can it? Fo must be brainwashing her because there is no way in hell that this monster had married someone. And this is our daughter, Eri, she said, tilting her head toward the little girl who was confused at her statement. They have a daughter. Why? Does she know that her husband is a villain? Because he is sure that Inko wasn't the kind of person who would marry a monster if she knew about his doings. We came here for the meeting. Do you by any chance know where the principal's office is? The retired hero could bring himself to answer her. He was too much in shock. All For One had a family. He had a wife. He had a daughter. Oh my god. Young Izuku. The boy he sees as his son. The child he gave One For All. His successor was the son of his archenemies. All Might fainted. I guess that's a no, Inko muttered under her breath. Hasashi snorted, clearly amused by seeing his enemy almost lose his marbles in front of him. His smile dropped when his wife threw him a murderous glare. Mitsuki was almost having a panic attack right now when she was called to meet with the UAS principal. She was expecting him to tell her about how great Katsuki was doing on the hero course and congratulate him somehow. But as soon as she and Masahiro arrived at the Chimera's office, she felt an overwhelming sense of dread wash over her. Sitting on a chair was her son, his head bandaged. He was looking at the floor with an angered look mixed with guilt. His fists were clenched on his lap, shaking slightly. The rat sitting behind the desk was looking at her son with a passive-aggressive smile. A black-haired man who looked like a homeless person was standing behind the chair. He was glaring daggers at the teen. It was then that she knew that she wasn't called here for a good reason. What the hell has her son done? The principal turned to look at her, his smile not faltering, but it seemed to get faker than before. "Ah, Miss and Mr. Bakugo, take a seat, won't you?" He waved his hand toward the chairs. There were 4 extra chairs on the boy's side. Both adults complied with the rat's request. Masahiro exchanged a nervous look with his wife. He was as uncomfortable as her right now. "Let's wait for Miss and Mr. Midoriya to arrive before discussing why we asked for your presence," the creature said politely. The Bakugas froze. No, he couldn't be serious. Hisashi was back. Oh my god. How serious could the situation be if the man who hasn't visited his wife and son in 9 years came from America just to attend this meeting? Katsuki shrank back in fear. His mouth was open in a silent scream. He was right to be afraid. Midoriya Hisashi was a scary man. They still remember the day he threatened them over making Enko upset. Mitsuki had yelled at her best friend over a stupid disagreement, and the woman was beyond angry with her to the point that she cried. After that day, the Bakugas learned a lesson: do never mess with Midoriya and Co. Not only they will be washed over with guilt because the woman was the most pure human being and making her sad would break their heart, but her husband was willing to kill them if they ever dared to breathe in her direction the wrong way. They felt a sudden sense of dread hit them when someone knocked on the door. The hairs on the back of Mitsuki's hair neck stood up. Panic flared in Masaru's eyes and Katsuki went even paler. His eyes were twitching and he contemplated throwing himself out of the window. Nedzu seemed to be indifferent, but who knew the rat could tell that he also felt the threatening aura behind the door and was slightly apprehensive. Aizawa was staring at the door ready to use his quirk. As the door was slowly opened, Midoriya and Co peeked from the entrance to look around the room before opening the door entirely, showing a tall white-haired man behind her. They entered the room and took their seats, and Ko didn't even spare a glance at Mitsuki, which hurt the blonde. The silence was so strong that they could hear the Bakuga's heartbeat hammering in their ribcage. They looked like defenseless birds that have been cornered by a wild cat thirsty for blood. "Greetings. It's such an honor to meet the one in control of such a prestigious school as UA," the freckled man said, his voice carrying malice. His eyes were focused on the white rat, who took a sharp intake at meeting his eyes and not noticing the extended hand. Nedzu finally gathered the courage to shake the other's hand. "It's nice to meet you, Mr. Midoriya." "Oh, trust me, the pleasure is all mine." The man's lips curved upwards into a devious smile. The entire room minus Inko shivered. "They're going to die, aren't they?" Mitsuki and Masaru could feel the sheer amount of murder intent radiating from Midoriya and Co. And wait, who's the little girl she is holding? The horned girl looked around the room completely unaware of the dark aura around the two adults. Inko got her phone and plugged in her headphones, putting on the girl's ears and setting her to the floor. Hisashi got the phone from his wife and chose a random game before delivering the device to the girl, who gladly accepts it and goes to sit on the corner of the room. Nobody dared to bring up the child's presence, not when those looked like they would maul anyone who breathed in their direction. Aizawa sure as hell doesn't remember Midoriya and Co. being this fucking scary. She was smiling. But oh shit, that smile promised a painful fate to who dared to piss her off even more. It didn't help that the man at her side was looking at them like a predator waiting for its prey to try running. How the hell Midoriya's parents could be so horrifying. They remained in a tense silence for a couple of awkward minutes. Nedzu decided to finally address the elephant in the room. He cleared his throat, getting the attention of both the Midoriyas and Bakugas. "We gathered you here to talk about a concerning matter that was brought up to my attention this morning," he started. "You see, today we were executing an exercise that we had in mind. It's been a while. It was supposed to show to the hero classes that they could end up fighting a villain with a mental quirk. After all, it doesn't matter if you have a flashy quirk if you can't defend yourself against mind quirks, am I right?" He received a nod from the parents. Bakugo looked away, feeling slightly unnerved at having his parents agreeing with this bullshit. The intelligent mammal instantly noticed that Midoriya Hisashi's eyes lightened at hearing mind quirks, like a child that wanted to add a new toy to the extensive collection. He mused to himself, if the man by any possible chance worked as a quirk analyst. He has only seen such an eager look on their freckled boy student who loved quirks so much that he would dissect them to know all the details and the considerable extents of its powers. Like father, like son, he thinks to himself. The boy didn't merely get his father's look but also the profound admiration for quirks. Very well. We had requested assistance from a couple of students from the general education department who had the perfect quirks for this lesson, he continued. In the first fight, Masahiro Masao, who has a mix of memory gathering and metal manipulation quirk, defeated the first 3 opponents easily and went after Bakugo. When encountering with him, Bakugo used his explosions in a way that could have clearly killed Masahiro had the boy not dodged it in time. Masaru and Mitsuki gasped in unspeakable horror. They knew their son had a destructive temperament, but they would never have thought that he would lose control enough to try to kill a classmate. What did they do wrong? He wasn't like this at home. Katsuki looked at the rat wide-eyed. Had he really almost killed that jerk? He left out that explosion from pure instinct. The principal clapped his hands to get their attention once again. When using his quirk, Misao inevitably brought up some interesting issues that we were not aware of before. You see, one of the facets of his quirk allows him to see the memories of his target so he can gather personal info enough to use against them, and what he had gotten from Bakugo Katsuki were really concerning, to say the least. The brown-haired man seemed to be afraid of what was inevitably coming, like he didn't want to know because he already knew it would be bad. The woman, on the other hand, was gritting her teeth in agonizing curiosity. She desperately wanted to know what her brat had done, how much he fucked up. Masahiro, losing control to his own quirk for being too strong, ended up spilling out some dark secrets that had us calling you to this meeting. It seems like Bakugo had inflicted multiple injuries like visible bruises, broken ribs, burns marks, and mental scarring on Midoriya Izuku for the past 10 years. And checking his historical records, I see that no teacher from his old school has thought that it was important to put a mark on it for his constant bullying towards one of his classmates. He came to the point where he told Midoriya to, he quotes, do everyone a favor and take a swan dive off the roof. The cold silence that took over the principal room was so dense that they could hear the muffled sound effects from the game that Eri was gleefully playing while plastered on the floor, ignorant to what was happening around her. Masaru and Mitsuki were pale. Their hearts stuck up in their hoarse throats. They were horrified. They can't believe that Katsuki would have done such a thing. Weren't he and little Izuku friends? They always asked about the greenette when the blonde arrived home from school, and their boy would always say that he was fine. The explosive teen was looking down desperately, trying to push away the feeling of overwhelming guilt and shame. Inko was wearing a dull expression. She already knew all of this. Aizawa had bluntly informed her every single detail, but it was still hard to hear it. She felt repulsed. She saw Katsuki as her son. She thought he was still friends with her boy, that they were on good terms, but it seems like he has been allegedly abusing her child for all these years. All this time she believed her son's words, that the bruises were from tripping down the stairs, that he was getting clumsy and to not worry about it. Asashi was having a hard time keeping his composure. He wanted to snap Katsuki in half right here and right. No, that would be too merciful. The blonde has to suffer, to feel the pain that he had put his Izuku through. How dare this brat lay a finger on his precious son? He knows Izuku. He has been carefully observing from afar how much he had progressed satisfactorily after getting into UA. His child was kind, extremely kind for his own sake, if he was to be honest, and there was no reason for people to hold this much anger against his son. After a couple of minutes of silence, Mitsuki stood up aggressively, turning to her son with tears in her eyes. She grasped him by his shoulder and forced him to look at her. Katsuki, why would you have done that, you brat? I thought you two were still friends. The golden-haired woman screamed hysterically, indignantly, tears falling down her cheeks. I stopped being friends with the nerd after we had turned 4. Why would I have stayed friends with that quirkless freak? The explosive boy let out small explosions from his hands. Besides, who else would teach that useless Deku a lesson? To put him in his place, he needed to know that he wasn't better than me, that he was just a pathetic, worthless Deku. That was clearly the wrong answer to say. The loud slap across his face could be heard from around the entire campus. She was staring incredulously at the blonde teen like she didn't know him anymore, her eyes full of crushing disappointment. The boy felt like crying at seeing that look on his mother's face. But Mitsuki couldn't even bring herself to feel bad, because she can't fucking believe that this is how her son thought. Inko, despite being angry at the Bakugas, she held her best friend's hand, squeezing it to offer comfort, to ground herself before the blonde did something she would regret. The woman squeezed her hand back, appreciating the humanitarian gesture. I didn't teach you to be like this, you brat. Where the fuck did you get that way of thinking? Just because he was quirkless doesn't mean he should have to stand being abused. Katsuki, who was holding his sore cheek with wide eyes and shock, flinched at the last word. He wasn't an abuser. He wasn't like Endeavor, who hit his kids and his wife. He just ... He was just... What was he trying to do? Did he even have a reason to have treated Deku that way? He hesitates on what to say next, but being the stubborn person that he is, who couldn't be talked down and never is the one in the wrong, he decided to try to defend himself. He wouldn't stop trying to be a hero. He was weak. He would just end up getting himself killed. If nothing else, I did him a favor, roughed him up a little bit, yes, but now he can at least take a hit. It's not my fault that he couldn't protect himself before. I was just trying to help him. But were you really? A voice deep in his head whispered. You just wanted to see him hurt, because deep inside you know he is better than you. Shut up. You know he would have been a great hero even without a quirk. I said shut up. Help him. In what world abusing someone who has done nothing to you is helping out? Aizawa butted in, feeling himself grow more and more angry at hearing the delusional child. The kid tried to kill himself not too long ago because he can't stand you constantly treating him like shit anymore. What part of what you keep doing is helping him? The three Bakugas looked at the underground hero in shock. Katsuki's mind went back to when Misao had told him that Deku had followed his advice. When he was conscious again and found himself in the infirmary room, he decided that the other boy had just said that to get to him to win the exercise. The explosive boy gulped nervously at sensing the utterly enraged aura coming from Midoriya Hisashi. Aizawa likely didn't know that Misao was just bluffing, right? He just needs to tell them this, and he is good. He would leave. He would have, and he did it. Eraserhead shot him with a glare before turning to look with a severe look to the other two Bakugas. Dayton, one of the 1 degree Celsius students that were going to voluntarily participate on the exercise, came to me and asked me to pull Midoriya Izuku out of the exercise because he would be going against her. He explained mostly to the Bakugas and Hisashi, since he had already told Inko about this through the phone. She was worried that if she used her quirk on him, he would never recover from this. Her quirks allows to intensify any mental disorder she pleases, and she was kind enough to give me more detailed information after the incident on all the mental disorder that Midoriya Izuku has. Aizawa said. According to her, he has PTSD, paranoia, anxiety, depression, eating disorder, autism spectrum disorder, agoraphobia, social anxiety disorder. He also has subtle dissociation episodes, and from what Dayton Garia could tell, Midoriya has attempted to commit suicide a couple of days ago and hasn't been eating or sleeping properly. He also has been cutting himself. We talked to Recovery Girl, and she admitted that she had prescribed for him antidepressants that he used to take. Uraraka, who had found him, told her that he had tried to slash his throat open and had several deep cuts on his wrists and thighs. The blonde paled as the man talked. No, Deku wouldn't do that. He would never do something like that. The idiot was constantly smiling and cheering everyone up. There was no trace that he was this bad. Inko was glaring daggers at the principal because she didn't know anything about Recovery Girl knowing about her son's state. So you're telling me that one of your staff didn't think it was urgent to mention to me that my son had a backlash, that she thought it wasn't necessary to notify me? His mother, the one who is responsible for him, to know that his depression has gotten worse, that she has prescribed without my knowledge medication for a mentally ill child who doesn't know any better. Nenzu opened his mouth to rebate her. Your nurse didn't think of informing me that my son tried to commit suicide. Katsuki flinched at the word. He started severely shaking on his seat, his eyes becoming wet. That he has been cutting himself. That he has panic attacks and has been bullied by this thing. She spat the words while instantly throwing a glare at the blonde boy, who turned to look at her in shock. He had never heard his aunt this angry. The woman was struggling to not call him any worse name. She took a deep breath, her eyes glinting with anger. Her husband took the lead while she tried to calm herself. The man met the mammal's eyes with an icy glare. I heard that Katsuki has been displaying a strong aggression towards my son since day one, and you and your staff didn't even think of looking into what was going on. You had paired my child with his abuser in an exam. You have let a teacher who didn't know about their rivalry put my son against the person who has made his life a living hell. How am I supposed to trust this school when all you had done was hurt my son beyond measure? Before any of them could protest, the white-haired man continued. Oh, not to mention that a certain heroine thought that it was wise to not heal our son completely because she wanted to teach him a lesson after he forfeited his match at the sports festival. The heroine had never contacted any of us to notify about his injuries or the fact that she had operated on our child without requesting our permission or asking me or my wife to sign any medical forms. A surgery that, should I remind you, that not only is it risky but could have ended in him losing his arm. Hisashi added fuel to the fire with a smug smile, but his eyes radiated with murder intent. Inko, who didn't know any of these things, turned to look at the rat with raw fury in her eyes. Anger grew inside her like a tumor. You could see steam coming out of her ears. The woman completely ignored the strange fact that her husband knew all of that. You let an unlicensed nurse who has no graduation in medicine perform surgery on my son. Oh shit, this was getting out of hand, Aizawa thought to himself. But if what Mr. Midoriya said was true, then both Chimera and the old woman deserved the pure hatred radiating from the couple. The Bakugas were looking at the scene in shock. They didn't know any of this. Katsuki thought that they had notified Auntie about it. Nedzu was sweating bullets at this point. He tried to ignore the aggressive glare coming from Aizawa, who was standing behind him with as much anger as the mother in front of him. Now, Miss Midoriya, this has nothing to do with why we are here, Toda. Nothing to do with it. Nothing to do with it. It has everything to do with it. We're talking about my son's mental health and how you fucked up in keeping him safe, for fuck's sake. Holy shit, they never heard Inko swear in their entire lives. Mitsuki was starting to think that none of them were going to walk off this meeting alive. Hisashi laid a hand on his wife's shoulder and used a quirk to calm her down. She was clearly beyond stressed, and that couldn't be good for her health. Now is his time to shine. I can't comprehend how the most prestigious hero school is so irresponsible. Not only you have failed to make a background check on an obvious aggressive student with ill intent, which to be honest, now that I think about it, doesn't surprise me how Endeavor ended up being a hero if this is how you work. Regardless, you also failed to pay attention to your students' mental health and to provide support. I thought that it was oblivious that having those kids wanting to go down the dangerous path that it is the hero career, that you would at least provide them weekly therapy to prepare them from future mental issues. There is a piece of meaningful information that the Hero Commission likes to hide from the public, but you can find it with the right resources. There is a high static rate of heroes who ends up having PTSD, depression, paranoia, and most of the time commit suicide from going through so much stress and having so many mental scars that they couldn't handle it anymore. Yunetsu, as possibly one of the most intelligent creatures in the world, should have known about this detail and made sure to prevent this by establishing a rule that every student should attend to therapy and provide them a team that your students can rely on. And do you mind me pointing out that you seem to possess no boundaries when training literal children? You allowed All Might, the #1 hero, someone who could take down a building with a flick of his fingers, to beat up 2 teenagers to the point that one of them spit up blood in an exam when the rest of the other teachers thought strategically and acted more as obstacles, while All Might was the only one who fought directly, causing extreme injuries that if not for Recovery Girl acting quickly could have ended with irreversible damage, crippling 2 children who would have walked out of the exam without learning anything at all, since Bakugo refused to work with my son and attacked him in the beginning of the test, which should already have been assigned to stop the exam to sort this out. Asashi took a deep breath, ignoring the stunned faces from everyone but Inko in the room. Tell me, what could you offer? What reason can you give me that doesn't end up with me and my wife taking our son out of this school and suing you for negligence? Because I'm sure that if any of the other students' parents knew how you have been more worried in training children as soldiers than teaching and keeping them safe, you wouldn't live to see tomorrow's light. Principal Nedzu found himself for the first time not knowing what to say. The other had a good point. They had failed pretty badly. They should have focused on what's important. It's their fault that those 2 students were affected. I want Bakugo Katsuki to be expelled, Inko says out of nowhere coldly. Her eyes fixated on Nedzu's eyes like she could see through him. Katsuki stands up abruptly, a look of horror on his face. You can't fucking do that. I have the perfect quirk for hero work. I'm going to be #1. He exclaimed, trembling with anger. Inko snapped towards his direction, directing him a murderous look that made him shut his mouth with a loud clunk of his teeth. #1. She laughed bitterly, her expression morphing into a mocking one. I don't know much about this hero thing, but who in their sane state of mind would want a delusional abuser as the #1 hero in Japan? Because I would rather die than to be saved by someone who has done nothing but cause pain to those around them, she snarled. Bakugo felt tears gather at the edge of his eyes. Auntie Inko was like a second mother to him, so, hearing her said those things broke something inside him. You won't ever be a hero until you learn that the world doesn't revolve around you, Katsuki. You're not special, your quirk isn't the strongest. There will be someone who is stronger and better than you, and you need to stop putting yourself at the top like you're the best of the best, because you sure as hell aren't. You had hurt my son. You're the cause that I heard him scream every single night for years because of nightmares. It's because of you that he can't even love himself, that he cannot let himself be loved by others, that he doesn't trust anyone. You're the reason that my little boy thinks that he is better off dead. The Bakugas let out a sob. The trio was taking this hard. Good. She instantly turned to look back at the principal. I don't want him in the hero course until he has gone through therapy and anger management. Until he learns to not have a stick up his ass. Until then he can learn one thing or another in the general education course. Her voice held a ton of authority. This wasn't a request. Nedzu gulped. He couldn't say anything against that. The woman had an excellent point. They couldn't let someone like Bakugo keep doing whatever he pleases, or otherwise they would have another endeavor in the making. You won't let this monster get near my son ever again. I don't want him to even breath towards his direction, and if you don't do as I say, I will bring UA to shambles. Don't think that I don't have the power to destroy this school. I'm a lawyer. I have my contacts. One front page featuring about how the most prestigious school have let an abuser, that you let him keep abusing an innocent child, and your school will be nothing but dirt at the end of the day. My son doesn't need to stay in a school that keeps neglecting him over and over again because they're too blind to see what is under their nose. Her grave voice was full of venom, anger overtaking her. Nedzu just nodded. After what happened today, they were thinking about promptly sending Bakugo to class 1 degrees Celsius anyway. So he just agreed. He doesn't want to end up dead so soon by the hands of a vengeful mother. Aizawa almost cried in relief by having this meeting finally over. He felt like he had just been freed from a goddamn hostage situation. After both Inko and Hisashi eviscerated the principal and the Bakugas for an entire hour, the brunette and white-haired man finally left the room. The Bakuga stayed behind since Nedzu had to explain everything that would happen to Katsuki in the future. The boy would have to go through intense therapy, and if there was any case of violence while he was on probation, he would be expelled. Inko didn't even spare a glance at the teen when he started to sob over having his dreams destroyed. If he had been a decent human being, he wouldn't have to deal with this. The woman had never hated someone so much as she hates the blonde. He is just a child. But he is a child who had hurt her little Izuku to the point that her son truly believed that he was worthless. She still wishes that Bakugo will take this chance to be a better person, because if he doesn't even try to change and see that what he has done was wrong, then he really shouldn't be a hero. The woman sighed. She was standing outside the office. Her husband had one arm wrapped over her figure, bringing her towards him and trying to calm her down. She leaned into him, appreciating the gesture. Yuri had fallen asleep while playing Candy Crush. Thankfully, she didn't hear all the fuss that happened. She was in Inko's arms, her head resting on her chest. She looked like a little angel. "I'm tired, Hisashi," the short woman said quietly. Her anger towards the blonde and the filth rat had taken a toll on her. She felt exhausted after confronting both the Bakugas and Nenzu. Hisashi looked at her worriedly. "I know, love." The man lifted her chin and placed a kiss on her forehead. Inko smiled and closed her eyes before holding the sleeping child closer to her chest and resting her chin on the fluffy white hair. "You should go and check on Izuku," she said tiredly. "I can see him later." He looked at her, surprised that she would let him be the first to see their son when she was still clearly upset with him. She noticed his reaction and turned to explain her reasoning. "It will help him, seeing you. He misses you." "God, he misses you so damn much. You have no idea," she chuckled humorlessly. "Every once a month for the past 9 years. He would wait an entire day in front of the door in hopes that you would come back. He would try to call you even when he knew that the number you gave us didn't exist anymore." Hisashi felt himself drowning in guilt. He regrets every single day not staying with his family. He could have given up villainy, but he had to be selfish and go after All Might, hadn't he? His wife was looking at nowhere with a contemplating expression. "You leaving us affects him deeply. You know, he still asks me from time to time why you left, and I never know how to respond." The white-haired man looked down to the floor, shame and guilt washing over him. He never meant to upset his wife and son. He made the mistake of taking for granted that he would be able to defeat All Might back then. He planned to stop villainy after he finally killed the man. But then Tashinori almost killed him. If it wasn't for Dr. Yujiko's loyalty towards him, AFO would have died that very same day. He was in a coma for 6 years. The doctor had a lot of work to keep him alive. After waking up and seeing how badly he got disfigured, there was no way he could come back to his family like that. What would he tell them? And would they even want him around if they knew? Well, now he knows that Inko couldn't care less as long as he behaves and is there for them. He should have known better. Also, his wife's voice snapped him out of his thoughts. "Do not cause any trouble while I'm not looking." She scolded him like he was a child. "Remember that organs can be considered small objects." Her eyes darkened as she made a pull motion with her free hand. Hisashi had to suppress a yelp of pain at feeling his 2 golden raspberries being pulled. Oh, of course, Lev. The villain would never admit it to anyone, but his wife terrified him. Her sweet smile, while she continued pulling his intimate organs, sent shivers down his spine. After her husband went on his way to find their son, the woman allowed herself to relax. What a mess. There was too much happening in one single day. She had suspected that the villain that had been apprehended a couple of weeks ago was her husband. She would know that voice from anywhere. The way he monologues and moved was also a big giveaway, but having it confirmed pissed her off. How dare that buffoon choose villainy over his family? And on the same day she discovers that the boy she considered her second son had bullied her little baby for years, and that her child has tried to commit suicide. She discussed with Principal Nenzu about doing something about his mental health before leaving his office. After Hisashi chewed him out, the creature didn't even try to refuse to implement a new rule that required every hero student to attend therapy and attend lessons that would teach them how to find out if someone is being abused or has depression, among other mental illnesses. At least she got a good deal out of all this mess. She still doesn't trust them to deal with her child's mental health. She can't always be at UA to make sure that everything was okay, that her son was being cared for. She needed to confide in someone from the inside to check on her son. She heard the sound of a door opening. Turning to see who had left the room, she found the overwhelmingly tired long-haired man making his way towards her. She frowned at seeing how he looked. He was more tired than he was at the beginning of the meeting. She felt a pang of guilt for being the one to cause the man to be terrified. As he got closer, Inko bowed slightly, still holding her probably soon-to-be daughter. "I'm so sorry, Aizawa-san. I didn't mean to get you into this mess," she said, truly ashamed. The man has done nothing but do his best to protect his students. Izuku always talked about the man, telling how amazing of a teacher he was and how much he cared for them. The man waved his hand dismissively. "No, you had the right to be mad. I admit that I should have paid more attention to my students' mental health, especially when one of them could have ended up taking their own life," Eraserhead said with sheer sadness in his voice. "You're a good man, Aizawa." She smiled softly. "At least you were doing your best. Don't beat yourself up over it. You almost died to protect your students, and I can tell how much you care for them." Her expression softened at seeing the worry in his face. "You would be a good parent, you know." The man's eyes widened at that. He quickly hides his flushed face in his capture weapon, deciding to not say anything. She decided to go on to the man's horror. "I know you see at least half of your class as your children," and Co teased. "And from how pissed you were at Bakugo, I have a feeling that you have a soft spot for my son." She raised a brow at his face, which was getting even redder. "I have no idea what you're talking about," the man muttered under his breath, slightly annoyed for being called out. He did feel really upset when Midoriya and Co showed up with her husband. Not because he had romantic feelings towards the woman, he was pretty happy being married to Yamada, thank you very much. But he admits that he was hoping he could fill the father figure role in his problem child's life. The boy needed that and he would be more than happy to help. And Co was analyzing his face carefully like she was trying to figure out something. Her eyes widened for a fraction of a second. You know that legal guardianship is a thing, right? She asked hesitantly. WhatIf now his face was absolutely burning from embarrassment. "Do you read minds? I thought your quirk was minor telekinesis," he asked, baffled. And Co stared at him for a solid second before bursting into laughter. "No, I'm just good at reading people." She wiped a tear away with a hand, carefully holding Yuri with the other. "Oh dear, I was just teasing you. But if you really want to." Shouta felt like if his face turned even more red he would explode. Damn him, he just snitched himself, got him it. "I wouldn't mind you being his legal guardian. Neither I nor Hisashi have any family relatives alive to fulfill the space." She paused for a second and seemed to have realized something. Her green eyes widened as she turned to look at him, determined. "I can't always be here at UA for Izuku, and you look like the most decent teacher around here, enough to make competent decisions," she mused. "I think having you as his legal guardian would benefit all of us. I need someone to look out for him when I can't. No offense, but after today I don't really trust anyone but you to make sure my son's mental health is taken care of." He looks at her in shock. Was she serious about this? Having the boy's mother trusts him with such a task makes him feel happy. He noticed a warm feeling in his chest, feeling hopeful and extremely grateful at being offered this chance. He wouldn't miss this opportunity. "I would be honored," he breathes out, not able to suppress the sheer amount of happiness in his voice. Hisashi found himself stuck in a staring contest with his archenemy. He had the misfortune of coming across the skeleton man when making his way to where his son was by using the quirk he had taken from Tomoko Shirotoko back in Kamino. "Now, All Might, I would appreciate it if you didn't stop me from checking on my son," he said with a strained smile, clearly annoyed by having the man in his way. "Does she know she has married a murderer?" Yagi snarled, ignoring the other's comment entirely. He knows he doesn't stand a chance against AFO on his weak form, especially when the man was all healed, but he couldn't help but let out his anger. "Did you have him to see if he would inherit your power? Was he born for your own sick purposes?" He felt disgusted. How could someone be so cruel, to create a life with the sole purpose of making a weapon? "What are you going to do to young Midoriya now that he has my quirk? Are you going to turn him into a Namu since he would never agree to fight at your side willingly?" He gritted his teeth. His boy may be this monster's son, but he would never let this man get near him. He felt nauseous just imagining the greenette as one of those soulless things. All for One's smile faltered. For a moment the blonde saw a mixture of disgust and shock on the man's face until his expression morphed into one of pure raw anger. "Do not ever assume that I would do such a thing to my son," the man snarled with a scowl, his eyes full of hatred. Yagi was taken aback at the sheer amount of anger in the man's voice. He never saw the villains lose his composure like this. AFO was always annoyingly calm and collected, so saying this made him think if he truly did care. "Believe me or not, I do love my son and wife," the man said defensively. The blonde frowned. "What do you want? You want me to think you're a good person by showing that you care for your own child and spouse?" Toshinori snarled. "I don't want your sympathy, All Might. I'm here because my son was hurt and I simply want you to keep your mouth shut because I don't know how much Izuku can take before he decides that killing himself is the best course of action. So I would appreciate if you didn't mention anything about me to anyone. My son doesn't need to have a breakdown just by learning who I truly am. It's for the best that we both pretend we don't know each other," Hisashi said through gritted teeth, trying his best to not kill the man right here and right now. Ugh, why did his son have to be so close to the hero? Killing the man would make his son break down. Again, Toshinori froze. He analyzed the man in front of him carefully. This is the first time he has seen the villain lash out, and he was baffled to see the pure concern in the man's eyes. The retired hero took a moment to think about it. He truly didn't want to let this man near his boy, but he couldn't help but feel bad for not letting a father check on his son, especially when said man looked like he just desperately wants to see his son more than anything. "All right, I'm only agreeing to this because I care for the boy, but don't expect me to forgive you for everything you had done," the once hero said, clearly not happy with the situation. I'm not asking for forgiveness, just for you to keep your mouth shut and let me see my son, the white-haired man said, getting desperate. All Might decided to spare the man from the suffering and stepped away from the elevator. You better take care of young Midoriya, he said threateningly, his eyes not leaving the villain. Hasashi sighed in utter relief and made his way to the elevator quickly. He didn't answer his archenemy. He didn't need to. Color Hasashi shocked. He didn't expect to open the door to his child's room and find two teenagers hugging his son like their lives depended on it. Both Endeavor's heir and the girl who fought Bakugo at the sports festival were on his bed, in a very intimate way snugly. Interesting. Of course, his son captivated more than one person's heart with his pure and cheerful personality. Wait, does this mean that he needs to give him the shovel talk? God, he hopes not. He has no idea how he will bring this up without dying of embarrassment. He will leave this one for Enko to deal with. He grunted. Can I have a moment alone with my son? He asked, clearly amused. The brunette and bi-colored teen startled at hearing his voice. They turned to look at the man with utterly shocked faces before both turned a dark shade of red. It's not W what it looks like. The girl tried to explain the situation. She was doing a poor job at it if he was, to be honest. We were just comforting him. She waved her hands exasperatedly. Todoroki kept looking from the man to Izuku back and forth like he was trying to connect the dots in his head. Finally, the teen looked at his boyfriend with an annoyed expression. Fuck, so he really isn't All Might's son, the teen muttered, feeling defeated. Excuse me. The fucking audacity. A vein popped on Hasashi's forehead in irritation. How dare this kid think his precious son is that buffoon's son? They looked nothing alike. What the hell? The two embarrassed teens left the room in a hurry at seeing his annoyed expression. Now it was only him and Izuku in the room. He turned to look back to his son and felt his expression softening. His son was still sound asleep. There were dark, deep bags under his eyes and wet tear tracks on his face. He sat on the end of the boy's bed and brushed his hand on his kid's face. Hey, sweetie, wake up my dear Izu, he whispered softly into his son's ear, ruffling his green curls. The boy slowly opened his eyes. They were really red and clouded, lifeless even. The greenette had been crying since his partners came to his room. He felt pathetic, useless, not wanting to face the consequences of today's incident. He looked around his room trying to find Shoto and Ochako, but then he realized that they were no longer there. Then the shifting weight on his bed got his attention. His green eyes met red. For a moment he just stared at the person in front of him, his brain not computing the image very well until it finally sank in. The boy's eyes widened. He had been waiting for years to see this person again. He had lost hope that he would ever come back. He had started to accept that Midoriya Hasashi had abandoned him. He wouldn't blame the man, who would want a worthless child anyway. But here he is, sitting on his bed, looking at him fondly with a smile. Dad, you're really here? He asked quietly, not quite believing his eyes. The man smiled, giving his hair a last ruffle before scooting closer. Of course I am, son. The boy tackled him into a tight hug as soon as the man approached, holding him like he was afraid that his father would vanish if he didn't. Hasashi didn't spare a second to return the embrace, bringing his child to his lap so they would be in a more comfortable position. He pressed his nose into the green mess of curls. God, how he missed his son. He still remembers when his kid would ask him to tell a bedtime story before sleeping. They would hug just like this for a moment before the child finally went to sleep. The man would then place a goodnight kiss on his temple and leave the boy to the land of dreams. He smiles into the boy's hair, holding a laugh as his son snuggled into him like a kitten seeking maternal warmth. The boy's damaged hands clutched on his back so hard that the villain could admittedly tell that it would leave a bruise, but no matter, he had dealt with way worse. Dad, why you won't leave this time, right? The boy muttered against his shoulder. Hasashi grimaced at the desperation in his son's voice, leaning away from the embrace. He was met with dulled eyes full of tears. Izuku gave him a broken smile, his lips trembling. I have a quirk now, see. The boy brought up his hand showing green lighting revolving his entire arm. As so you don't you don't need to leave us again, right? I'm you useful now. I'm in not were worthlessness anymore, alright. That's why you came back. The boy beamed like that was a reason to be happy. See, can you love me again and now that I'm not be broken anymore? The boy asked, desperately wanting to hear a yes. Hasashi felt his heart break into pieces. His eyes were wide in horror. He couldn't believe what he was hearing. His son thought he left because of his lack of a quirk. His child thought he only came back because he now had one for all. Tears gathered at the edge of the man's eyes. Hasashi was a person who hardly cried. He could count on his fingers how many times he had let himself show such a weakness. The first time was when he took his little brother's life, his thirst for power and greed taking the best of him. Later on, he would regret his horrendous action. The second time was when Enko had accepted his marriage proposal, followed by the day his little Izuku was brought to life, his tiny hand holding his finger, the child's precious laugh making his heart melt. And now, realizing how much he has failed his son, from disappearing for 9 long years, making his child think he didn't care for him anymore, that he didn't love him. Oh, Izuku. His voice shook slightly. He brought the teen back into a desperate embrace. I love you so much. I didn't leave because you were quirkless. I couldn't care less about that. You're so precious to me. I came back because I could finally come back to Japan. I came back because I heard you had been hurt. You're not broken, Izuku. You're perfect in your own way and I wouldn't have it any other. Never call yourself worthless ever again, the man said with more emotion than he had shown in the last 9 years. His son burst into tears at hearing his father's words. He desperately wanted to believe that his father was telling the truth, that he always loved him, but a part of him told him that he was foolish to believe such a lie. Nevertheless, the boy returned the hug, desperate for affection. I am just so tired, Dad. I just want this to be over. Why won't it stop hurting? Why won't anyone else let me go? He cried all over the man, too tired to feel embarrassed. Let him go. It would be better for everyone if I just left. His son let out a heavy, pitiful sob. Oh God. The tears which were on Hisashi's face broke down into a slithering stream. He can't bear to see his son like this. I am doing my best, but it seems like nothing is getting better. If I'm quirkless, I'm useless. If I have a quirk, I'm still just a worthless Deku who can't control his quirk, who keeps breaking his bones. Who is just a burden to everyone else. And no matter what I do, I'm never good enough. What am I supposed to do? When will I be enough? Hisashi tightened his embrace, holding his child desperately. You're already enough. You always were. People just don't see how worthy you are. Izuku, you're incredibly smart, determined, you never give up and are always trying to improve. You're doing your best and that is enough, he muttered onto his son's curls. I'm proud of you for being so strong, for enduring this long. But now it's time for you to allow those who care for you to help you out. They didn't break the embrace. The two needed this moment. As much as he could tell that Izuku felt a bit reassured at his words, he still needs to work on his son's mental health. He can't lose him. He wouldn't be able to cope if he ever lost his child. Midoriya Hisashi will do everything in his power to make his son happy. Katsuki was a mess. He can't believe this is happening. He has to stay in the general education course until he gets better or some shit. What the fuck? He doesn't need to get better. He is amazing. His quirk was perfect for hero work. Why can't they see that they are wasting his potential by sending him to another class for an undetermined amount of time? His parents didn't even spare him a glance when they left the principal's office. They were disappointed in him. When he tried to reach out for his mother, she slapped his hand away and left. His father didn't try to reassure him like he used to do. The brown-headed man just followed the woman, leaving a shocked Katsuki behind. This is all wrong. Why was this happening? This was all in the past. He was different now, wasn't he? They should just have ignored that shitty extra's words. Because of that piece of shit, he has to deal with this mess. The blonde marched angrily to the common room. He just wants to be left alone in his room. He has to figure something out. Maybe there was something he could do that would prove he was good enough to stay in the hero course. He stopped in his tracks when he saw a familiar red-haired boy sitting on the couch with his head down. Kirishima heard him approach. When he saw who it was, the boy turned away with a frown. What the fuck? He walked toward the couch and landed a hand on his boyfriend's shoulder. The red-headed boy flinched at this touch and got up, keeping a considerable distance from the blonde. Bakugo felt his heart skip a beat. He frowned worriedly. Why would shitty hair react that way? I don't. The emotionless voice coming from his boyfriend made Katsuki shut up. Just please don't, the redhead said, his voice lacking the confidence that he always had. I can't even look at you right now. God, I can't believe you did that. Kirishima chuckled humorlessly, tears gathering at the edge of his eyes. He didn't look at the blonde. He couldn't bring himself to. I need some time right now. If I even dare to look at you, all I can see is them. All I can see are the bullies who had tormented me for years, that would beat me up, that would tell me that I should kill myself. I look at you and see the people who broke me. His voice faltered, a sob threatening to escape from his lips. I'm sorry, Bakugo. The blonde flinched at the use of his last name. But I can't stay with you anymore. Not until you prove that you've improved. I can't stay with an abuser. Not after knowing everything you've done to Midoriya, Ijiro said, trembling. Before the blonde could even try to reach out, the boy ran from the common room without looking back. Bakugo was left staring at where his boyfriend was standing a couple of seconds before. The blonde felt tears gathering at the edges of his eyes. He clenched his fists, his sorrow turning into anger. This is all Deku's fault. It's his fault that he is losing everything that he has conquered. How dare he get in his way to become a hero? How dare he make him lose his loved one? If that shitty nerd hadn't gotten into UA, he wouldn't have to deal with all this bullshit. Oh please, didn't you learn anything from today? You're just as bad as that villain. You can't even see that you're in the wrong even when people rub it in your face. Deku had never done anything wrong. You're the one who has been a piece of shit towards him for the last 10 fucking years. The voice chuckled deviously. I did nothing wrong. It's not my fault that shitty Deku is weak. You would be an amazing villain. It purred the words soothingly, ignoring him completely. Katsuki froze, a sense of dread washing over him. What? No, I won't ever be a villain. I'm going to be the #1 hero. The voice cackled at that. You, a hero? Oh please, what type of hero abuses someone to the point the person would rather die than to deal with you? I wasn't abusing him, I was just trying to help him. Wasn't he? You know that you weren't. The way you act, not being able to see the truth and still wanting to blame the victim makes you look even more like an abuser. They always say it's the victim's fault for being weak and not being able to defend themselves. I'm not like him. I didn't abuse Deku. I was just trying T2. It mocked him, trying to wash the walls with his blood, trying to bash his head to the concrete to see if you hit it hard enough his brain would scatter on the floor. You enjoyed it, admit it. You loved hurting him. You wanted to show him that you were the best, that you're better than him. You wanted to kill him because you knew he would be a better hero than you, a worthless wannabe hero with anger management issues. The blonde was shaking in horror. He hadn't enjoyed it, had he? He can't remember. Why did he enjoy beating someone almost to death? And had he really tried to kill his once best friend? It wasn't his intention. You're a monster, it whispered. You're as bad as him, maybe even worse. The voice mused. Before Bakugo could even say anything to defend himself, the voice continued. But don't worry, I have an idea. There is a simple way to fix this. Why don't you do everyone a favor? No, please, no. And take a swan dive off the roof and pray to be born as a better person in the next life. Mizuki Megumi, the homeroom teacher of 1 degree Celsius, watched the blonde make his way to the elevator with dulled eyes. She frowned, guilt taking over her. As much of a terrible person that the kid was, he had room to improve, so she really didn't want to have to use her quirk on him. Not like this, but it's been a while, hasn't it? A deep malicious voice purred the words. Megumi found herself being cornered in her empty class. She was making plans for her next class when he appeared out of nowhere in the room. A white-haired man with freckles was standing in front of her, his red eyes boring into her soul, a predatory smile plastered on his face. She thought she would never see this face ever again, that she could move on and forget that this person was ever in her life. All for One walked calmly towards her, his threatening aura growing stronger each step. I need you to teach someone a lesson. He could have just taken her quirk, but that would be too suspicious. Nobody in UA but her knew who he was. She remembered his face vividly. After all, he was the man who had given her this quirk when she was just a quirkless kid wanting to be a hero. The same quirk that helped her drive many villains insane to the point that they would rather go to prison than lose their mind over intrusive thoughts had also helped her apprehend countless criminals when she worked as a vigilante. But now the same quirk was being used to harm a child's mental health. Because if she didn't do as the man said, AFO would definitely fulfill his threat of killing all her dear students. This was just a small price to pay for the safety of her children. It doesn't make her feel less like shit though. This day has been one of the worst days in Izuku's life since Aldera High, having his past practically being exposed to his entire class. He knows they will quickly connect the dots, especially after he ran from the room like that. He shouldn't be here. Bakugo was right, he was just a useless Deku. He can't even stop shaking when the blonde is near him or fight against him. His quirk hasn't had any improvement, it's been months. Maybe he should give the quirk back to All Might. Giving it to him was a mistake. Surely the hero came to the realization that he had chosen the most worthless person to pass his quirk. When the hero asks for him to give it back, he won't hesitate in giving it back. All Might will find someone more suited to carry on his legacy. Izuku has already disappointed the man enough. The greenette let out a weak sob. He startled as the arms that were wrapped around him tightened the embrace. He forgot his dad was here. Oh my god, his dad is here. Was he back because he had a quirk now? It makes sense. Nobody wants a worthless son. That means he can't give All Might's quirk back. He can't if his dad leave him again. But his dad said he never cared that he was quirkless. That has to be a lie. Nobody liked quirkless people. Mom often cried because he was quirkless. A worthless Deku for his son was so hard for her. He can't let All Might have one for all back. He needs it. Mother was happy now that he has a quirk. His father came back. He has a wonderful boyfriend and an amazing girlfriend. And he got into UA. If he loses his quirk, he will lose everything else. He didn't realize that he was hyperventilating until his vision started to turn black as nausea made his stomach churn. SHHHH. I'm here, his father whispered into his hair, bringing him closer to his chest. Whatever you are thinking right now, stop it. It's clearly not helping you at all. Hisashi leaned off, taking a look at the shaking figure of his son. He frowned in worry. Among the many quirks he stole, mind reading came in hand a lot. Reading his son's mind was a breach of privacy, but he was worried since Izuku broke down. It hurts to hear his kid not believing that he doesn't care about him being quirkless. As much as he wants one for all back, he would never take it from his son, especially when it has helped him so much. though he still wants to kick All Might's ass for not training his son properly, which resulted in multiples broken bones. Talking about that he should find a way to heal Izuku's injuries without revealing himself. But that's for another time. Right now he has to deal with a distressed green bin. Hisashi places a kiss on the kid's forehead before standing up and reaching his hand to his kid. "Come, your mother is waiting for us in the common room," he said softly. Izuku wipes off his tears with a shaky breath and takes his father's hand. The man helps him to get up and they make it to the door slowly. His father refused to let go of him, helping him walk all the way down the stairs, both completely ignoring the screams of despair from Mineta's room. Izuku felt his heart stop when he saw the little girl in his mother's arms. She looked like his father, Sam, white hair and red eyes. Did he had a child with another woman while he was away? Were they replacing him? Why bother comforting him then? Was it to make him feel even worse when finding out? His mother gave him a soft smile as he gets closer. She places a kiss on his cheek and wraps her free arm around him in a one-arm hug, he being the touch-starved prick he is. He leaned into the embrace, forgetting about the girl for a minute before Enko leaned away from him, leaving him with a sense of yearning. "Izuku, my love. This is Iri," she pointed to the little girl in her arms. "Your father." The woman threw a look at him that made the man fidget nervously under her gaze. "Found her on his way here. She is going to be your little sister since she has nobody else." Iri analyzed the greenette for a long minute. Izuku had to stop himself from whimpering. He was still mentally fragile. He felt like the girl was judging him and he still felt like he was being replaced. A girl with a quirk. If the horn is anything to go by, he can't blame his parents for wanting to get a better kid, but still hurt. Before he could go any further into his dark thoughts, he felt a little hand ruffle his hair. He looked up, seeing the girl looking at him like she knew what he has been through. As he meets her eyes, he could see the silent suffering. How much she has been hurt. She places a hand on his face and whispers sadly, "You're broken just like me," the girl says happily with a frail smile. The words from the little girl stunned the two adults, both looking worriedly between the two children. Iri jumped off from Inko's arms, catching herself from tripping as she ran towards the greenette, wrapping her little arms around his torso. "Don't worry, Hisashi-san can save you too, just like he saved me. We are safe now," the white-haired girl said in a tone that she believes to be reassuring. Izuku couldn't help but cry as he returned the embrace. She knew how he felt. Whatever she has gone through, it made her able to recognize one of her own. They were more alike than anyone would think. She was right. They were safe now, weren't they? Both Inko and Hisashi joined the hug, the two adults whispering reassuring words that they were both safe now. Yeah, he was going to be okay. There was tension among the three classes. Monoma and Shinsu had disappeared, probably trying to find the distraught Cinemoral from Class 1A. Kirishima had left as well. He was horrified when he realized that Bakugo's victim was Midori. Ada had them all wait in the room for the teachers to come back. Nobody talked. They were still too shocked about what they had heard. After 30 minutes, Uraraka and Todoroki came back, both blushing furiously for some reason. After an hour of waiting, everyone was getting restless. They were about to send someone after a teacher when Aizawa entered the room looking like death itself. Both Monoma and Shinsu behind looking absolutely furious. They understood why when they saw the person behind them. It was Bakugo, Mizuki Megumi, the homeroom teacher of 1 degree Celsius, right behind him like she was scouting him. As soon as everyone's eyes landed on the explosive boy, the tension came back in full force. Some were snarling at him, others couldn't meet his eyes, and the rest decided to ignore the teen, not even uttering a word. Koda and Kendo were briefed about what happened. The silent boy had cried, signing that he knew something was off with Midoriya and Bakugo's relationship, but was too afraid to go after answers. Kendo just kept a blank face the entire explanation. Nobody knew what was going through her head. The three students entered the room, both Nito and Hitoshi doing their best to keep their distance from the other blonde. Aizawa looked around, pleased at finding every student present. Before he could even open his mouth, everyone flinched as a high crunch echoed in the room. Every head turned towards the sound, finding Kendo's big hand clenched into a fist and Bakugo on the floor holding his jaws, which apparently was displaced. "Kendo," Mizuki called her name aghast as she came to the blonde's side to see the damage. "I'll take any punishment you find appropriate, but I won't apologize," the ginger girl said bluntly, not even a sign of remorse showing on her face. Megumi couldn't just let the girl go unpunished. As much as she understands the girl's anger, she can't just hurt a student when he didn't instigate a fight. She took a weary sigh. "Go to the principal's office, Kendo. I'll meet you there after we are done here." "As you wish, Mizuki-sensei," the girl complained, leaving the room without sparing a glance at anyone. The Class 1B looked after her in shock. The most level-headed person from their class just assaulted Bitchku. They wonder what led her to act with such violence. Everyone was angry at Bakugo, but nobody dared to attack him, knowing that it would only make things worse and that it would be wrong. Monoma frowned, looking at where Kendo disappeared. Unlike his classmates, he knew why of her reaction. She never talks about her family, but he had been her friend since they were kids, so he was bound to know. Her big brother was quirkless. She wasn't ashamed of him. No, the reason she doesn't talk about him is that he committed suicide after being assaulted on his work. They had tormented him for years since he was 4. But what happened at work was the last straw. Not only he was violated, but his girlfriend told him to kill himself after finding out what happened, calling him useless for not being able to defend himself. And now she finds out that one of her new friends, someone she had come to see as a brother, has also been told to kill himself as well. And after watching the greenette break his bones all the damn time, the boy had told them that his quirk manifested on the day of the exam, so he was quirkless until then, which made his situation way too similar to her big brother's. He would have to see how Kendo was doing after this. She was probably having a breaking down over this, and he couldn't leave her alone with her thoughts. Nobody but him, who was still staring at the door, realized Hakegure leave after her girlfriend. At least his friend was in good hands. Mizuki was trying to fix Bakugo's jaw. After a pain cry, she was able to set his jaw back to place. The boy held back tears from the pain and got up instantly. He looked down, clenching his teeth in anger. Aizawa coughed, getting everyone's attention. He didn't even scold Kendo for assaulting one of his students. He actually seemed a little bit pleased at the situation. What a sadist. From today on, Bakugo is no longer part of the hero class, the black-haired man said aloofly. While Class 1B and 1 degrees Celsius seemed to be expecting that and were more than happy at the news, half of the 1A class were shocked, torn between accepting it and protesting about it. Bakugo was clenching his fists tightly, gritting his teeth in suppressed anger. Aizawa proceeded to explain that the blonde boy would be now in Class 1 degrees Celsius under probation. The class specified were outraged by it, not wanting a wannabe bully in their class, though they were more receptive when the homeroom teacher explained that a student from Class 1 degrees Celsius would be transferred to Class 1A to fill his place, which got them a bit excited to see who would be chosen since Shinsu has already transferred to the heroic course. Continuing on his explanation, Eraserhead said that if the explosive boy wanted any chance of going back to the hero course, he would have to attend therapy and anger management, keeping his distance from Midoriya Izuku, to not direct a single word in the greenette's direction. They had apprehended his hero costume and equipment because, well, he was no hero student any longer. Of course, the blonde was beyond pissed off at hearing about it. Bakugo looked like he wanted to attack their homeroom teacher in front of the entire class but held himself from doing it, so his punishment wouldn't get harsher. Jiru was pleased with the punishment, though if it was her, she would have expelled the teen. Well, at least he wouldn't get near her friend anymore. Okay, she was a bit worried that the blonde would try to go after Izuku anyways. She would have to keep an eye on Bakugo for a while. An exchanged glance between her, Shinsu and Monoma confirmed that both also thought the same things. It was already night. Mother and father were staying on UA1, the teacher's dorms, for a couple of days for his sake. Kiri and Izuku had gotten along, and the thoughts about being replaced by her vanished as they bonded over their traumas. She was now sound asleep on his room. The greenette asked for permission from Aizawa-sensei to go outside for a couple of minutes. The man sighed tiredly but gave in and told him that he had about 30 minutes to chill outside. Izuku just needed some fresh air. He needed some time outside alone. So much happened in so little time. His father came back assured that he loved him with or without a quirk. Bakugo has been moved to General Ed. The greenette tried to talk with the teachers and the principal about not taking him off the heroic course, but they said it was for his safety and Bakugo's own good. He still didn't like it though. He felt guilty, but also happy. Not a single teacher from Aldera ever stood up to him. Never ever have they punished those who bullied him, which made him feel safer. Maybe UA would be different from his previous school. His classmates tried to talk to him, but he really didn't want to face them right now. He is relieved that they are worried and not mad at him for being weak, but he just couldn't talk to them right now. He had so much in his head right now. Shouto and Ochako agreed on leaving him alone for the rest of the day. He appreciated that they thought so much on his mental health. Aizawa has been real soft. Who knew the man cared so much for his students? Mother said he was more than eager to accept being his legal guardian, which left the greenette speechless and touched at the same time. So many seemed to care about him, and it made him happy. It made those ugly thoughts he had vanished bit by bit. He took a deep breath, a single tear going down his cheek. He felt like a weight had been lifted from his shoulders. He didn't need to hide this part of him anymore. It felt good to have people know about his burden. Maybe no, he should totally tell his parents and his lovers about his quirk. All Might said he shouldn't tell anyone, but he trusts them and he needs to tell someone about it. Keeping it to himself feels so lonely sometimes. The only person he can talk about it is Yagi, and the man isn't really helpful when teaching and giving advice. The freckled boy looked up to the sky, feeling peaceful at the calm night. Yes, he will tell them tomorrow. It will make things better. Deku. Izuku felt his heart stop beating, his body shaking as the breath left out of his lungs completely. We need to talk. He turned slowly, only to meet a furious Bakugo with both his gauntlet in hands. Kaken, the greenette asked, his form shaking, and his skin pale from apprehensiveness. This is all your fault. If you have never tried to apply to UA, if you just gave up on being a hero, I would still be a hero. Kek, shut up. You ruined everything for me. You should have jumped when I told you to. Izuku flinched, taking a couple of steps backward. What happened? He could swear that he saw a bit of regret on his once friend's face when Masao had exposed what he did. What has changed? Bolt, would that be really what you wanted? To see the only person who actually cared for you for being you and not because of your quirk to die? Shut the fuck up. The blonde screamed, both hands on his head. He hated this voice. He had done nothing wrong. He was meant to be the best hero and the stupid nerd ruined it. It's your own fault that you lost everything. You shouldn't even have been accepted into the hero course in the first place. No, it's his fault. Everything is his fault. If worthless Deku had never been born, I would be number one. He pushed the thoughts aside. The blonde prepared his gauntlets, letting an explosion towards the greenette. Izuku barely had time to dodge the attack as he was distracted at watching his once childhood friend talk to himself. The boy hissed in pain at realizing that he didn't dodge fast enough. His right arm wore burning. He was dumbfounded at seeing his flesh exposed. Bakugo had never burned him this badly. He looked at the other teen in fear. He wasn't aiming to just leave a superficial burn as a warning. He was aiming to kill him. The explosive boy snarled at missing his target, aiming both gauntlets at the boy that was on the floor looking at him in horror. Bakugo smirked, feeling proud at seeing the fear in the greenette's eyes once again. It's been a while since he had taught Deku a lesson. He just needs to rough him up a little bit to show him his place. Letting two more massive explosions. He recoiled from how strong the explosion was. He watched in glee as the other teen activated his no as he activated All Might's quirk to dodge the attack. Kaken, please stop. I don't want to fight, Midoriya said in despair, tears falling from his eyes like a waterfall. Bakugo Teached. Always the huge crybaby, he muttered angrily. Not giving ears to the other's plea, he prepared himself to make another blast. The blonde used the explosion to propulsion himself towards Deku, too fast and sudden for the greenette to dodge. Before Bakugo's fist could connect with his face, he was suddenly being thrown to the side by a red blur. Taken by surprise, the blonde looked around for the culprit, finding Kirishima with tears in his eyes as he looked down at him sadly. You could have changed ... Why would you throw away a second chance like this, Katsu? Katsuki looked at Ijiru in confusion. What the hell he was talking about? He didn't need to change. He just needed to put the worthless Deku in his place and everything would go back to normal. It always worked on Aldera. Why wouldn't it work here? He ignored the pang of shame and guilt at seeing the melancholic face of his ex-boyfriend and pushed away these feelings. The blonde was on his feet in a second and was ready to shoot another blast. Shitty hair could take an explosion with his quirk like he usually did. Finding the shaking figure of Deku a couple of meters behind the red-headed, he raised his hands and put all his force to make the most strong explosion he had yet to do. Kirishima, realizing his intentions, hardened himself to the extreme, preparing to take the blast. It was too late when Izuku screamed for him to run. The explosion was massive, burning the trees that were around them and throwing the red-haired backward pretty hard. The greenette was sure that he heard a crunching noise as the boy landed on the ground. He noticed that the boy's leg has been broken from how strong the explosion threw him off. His arms were both bleeding, clothes all burning, small pieces falling to the floor. The smell of burned flesh made them both nauseous. Before Bakugo could even see the damage he inflicted on the red-haired, a sonorous explosion wiped him off his feet, making him hit the wall with a brute force, cracking the wall behind him. Since when his explosions became this powerful? Jiru asked, dumbfounded as she came to the red-headed's aid. She thanks all the existent gods for having such enhanced hearing. If she had arrived a minute later, she doesn't know what the hell would have happened here. Kirishima was covered in burns, his hardened skin for the first time not able to protect him. He shooed his classmate away, telling her to check on Izuku as he got up, flinching in pain and waking towards the unconscious blonde. Jiru obligated and ran towards the shaking form of the greenette. She was worried sick. She hasn't seen her friend since the exam. She wanted to give him and his lover's space, but she was starting to feel restless, doing nothing to help. When Aizawa had told the class about Bakugo's punishment, the only thing she could think about was how the blonde would react to this. It would obviously be with violence, so she was really preoccupied about letting the teen in the same room as her friend. Fortunately, the greenette had disappeared the entire day. Either he was in his room or he was really good at avoiding the other boy. She felt her stomach turn thinking about the latter. They have been friends for such a little time. But wow, she loved the greenette so much. Their friendship was so deep. She never thought such a friendship as theirs could exist. To be able to hold someone and tell them you love them without having to explain that she wasn't romantically attached to them. It was a type of friendship she never thought she needed. She never thought of herself as a cuddly person, but now with Todoroki, Uraraka, and Izuku by her side, it was so comforting. To think that someone would attack her friend when he was so tired down, so defenseless, it made her blood boil with anger. Why couldn't the blonde leave him alone? He was already being punished with being taken from the hero class. Did he want to get expelled? Or worse, was he so eager to hurt her friend so badly to the point that his actions would lead him to jail? Because that attack could have killed the freckled boy had she and Kirishima not intervened. They were lucky that they heard the fuss from the kitchen, or else they would have damaged the freckled boy beyond help. He had obviously stolen the gauntlets from Nedzu's office. So not only he was violating the rules of his punishment, but he was also now a thief. The principal will have a fit when he gets to know that the teen had entered his office and stole his hero equipment back, especially since she doubts the boy lockpicked the door. He probably just blew it off. When Kirishima has confirmed that indeed she had knocked down Bakugo, she didn't even think twice. Before she knew, she had the Izuku in her arms, embracing him with all her force but yet careful to not hurt his right arm. She took a deep breath, getting the scent of his fluffy hair. She could feel his tears on her shirt as he returned the hug shakily. "You're safe. You're okay," she repeated like a mantra as she caressed his curly hair. "He is not going to hurt you anymore. We are here." Nobody noticed Kendo glaring daggers at the unconscious blonde as she proceeds to make a call. Aizawa had heard the screams from his room. The man had never run so fast in his life. He even felt dizzy when he arrived at his destination. He was horrified to find a badly burned Midoriya and even more burned and limping Kirishima, who was being supported by Jiro, who by the way looked like she was about to murder someone. "What the hell happened?" he asked as he made his ways to his problem child. Inspecting for more injuries, he hissed at seeing the exposed flesh on his right arm. Jiro snarled at his side. "It was Bakugo," she said bitterly. Kirishima seemed to be in a daze at her side, looking blankly at the front. "He is outside." Unconscious, she muttered the last part. You could pretty much cut the tension with a butter knife when Aizawa heard her words. He was fuming. The man rarely got mad and now he was fucking livid. "Take these two to recover girl. She sleeps late just in case things like this happen. Tell her to call an ambulance as well. There is only so much she can do for her patients," he said through clenched teeth. The students complied with his request. But he didn't let them go before he giving a hug to his problem child and assuring him that this was not his fault. He knew that the kid would think that. He always did. Which reminds him, the poor boy needs therapy. Jiro smiled softly at seeing the brunette lean into the embrace and suppressed a snort as the boy looked utterly disappointed when Eraserhead leaned off to leave. She notices the man rolling his eyes, but you could see a small smile forming on his face as he shuffled the freckled boy's hair before leaving. The lilac-haired girl watched the man go with a slight frown, hoping that they sort this out quickly for Midoriya's sake. Jiro offers a hand to Izuku, knowing that the contact made him feel less anxious and more grounded. When he takes her hand, they all leave after recovery girl. After dealing with a grumpy half-asleep Nedzu, Aizawa led them to the principal's office, and as he expected, they found the door blasted onto the ground. The rat woke up completely as soon as he saw the damage. Both Bakugo's gauntlets were missing, which had both adults almost throw a fit in anger. They quickly went to check the camera's footage to see what exactly happened. Nedzu's eyes widened in surprise as he watched the tape. That explosion was 3 times stronger than Bakugo's usual ones. He exchanged a look with Aizawa, both thinking the same thing. Trigger. The drug has been around, it's been a while. People taking them to make their quirks stronger if Bakugo got his hands on the drug. God, this has gotten even more complicated. Not only one of their students tried to kill Midoriya, but he was also using an illegal drug, and from what they saw, from how strong the explosion looked like, he had to have taken more than one pill. Nedzu wanted to go ballistic. He gives the explosive child a chance to change. And not even half-day later, he tries to kill the boy that he was supposed to keep his distance from. He took a deep breath, trying to compose himself. There is no other way. They couldn't let Bakugo in UA anymore. He has proved to be too dangerous to keep him here, and his attempt of murder left only one thing for them to do. He doubts that Midoriya and Co. and Midoriya Hasashi won't press charges against the teen this time. He expected as much. The two adults startle as someone suddenly appears in front of the office, panting from running. Aizawa arched a brow at seeing the state of one of the security staff, but frowned upon noticing something missing. "Where is Bakugo? I told you he was outside near the gates." The man looked up to him wide-eyed nervously. Aye, there was nobody when I got there, sir." Aizawa and Nedzu wanted to fucking die. The place was dark. He was tied to a chair tightly, and there was a strange type of handcuff on his wrists. And on his ankles, they hurt so much he wouldn't dare move. The first time he tried, it felt like someone was cutting his flesh. He looked around trying to find anything visible, anything that would give away where the fuck he was. Was this something the rat bastard came up with to scare him? Or was this some type of interrogation room? Well, he wasn't fucking scared. Heroes don't get scared. "Hey, cut that shit out. This AI ain't gonna work on me," he screamed. Well, look at who we have here." Bakugo froze, a chill going through his spine at hearing the hoarse voice. "No, this can't be, not again." Shigaraki took a couple of steps closer, enough so the blonde could see him in the dark. He had a feral smile splattered on his face. Right behind him was Dabai, Toga, and the rest of the LOV, all of them looking furious on their own way. The man chuckled amusedly at seeing his expression before looking behind the blonde. Well, that's a nice surprise, Kendo. We thought you wouldn't work for us anymore, Shigaraki asked a bit suspiciously. Oh, don't get me wrong, a voice from behind Bakugo said. I stopped working with the league the moment you assholes pulled that stunt at the training camp. She glared at the white hair. Tamura won't lie. The girl could be scary when she wanted to, he just grunted in response. Anyways, take this one like a little farewell gift from me. Do whatever you please to him, just make sure that he suffers, the ginger-haired girl said coldly. Kendo, from Class 1B. What the fuck? Is she a traitor? She was with the fucking league. He tried to turn to look at her but realized that there was something around his throat that kept him from moving. Isn't that pretty violent from someone from the hero course? Dabai said, smirking at the red-headed who just simply shrugged. It makes sense for her to be mad. He hurt the cinnamon roll. That makes no sense at all. Why should we care? Twice said, contradicting himself. Yes, how dare he hurt Izu-chan? Only I can make him bleed, Toga said voraciously, as she pointed a knife to his cheek, drawing blood as she pressed it deeper into his skin. Why the fuck you all care about him? He is nothing but a worthless Deku. Bakugo let out the loudest screech as a knife was carved into his right hand, hitting the nerves all the way in. Don't call our Zuzu worthless, Toga hissed at the blonde. She took the knife out without any care, making the boy scream in pain once again. The blonde teen tried to push his tears back, not wanting to show weakness. F fucking bitch, essence when he is why yours? He asked with a snarl. They all exchanged a glance with each other. The group nodded as they come to an agreement. They won't say a single word about their relationship with the Greenette. The teen was the only hero in the making that they believed in. He will eventually be ours, you silly. Toga put on her act, smiling widely. Yeah, one day we will get him into the league, just you watch, Spinner said passionately. That drew a snort from the blonde. How like would be of any use to you? He would be just as useless as he is as a hero. That was definitely not the right thing to say as Toga carved her knife into his other hand, drawing a scream through gritted teeth from the explosive boy. Now, you should watch what you say about our sweet green bean, Magni said, shaking her head in disappointment. Spinner didn't really like hurting kids, but from what Kendo had reported to them, he has been nothing but a piece of shit his entire life. He tried to give the teen a chance, but after the stunt he pulled half an hour ago, he couldn't stop himself from wanting to hurt him. We will make sure you will never use your quirk on our Zuzu ever again, the blonde girl said excitedly, fidgeting the knife in his hand, making the boy scream in pain. His cries came from deep within his chest, rabid animal sounds that twisted into raspy moans by the time they left his cracking lips. He tried to say something, but it came out as nothing but a guttural bark each time Himiko cut off an artery. A beautiful melody came out from the teen. They would make him regret ever hurting what is theirs. After All for One was defeated and the League of Villains were at loss, they didn't know what else to do without their leader, and Shigaraki didn't really want to lead in his place. They had spent a month without knowing what to do until the Greenette had stumbled upon them when they were in an alley planning to raid a bank. At first, they all just stared at the boy as he seemed to try not to have a panic attack. They were all homeless at that point. Their hiding place has been destroyed and they had no money to buy food or clothes. Himiko was starving. She refused to drink their blood, saying that she didn't want them to hate her too. Izuku had noticed the literal bloodthirsty girl on the ground with what looked like a fever, and to their surprise, the hero student offered his blood to the girl, which, to be honest, that had them all gapping at the boy, like what the fuck? They were villains. Why would he just offer his blood to one of them? After that, it became common for the boy to somehow find them and offer any type of help. Gloves missing the pinky finger for Shigaraki, a box full of card games, depression medication, and ointment for burns for Dabai, which again, what the fuck? How the hell did the Greenette knew about Dabai's mental health? The boy would also bring some cutesy clothes and tampons for Toga, makeup for Magni, a stain figure action for Spinner. He tried to come up with something for Mr. Compress, but the man reassured the teen that he didn't need anything special and was thankful for Midoriya thinking of him. The kid had somehow managed to find an illegal underground therapist for twice, and all of them, which to be honest, had them just accepting the fact that they would never find out how the sweet boy could get so much illegal stuff out of thin air. Maybe it's a quirk. The cherry on top was when the boy led them through the night to an abandoned building for them to stay in. The boy said he would bring some blanket and pillows from donations that he apparently has been receiving since he found them. You could say that they felt like shit for being villains when the sweetest pure green bean has been helping them. When they asked him why was he helping them, he just simply shrugged and gave them that sunshine smile as he said, "You just seemed like you needed help," which had them melting from how pure the kid was. Every once in a while, the boy would meet Toga in their building to give her some blood. Since she started to drink blood daily, she has been doing better both physically and mentally. He said she could get his blood or blood donations with him anytime as long as she stopped killing people. Toga accepted his offer, feeling saner and in control of herself more than she has felt in years. The Greenette had discovered who Dabai was pretty quickly. He connected the dots on the second day of meeting them. Fire stronger than Endeavor's. A body built for an ice quirk that had been damaged beyond help. An obsession with trying to kill Endeavor, and the black-haired seemed to pay attention to a certain half-and-half quirked boy. Izuku being Izuku. Got his notebook in hands and analyzed. He put the pieces together, hacking into the private records and finding in their database about Todoroki Taoya's death. After that, the Greenette would update the scarred man about his little brother's state and would bring files to open up a case against Endeavor. The black-haired was more than grateful at receiving help. Midoriya promised to help more as long as he stopped being a villain and agreed to go through the legal way to get Shadow from Todoroki Iji's custody. Dabai accepted. One day he brought up how terrible quirk discrimination has been in the last couple of years. Spinner and Toga agreed, both having issues in the past because of their quirks. The next day a couple of files were left in their building. One against Toga's school and parents and another one against Spinner's college and work. The lizard man was beyond thankful. The Greenette said that if they stood low for a while and came to a certain Detective Naomasa, they could present their cases and get a lighter sentence. After all, they were villains shaped by society. Recently, Shigaraki has been regaining his memories, and with this new information, Midoriya was able to find his true name, Shimura Tenko. When Tomo Shimura got all his memories back, he was torn. He didn't know what to think anymore. He wanted to be a hero when he was 4, but his quirk never came, and when it did, he killed his entire family. The only person he doesn't regret killing was his bastard of a father. Sensei said he had saved him ... but Midoriya didn't think so. He was just a puppet, a way to get All Might, using the grandson of his former mentor. He felt used, like he lost all his purpose in life. The freckled teen tried to reassure him, saying that now that their sensei was gone, he could make his own path and that he could still make the right thing. When asking about how he could do good after being a villain, like the heroes wouldn't try to kill him as soon they see him, the green-haired boy just responded, "Vigilantes exist for a reason, you know." When Izuku told him that he could have been a hero being quirkless or with the decay quirk, the white-haired man had conflicted feelings. He wasn't going to decide anything right now, but he decided that he liked the Greenette. At some point, the entire league loved the Green Bean. Most promising to try leaving the path of villainy. Some just promising to not kill anyone good, which depending on their point of view it was pretty concerning. But hey, it was at least something. So yeah, when their double agent had told them about how a certain angry Pomeranian has been a piece of shit towards their Green Bean, it did piss them the fuck off. Izuku would sure hate them if he finds out what they're doing to his precious once friend. But they won't let the explosive boy go unpunished for hurting what is theirs. They had to teach him a lesson since Yue hasn't done a great job in doing so, but hey. They promised to not kill anyone, but they never said anything about a little bit of torture, and the little shit was far from being a good person. Recovery Girl sighed tiredly when she saw the 3 teenagers. Midoriya was to be expected, but the red-haired. What had these kids got themselves into this time? She had to suppress a gasp as she saw their situation. It looked like the 2 boys ran into Endeavor because those burns were really bad. Kirishima's state was less bad from the 2 injured. It would definitely going to let scars on both his arms and on his chest, but they wouldn't be so visible as the ones from Midoriya. The red-headed had his legs bones fractured in multiple places, something that Recovery Girl couldn't really heal. She could make the surgery herself, but after the Midoriyas called her out on not having a license to operate, she decided to let this to the professionals. After all, she feels like if she did something like what she did with Midoriya Izuku on the sports festival again, Midoriya Hisashi would end her himself. The red-headed was hissing every 5 seconds from his burns, never really dealing with such an injury. The Greenette on the other side kept quiet like he didn't have his flesh exposed. Recovery Girl's quirk didn't do much to help. It would leave a nasty scar. Aizawa had come by to explain the situation to Recovery Girl, the woman shaking her head in disappointment at Bakugo's behavior. The homeroom teacher also relayed what he and the principal found out about the incident. The 3 teens were beyond shocked when he said that they found a trigger capsule in Bakugo's room, confirming their suspicions about the boy using the drug. Kirishima was really disappointed that the blonde would do such a thing. It seemed like every time someone would talk about the blonde it made his situation worse, and he felt ashamed for not realizing what kind of person he was sooner. While the red-haired was lost in thoughts, Izuku noticed that Eraserhead looked troubled. He had this "I want to die" look on his face. They had found nothing about the blonde's whereabouts. The camera footage was corrupted so they couldn't see what happened after the other 3 teens left. Nobody said anything about Bakugo's state, which had the Greenette worried. Aizawa rolled his eyes so hard that he felt like they would pop out from his eye sockets. Of course, the problem child would be worried about the person who just tried to fucking kill. The black-haired man wanted to shake the boy back and forward. The only thing stopping him from doing it was how badly injured his kid was. He was certainly not going to tell the boy that his bully had just mysteriously disappeared. Knowing him, he would burst out of the room to find the blonde by himself as soon as he told him about it. So yeah, he wasn't going to let the Greenette know about his disappearance, he sighed. He just wanted one day without having to deal with all this bullshit. Before leaving, he reassured Izuku again that none of this was his fault. Both Kirishima and Jiro giving their 2 cents on telling the boy that the only one at fault was Bakugo himself. The reassurance coming from the red-haired seemed to have more effect since the boy always admired the blonde. When their homeroom teacher left, they waited as Recovery Girl called for an ambulance for the boys. She left after finishing the call, saying that she would be at the gates to lead them to the infirmary when they arrive. While all the adults were away, Kirishima watched as Jiro and Midoriya bickered about the girl going to wake his friends up to see him. The Greenette not wanting to worry them and be an inconvenience, which had both other teens frown at his thinking, realizing how bad the freckled boy's mental health was. He keeps blaming himself for what happened with Bakugo, for the blonde attacking him, for Kirishima getting hurt, for being a bother. The red-haired felt guilty at seeing the others' state. If he had noticed how bad things were between Midoriya and Katsu Bakugo, then maybe he wouldn't think so badly about himself as he does now. Years of someone telling that everything is your fault do wonders to your mental health. The Greenette was fidgeting nervously on his bed. Jiro had left to bring his friends to check on him, so the boy was really nervous. Aizawa looked worriedly at the other teen. He wanted to help, but he didn't know how. He also felt like he wasn't the best person to comfort the boy since he had dated his abuser. He noticed how the Greenette was beyond surprised when he showed up to help him out, like he was expecting him to do otherwise, to join Katsuki and beat him up. It made him feel nauseous that his classmate would assume that of him. But he can't blame him. He did nothing when the blonde insulted the boy. He encouraged their fighting, thinking it was a rival thing. Not even 5 minutes after Jiro had left, it could be heart-strong footsteps coming towards the infirmary room. Izu, divided by Zuzu. Both Todoroki and Uraraka shouted as they entered the room, startling Aizawa, who looked at the two in utter confusion at the use of cutesy nicknames for the boy. The couple of teens were circling the freckled boy like two mother hens, inspecting the Greenette and frowning over seeing each injury. Jiro was standing at the entrance, arms crossed, and hair all messy as she watched fondly the scene. When she had gone to wake up the two teens, she didn't expect that Uraraka's reaction to the words Izuku and hurt would be to grab both Todoroki's and her hand and jump from the window as she activated her quirk. Both the lilac-haired and the bicolored teen almost had a heart attack. Oh my god, Izu. What happened? Those looked so painful. The girl had tears forming in her eyes as she looked at his injuries, her hand holding one side of his face, the boy leaning into the touch with closed eyes. The dual-quirked boy didn't look any better. He was staring at his boyfriend's burnt flesh, horrified. He could tell from experience that those would leave painful scars. It would hurt every time the teen moved. He took the freckled boy's arm on his right hand carefully and used his ice quirk to minimize the pain. He felt a little bit relieved at seeing the Greenette's forceful smile relax as he eased his pain. He looked into his loved one's eyes with a sour expression. He did this, didn't he? Izuku flinched at the tone of voice which almost had Shadow feel guilty if he wasn't burning in anger at the confirmation when the other slowly nodded, not meeting his eyes. The brunette was shaking in anger at this. The school had given that bastard a second chance, a chance to prove himself worthy of changing for the better, and not even a day later the stupid blonde attacked her boyfriend. I'm going to fucking kill him, Uraraka said darkly, which had Kirishima, who was watching the scene, flinch at her tone. That didn't sound like an empty threat at all. He gulped, moving a little bit to the edge of his bed to keep his distance from the dark aura that the brunette was emitting. It was then that Todoroki and Uraraka noticed Kirishima on the other bed. The two were so done with people finding out about their relationship with Izuku that at this point they just gave up on giving a shit. The brunette smiled softly. Tell anyone about what you are about to see and I'll end you myself. Got it, she said in a sing-song voice. The red-haired was utterly confused at what she was talking about but nodded, afraid of the brown-eyed girl. He was shell-shocked when both Todoroki and Uraraka leaned into Midoriya for a small kiss. No, scratch that. They covered the boy in kisses. The freckled boy had the face of someone who was in paradise as he melted into his companion's demonstration of affection. He knew they were doing this to keep him from letting his dark thoughts consume him and appreciated that. The teen felt lucky for having such thoughtful lovers. He wanted to show them off to the class one day, because he loved them so much. Knowing how Izuku's mind works, the brunette leaned down next to his ear. We still love you, okay? Achako whispered. She knew how insecure her boyfriend was about his scars. Now he has received even more, and these he couldn't hide like the others. The boy couldn't help let out a sob at hearing the reassuring words. The girl held his uninjured hand and gave the teen a soft smile as she wiped off his tears with the back of her other hand. Todoroki was still furious, though he didn't let it show on his face. I doubt they will let Bakugo stay after this. He may even be sent to jail after what he did. He felt pleased with the thought. Someone like the blonde should never be a hero. He reminds him too much of his father. Izuku looked at him with wide eyes in shock. What? No, they can't expel him. And he can't go to jail. He always wanted to be a hero. This would destroy him. It's all my fault anyway. The Greenette shook in panic. Maybe if I talk to Aizawa-sensei and Principal Nedzu they will give him another chance. The boy was cut off by both Ochako and Shadow putting their hands on his shoulders, both wearing an exasperated look. Zuzu, this isn't your fault. Please, stop blaming yourself for everything, the brunette pleaded. The bi-colored-haired boy squeezed the teen's shoulder, making Izuku look at him. Izu, you keep telling me that I should do something about my father, that I shouldn't stay with my abuser, and that Fayumi needs to stop bringing up excuses for the old man. Yet you keep doing this yourself towards Bakugo. You keep thinking it's your fault, that maybe he can change, that if you had done something different things would be better. You need to put in your head the fact that none of this is your fault. But he was going to be a hero, the brunette whispered as tears fell from his eyes. Kirishima felt like an intruder at hearing this conversation between the two boyfriends. He felt nauseous. Endeavor was an abusive parent. What the hell? He always admired the guy for being extreme, but to know that he was also an abuser ... It made him feel like he was really bad at judging someone's character. First Bakugo, now Endeavor as well. How many people has he misjudged? Is there anyone out there that is hurt because he was too blind to see if the people he was friends with were bad people? Nina, Kaminari, and Siro always laughed out loud when Bakugo insulted Midoriya. Kirishima himself was guilty of doing the same, of thinking that the blonde using his explosions on the other teen was somehow manly. What does that say about him? He looked to his right. He smiled slightly at seeing Izuku being comforted by his lovers. At least Midoriya had people who loved him to help him get better. Everyone jumped on their places as two adults entered the room in a panic. Accidentally shoving Jiru out of the way, the girl let out a startled yelp. The air became tense as hell when both Midoriyas looked at their son, horrified at seeing the damage he suffered. "Oh, my baby." And Ko cried out loud at seeing the extent of his injuries. Hisashi had this look on his face that made the others shiver, turning away so they won't meet the man's eyes by accident. Nedzu took this moment to make his presence known. "Don't worry, the ambulance is arriving soon." The rodent tried to force a smile. "Now, about Bakugo." The rat fidgeted nervously. How is he supposed to explain this situation, that no security guard was patrolling to stop this incident? That the person who took care of the camera left to take a nap and didn't see the fight? Mr. Hisashi had already pointed out all the problems with the school. He has a feeling that the man just didn't destroy UAS image yet because his son wouldn't approve, but now that this incident happened, Midoriya and Ko and Midoriya Hisashi both turned their heads very slowly as they meet the principal's eyes. Nedzu tried not to flinch at the aura of killing intent emanating from the couple. Fuck. Aizawa was searching in the dorms for any sign of Bakugo, his husband Hisashi at his side. The blonde had told him about what he heard when he was passing by the infirmary. Hopefully, the kids didn't notice him hearing their conversation. Shout aside wearily. He would have to start an investigation on Endeavor after what he heard. He felt bad for not noticing the signs of abuse on his students, first problem child, now Todoroki as well. They were on their way to Bakugo's dorm room. Maybe the little brat went back to his room since there was no record of someone leaving by the gates. The blonde must have seen them coming out of his room with the trigger capsule before entering. The two adults froze as they heard sobs coming from the supposed missing student. They exchanged a glance. The black-haired took his capturing weapon, ready to take down his one student in case he tried to run away. His eyes flashing red as he activated his quirk, Yamato right behind him in a fight stance. When he opened the door, Aizawa's eyes widened as he looked at the scene in front of him. Bakugo was on the floor, eyes glassy filled with tears. What got his attention the most was his hands ... They were open. All the nerves seemed to have been cut and the bones were broken beyond salvation, and his mouth was bleeding. God, did someone cut his tongue? He had to suppress the surge of vomiting. There was so much blood. Hisashi's eye couldn't leave the words carved deep into the blonde's bloody arms. The word Deku written over and over again. Kaken, stop hurting her. Worthless. Deku. We're going to be a hero duo. Why don't you take a swan dive off the roof and pray you to get a quirk on your next life? What did I ever do to you, Kaken? We were supposed to be heroes together. You're just so useless. Kaken, stop please. I just want my friend back. You think you're better than him, but you'll never be the hero that he already is. Why do you hate him so much? He was your friend. You're just like Endeavor. You think you were protecting him. So why did you like it so much when he cried? The teachers were probably at fault as well, but ... You knew that what you did was wrong. You just didn't care. You kept hurting him because you knew he would have been a better hero than you, quirkless or not. You're just pathetic. Bakugo had been kidnapped by the League for a short 30 minutes. But it felt like days. His hands hurt so much, he wanted to scream in pain, but his throat hurt, voice hoarse from crying each time the blonde villain girl stabbed him. You know, what is that saying? Ah yes, sometimes words hurt more than actions. Shigaraki said thoughtful. So your tongue has to get some cuts as well. Maybe this way you will think better before talking shit. He knew he was wrong, but someone had to put the nerd on his place, right? At first it was to scare the boy off from trying to be a hero, but he started to like it as the years went by. He doesn't know why. Maybe it was because he was getting used to hurt the greenette every single day. May as well enjoy it instead of feeling the dread feeling of guilt. What type of hero likes hurting people? Mr. Compress said in disgust. Endeavor Dabai, the burnt freak had replied. He flinched. He was right. He was like Endeavor, the hero who had hurt his son with the excuse that he was training the child to surpass all might. You know, when Shiggy tried to recruit you, we didn't think you were fit for villainy, but now, I don't know why you're even in the hero course. You're such villain material, Toga said with the Cheshire smile before fidgeting the knife on his palm. Bakugo's mind was a mess right now. Sometimes he would admit that he was a monster. Other times he would think how much the greenette deserved his treatment. Thoughts contradicting itself. The teachers didn't care, so that means that it was okay, right? But at UA they were horrified at what he did. They punished him. No teacher has ever punished him for putting the nerd on his place. But all the kids thought Deku was worthless as well. It was his fault that he was in this mess. The fault is your own if you only have taken the chance they gave you. Heroes were never wrong. They were strong. They beat up the villains. They always win. That's what it means to be a hero. He did nothing wrong. No, what he did was wrong. But everyone hates the weak, so maybe he was right. But even the villain are disgusted by his actions. He can't stop thinking about what Shigaraki said. You're a perfect villain. Was he really that bad that the villains saw him a valuable asset? Well, not anymore, since they are looking at him now like he was no better than Endeavor. He doesn't notice when they teleport him to his dorm room. He doesn't even think about how Kurogiri had escaped Tartarus. He was lost on his thoughts. The villain's words and this voice kept talking in his mind. They wouldn't stop. He was in pain. He was confused. He didn't know what to think anymore. Someone had opened the door to his room. He hears a gasp followed by yelling, demanding that someone get the paramedics. He didn't pay much attention. He closed his eyes, praying that the pain would cease soon. He couldn't fight back as he lost consciousness. Kakin, you're my best friend, you know. You're like a brother to me. So when we grow up, we should be a hero duo. PFF, of course, nerd. We are going to be the best. Come on, nerd, tell me, what is your quirk? What did you say? What do you mean you don't have a quirk? We were supposed to be heroes together. Deku was bleeding on the floor, crying, begging him to stop using his quirk on him. He felt a pang of guilt. His heart skipped a beat and he felt like throwing up. He looked up, seeing the teacher who was watching the scene with an approving look. If she wasn't stopping him, then what he was doing was okay, right? Still, it felt wrong, but kept doing it anyway. Why are you hurting me, Kakin? I don't know, he thought to himself at the same time as he thought, because you're weak. Because I want to protect you. What was the truth? He didn't know anymore. Don't worry, kid. You did nothing wrong. Kids like Midoriya need to learn that they can't aim for heroics. You're just helping him out, the math teacher said softly as another teacher carried the unconscious body of Deku to the infirmary. But I felt bad doing this. Sometimes you need to hurt the person you care the most so they won't do something stupid, you know. The principal suspended Deku for 2 weeks for picking up a fight with him. Good to know someone is putting the brat on his place. You doing great, kiddo, the principal thanked him. Wait, was he doing it to protect Deku, or was he teaching the nerd his place? Maybe it was both. Yeah, Deku would get hurt trying to be a hero. And he also doesn't deserve to be a hero. He was weak, so he shouldn't feel bad about it, right? He wasn't doing anything wrong, right? Bakugo opened his eyes and realized he was at the hospital. He looked around, only to find a nurse noting something on her clipboard. The woman notices him shifting on his bed and went to call a doctor. He felt dizzy and a jolt of pain had him let out a whimper. Bringing both his hands up, he analyzed the damage. He couldn't help but cry at the horrifying sight. His hands were still open, his cut nerves exposed, flesh red with drying blood. It was agonizing seeing his bones. He couldn't even move a single finger without feeling like his hand was burning on hot fire. He was probably under pain medication and it still hurt so damn much. They need to fix this. He can't be a hero with his hand like this. God knows what would happen if he tried to use his quirk in this state. It would damage his hands even more. There must be a reason that the medics didn't heal him yet. There must be a quirk that can fix him. It didn't take long for the doctor to show up and break him out of his thoughts. The man gave him a pitying look. All Might was at his side, looking at his own feet with a frown. Your parents will be arriving shortly, young man, the doctor said softly, like he was talking to a little child. That enraged him. He wanted to tell the man to shut up. Talk back one more time and I'll cut your tongue off instead of just doing some small cuts, Toga said with a serious look. The expression looked so wrong on the usual high-energy girl. He shut his mouth before any word could leave his mouth. His tongue was hurting anyway, and there is no use to talk back to the shitty old man. Your tongue's cuts will scar. It will be difficult for you to talk without feeling pain for a couple of days, but aside from that you will still be able to talk. But your hands, the damage on your hands couldn't be fully healed. We have no one with a healing quirk strong enough to heal you fully. I'm afraid you won't be able to use your quirk ever again, the doctor said regretfully. Bakugo froze. No, this can't be true. He was joking, right? Tears gathered in his eyes. He wanted to scream, to explode something. But he couldn't do any of these in this state. He felt numb. He can't be a hero like this, but there must be something that can be done. He can't end like this. The doctor left the room, giving the kid some privacy as he sobbed. All Might was still in the room. When he met his eyes, he looked at him ... with disappointment. What? Why? Shouldn't he be outraged about how his chances of being a hero like him were ruined? You're going to be a great hero, Bakugo. Your quirk is the most amazing from the entire school. Yeah. There is no way the teacher will put a mark on your record just because you taught that worthless Deku a lesson. I didn't have the chance to talk to you about what happened before ... but young man, I'm really disappointed on you. All Might looked always unable to maintain eye contact with the teen. What you did was beyond evil, my boy. You had the chance to change. You could have been a great hero, could have. He was still going to be a hero. He will find a way. But now, I'm not sure you have any potential left. You tried to kill young Midoriya. You hurt a student beyond measure in your way of thinking. The blonde man sighed tiredly, not really feeling like it was worth saying anything more. Who did this to you? The former number one asked, changing the subject. Bakugo opened his mouth, wanting nothing more but to get the league, to make them pay for what they did to him. If you tell anyone about the league in Kendo, Shigaraki smirked, then we will kill your parents and that kid you are friends with. What was his name again? Kirishima, right. There are many ways to break someone's mind, and I would have a lot of fun breaking him. He closed his mouth shut. I don't remember. Yagi analyzed him for a moment before nodding and leaving, not really wanting to spend much more time with the kid. Bakugo felt hurt at how the man didn't even look at him. He didn't even ask if he was okay, didn't express any worry. Aizawa entered the room with a blank look. He crossed his arms and frowned when his eyes landed on the teen's hands. He quickly averted his eyes. Bakugo, I'm sure you were briefed about your condition. I'm sorry that this happened to you. We will find who did this. I promised you, the man said firmly. The worry in his voice made Bakugo feel a weird warmth on his chest. That aside, I need to talk about what you did. Oh, his homeroom teacher looked as excited as him to talk about this matter. Not only you harmed Midoriya and Kirishima really badly, but you broke into Nezu's office, took the confiscated gauntlet, and you still took an illegal drug to make your quirk stronger. The blonde froze. He ... he heard Ijuru. What? No, he was strong. His quirk was supposed to protect him. Was it because he used trigger? He knew it would make his explosion stronger, but ... he thought ... shit, he hurt shitty hair. He looked down, hands shaking. He hurt him. He didn't mean to. He really didn't. I'm really disappointed in you, kid. Aizawa's tone of voice made him flinch. Somewhat it hurt more to hear these words coming from Eraserhead than coming from All Might. We gave you a chance ... you could have gotten better, see your mistakes and be a better person. But now his homeroom teacher sighed tiredly. Now, I don't even know what I can do for you ... You could have killed 2 students. You took trigger. You violated the law over and over again. I can't protect you from what is to come, Bakugo. Eraserhead was visibly distressed. As much as he wanted to punish the blonde, he was still a child, one of his kids. He really wanted to give the teen a chance to change. He wasn't the only one at fault. The teachers should have known better. They neglected their students and encouraged his behavior. But Bakugo keeps making his situation worse. He aimed to kill. He stole. He took trigger. There was nothing else he could do. After they take care of your injuries, you will be transferred to the Villain Rehabilitation Center. You won't leave until they agree that you have changed for the better, and if you do any more harm or break the law again, you will be sent to Tartarus. I'm not a villain, he shouted, and immediately regretted it as he felt his throat and tongue hurt as the words left his mouth. Aizawa put a hand on his shoulder and squeezed it softly. I know, kid, but your actions aren't of a hero either. If I could, I would try to find another solution, but your fate isn't in my hands, kid. Bakugo looked down, teeth clenched in anger. Why was this happening to him? What did he do to deserve this? You know what you did. By the way, the man sighed, looking like he didn't believe what he was about to say. You have a visitor. Katsuki startled as the door opened abruptly. Kaken. He froze at hearing the familiar voice. Right on the entrance was Deku, tears in his eyes, his arms flesh exposed. The blonde flinched. He did that ... He tried to kill him ... He hurt him, broke him. Why? Why was the nerd here? Why was he crying? I was so worried when I saw them taking you to the hospital, the greenette said between sobs. Bakugo stared at him blankly. He tried to kill this bastard and he still came to see him? Why? All he has ever done was support you. You were like a brother to him. I'm so sorry, this is my fault. It has to be. You did nothing wrong, stupid nerd. I will find a way to fix your hands. I promise. The greenette looked at him with such determination. You until then I'm certain MA can help. Why you? Kaken, you're the best. I love you, Kaken. I wish you were my brother. I know you will be a great hero, Kaken. Bakugo felt his eyes burn. He was hurting, but it wasn't his hands, it was something in his chest. He felt like his heart was being squeezed. Kaken ... Even if you don't like me anymore, I still care about you. God, I hate you, the blonde said as tears fell down on his cheeks. I hate you so damn much. Why are you still being nice to me? Why don't you hate me as well? Deku looked at him like what he just said wasn't hurtful at all, like he already knew it. He smiled anyway and got closer. Bakugo flinched, expecting the nerd to finally explode, to finally fight back. But what he did instead was wrap his arms around him. I know, but I don't hate you. The blonde burst into tears, letting out an ugly sob. Why did these words felt so relieving to hear? Why was he hurting? Why was he crying? He shouldn't be crying. He doesn't understand. He really doesn't. Why was he still here? Deku tightened his embrace. I never hated you, the freckled boy whispered softly, which made the blonde sob even harder. He doesn't deserve this. He was tired. He doesn't know what to think, what to do. Why don't you take a swan dive off the roof? Maybe he should end it all if what he really did was wrong, if he has been wrong all this time. He won't be able to be a hero anymore. He was broken. Everyone is disappointed on him or hates him. He was weak, quirkless, worthless. Is that ... Is that how Deku felt? He felt like there was nothing more left for him. Like there was no point anymore. When they came out to see what the fuss was all about, they were surprised to find Bakugo being carried to an ambulance. The amount of blood made them flinch. Alright, what happened to their once classmate was bad, but the blonde will not receive their sympathies. He tried to kill their boyfriend and hurt Kirishima really badly. They should feel bad about this, but ... They actually felt a bit pleased at seeing the explosive boy hurt. After everything he had done, it felt good to see him cry in pain, and when they noticed his destroyed hands, they couldn't help but grin at each other. It was obvious that there was no way that such an injury would be easily healed. If they are lucky, the boy will never be able to use his quirk ever again. If Kirishima knew what they thought about the situation, he would say that they were being not manly at all, which they couldn't bring themselves to care, to be honest. What did piss Todoroki and Uraraka off beyond measure was Izuku's reaction to this. They knew the greenette had a heart of gold, but this was fucking ridiculous. He was horrified at seeing Bakugo's situation. He begged for Aizawa to be able to come with them, to make sure that Kaken would be alright. Both teachers and teens looked at him skeptically. As much as Ochako and Shoto loved their lover, they really wanted to scream at him right now. It seems like no matter what they say, the boy will always worry about his abuser. Maybe his reaction was because of Stockholm Syndrome due years of abuse. Izuku really needed therapy, because clinging to the person who hurt you for years and tried to kill you, it's obviously not fucking healthy. They asked their homeroom teacher to take them with him as well, because there is no way they're letting their boyfriend go alone. As soon as they arrive at the hospital, they see two ambulances parking. From one of them, the paramedics carried Bakugo's unconscious body, and the other carried Kirishima, who looked after the blonde with a blank look, like he didn't know how to feel about the teen's situation after what he had done. They waited outside Bakugo's room while Izuku talked to the blonde. They were glad when they heard the doctor confirm that the boy would never be able to use his quirk ever again. They just hope he gets a more harsh punishment after this scandal. Kirishima would have to be hospitalized, while Midoriya would have to keep a couple of days off from class. Most healing quirks couldn't heal entirely the damages, so the only thing they could do was lessen a bit his burns, enough to regain some skin so his flesh wouldn't be exposed. But it still left an ugly red scar. When their greenette walked off from the hospital room, they noticed the sadness in eyes. They sighed in annoyance. They made their way to present Mike's car in silence, Izuku sitting between them as they looked through the car's windows. Izuku had noticed their sour moods. He turned to address them, a strained smile on his face. I am sorry. I know I shouldn't worry about him after all he has done, but I can't help it. He looked down to his hands, fidgeting nervously. They both let out a defeated sigh. They just can't stay mad at him. Uraraka fidgeted closer to the greenette. Todoroki followed her example, doing the same at the boy's right side. We know, Izu. It's just ... You shouldn't have to deal with this. You are allowed to be angry, you know that, right? You are not obligated to forgive him, the brunette said, taking his hand on her and placing a small kiss on it. The bi-colored boy nodded at the other side. I know you are always trying to look at the good side of things, but sometimes there is none. I haven't forgiven father, and I doubt I ever will. You don't need to follow my example, but if you are going to insist on forgiving Bakugo, at least do it when he actually deserves it, because right now he has done nothing to deserve your forgiveness. The freckled boy blinked, a bit surprised. Shoto usually didn't speak this much at once. He had a point though. Izuku felt like he needed to forgive his abuser, because if he didn't, it felt like he wasn't being fair. That he wasn't a good person, but maybe, just this one time, he could afford to be foolish and take his time to think better about the matter. And please tell me you will be attending Hound Dog's therapy sessions, Uraraka said, exasperated. Looking between the two of them and seeing their concern, the boy couldn't see why he should refuse. He nodded slowly, with earned a sigh of relief from his lovers. Present Mike pretended to be too focused on the road to be paying attention to their conversation. There was this thing about Endeavor again. They really need to investigate the man, and they can't let another student suffer as Midoriya did. He never liked the man, too careless about what happens to civilians, short temperamental, and obsessive with being number one. Now that he got to be number one, though, he was beyond pissed off for not earning it the right way. The blonde wanted to straight up adopt all these children and keep them safe, but unfortunately, that's not how things work. He had to ask Principal Nedzu to make a background check on all the kids' parents and on the kids themselves. They can't let this keep going. Maybe this way they will finally get rid of Mineta Minoru. Izuku. Shinsu practically flew towards them when they got out of the car. As soon as his eyes locked on the greenette's injuries, the teen paled. In a second he was at the other teen's side holding his hand. Shit, are you okay? Does it hurt? Do you want me to make you go to sleep tonight? The lilac-haired teen asked, looking at the freckled boy like he was dying and not just badly injured. There were tears gathering on the edge of his eyes. Hichin, I am fine. It will leave scars, but I still can move properly. The greenette tried to give him a reassuring smile. When Shinsu could finally think straight, he finally noticed the looks he was getting from Uraraka and Todoroki. He realized that he was still holding his friend's hand and that he was really, really close to the greenette. Quickly he let go of his hand as he tried his best to hide his reddened face. Uraraka and Todoroki exchanged a look between them, nodding as they come to an agreement. They will make Shinsu's gay ass confess as soon as possible, because watching him pining over Izuku was extremely painful. No, because they were jealous, but ugh, it made them want to cry of how the teen would make hard eye at the greenette but chicken out every single time he was close to the boy. How did you know what happened? Izuku asked, oblivious to what happened. Hitoshi recomposed himself, scratching behind his head awkwardly. Aoyama told me, said he saw the fight or something. He said, feeling a bit guilty for not being there to stop Bakugo. There was a gasp from Todoroki when Shinsu mentioned Aoyama, who whispered, I knew it. It's like he's everywhere. The bicolored teen looked around like he was trying to find something. Eyes narrowing, he leaned into Uraraka. He is omnipresent, which had the brunette rolling her eyes at his nonsense. Unknown to any of them, Aoyama was watching from afar with a smile. He had been taking photos of the couple, sending to All For One. You could hear Inko awing from the principal's office. Izuku had convinced Shinsu to go back to his room. The boy needed some damn sleep. Now they were making their way to the dorms. They stopped as two figures made their way towards them on the corridor. Garia and Masahiro stopped in front of them, the latter looking down in shame. I'm so sorry. What I did was uncalled for, he apologized. Izuku was confused by a second before realizing that the other was probably talking about the test incident. I don't blame you, Izuku said softly. You can't control it, can you? He looked to Masahiro. Wrists. These marks, you are used to using quirk suppressant cuffs, isn't that right? Both his partners and Misao looked at him wide-eyed. Garia was looking at the blue-haired with a hurt expression. I've analyzed quirks enough to understand what happened. He smiled kindly. But the more you suppress your quirk, the more it will affect you when you use it. You know Toga Himeko from the League of Villains? Misao nodded slowly, still shocked. Do you think she was that crazy since forever? Because I'm pretty sure she wasn't ... if she had to pretend to not be herself, to hide a part of herself because people think her quirk is villainous. A quirk that involves drinking blood ... Just think. Holding yourself from using it for so long, to not satisfy your quirk's needs, it will mess you up. No wonder that she is so bloodthirsty now. She suppressed her urge for so long that now her quirk wants to make up for the lost time. He hopes that Himeko is doing well with the last bag of blood he had given to her. It must hurt not being able to control herself when she is starving. That's what happens to you, isn't it? Your quirk makes you want to gather people's information, see their weakness and manipulate them. The fact that it makes you feel so pleased when doing it means that you have been suppressing your quirk for years now ... You shouldn't have to do that. He stared sadly at the boy who looked away. If people haven't judged Toga Himeko for her quirk and instead just helped her out when she needed it, giving some blood supplements and let her drink it daily, she wouldn't have problems with her quirk. She would have been okay and wouldn't have become a villain. She wouldn't have snapped. I just wanted to be myself. Stop hiding who I truly am, he remembers the blonde girl saying in one of his visits to the League. I just wanted to be accepted. Misao, are you safe at home? Izuku dared to ask, noticing how he acted around adults. Misao went still, eyes widening in panic. How could he tell? He has been doing a good job at hiding the signs. He can't remember what he has done that could have given him away. The look of understatement in the greenette's eyes made his stomach turn. The boy knew what he was going through. They both have been through the same thing. One suffered by having a villainous quirk, the other by lacking one when he was younger. He couldn't lie his way out of this one, could he? He sighed tiredly. No, I'm not, he whispered, his calm composure not faltering despite feeling like he was about to break down. Izuku didn't let his smile falter even when he was upset by being right on his assumption. Let's talk with Aizawa-sensei and Mizune-sensei, okay? He extended his hand to the other, who looked at him with pleading eyes as he took his hand. The greenette looked at his girlfriend, tilting his head towards the boy who was beginning to shake. She understood the message and walked toward Masahiro's side, laying a hand on his shoulder and talking to him while they made their way to the teacher's lodge. Misao seemed to calm down with Uraraka's reassurances. Todoroki trailed before them, looking out to see if anyone was near. Dayton was accompanying them silently, giving a worried side glance towards her friend. Nizune was still up checking some papers when they knocked on the door. Izuku told her about his suspicions, Misao looking down the entire conversation as his friend held his hand. The teacher's expression went cold. She softly told them to take a sit while she gathered the other teachers, saying that if it was up to her, tomorrow Masahiro wouldn't ever hear from his parents ever again. Garia sat at his side, her eyes full of sorrow. You could have told me. I'm sorry. It's okay. You'll be okay. I'm here for you. She squeezed his hand. He leaned into her shoulder. Before Izuku and his partners left, Dayton threw a grateful look at the greenette. They were in Shado's room. They didn't want to wake Eri up, who was sleeping in Izuku's room. It was really nice of you by helping him out despite what he did to you, Uraraka said softly. Todoroki hummed in agreement. Izuku looked at her serenely, giving her a small sad smile. I don't blame him. I was telling the truth when I said that he looked away. UA may have made its mistakes, but just by seeing how Aizawa spoke today, I can tell that they are different from my previous teachers. He turned to smile at them, this time more genuine. I know they can help me and Misao, and luckily they can help Bakugo too one day. Both Shadow and Ochako enveloped him into a tight hug, intending to spend the rest of the night like this. Holding each other and happy at each other's company, they fell into a comfortable silence, praying that the other day things would be better. Something in the background caught Izuku's attention. He squinted, trying to focus. When the image stopped being blurry, he had to hold himself from groaning. Todoroki, he asked exasperatedly. Is that a shrine with Aoyama's photo on top? Maybe. Oh my god. SHH, don't say the Lord's name in vain. Ochako threw a pillow on his face and sat on him, holding the pillow on his face rather strongly. Izuku chuckled nervously. The image of Aoyama staring back at him. Just why? Bonus art. Masahiro, Misao, and Dayton Garia did these drawings at the beginning of the year, asked us. They woke tangled with each other. Todoroki had his left leg on Uraraka's nose, almost suffocating the girl. Izuku was under the two of them, not bothered at all at their weight combined together. Ochako was the one to gather the courage of getting up. She stretched, letting out a pterodactyl screech that startled the two boys. Holy shit, Shadow muttered wide-eyed. Are you related to someone with a dinosaur quirk? He asked suspiciously, earning a snort from his boyfriend. The girl rolled her eyes dramatically. No, Shadow, I'm not. Quit being a theorist for 1 second, won't you? The bi-colored teen pouted at her but dropped the subject, getting up as well. What do we do today? Aizawa-sensei gave everyone a couple of days off. The gravity girl wondered out loud. We could go back to bed ... and sleep the entire day, Todoroki said hopefully. Uraraka looked at him with an arched brow. We will feel like shit later for sleeping so much, you know that, right? ... Yes, but it's worth it, he muttered. She couldn't really argue against that, so she just shrugged. She went back to her boyfriend's bed and sat at the edge. Izu, I need to ask you something, Uraraka said softly. The greenette fidgeted slightly so he could face the brunette. He still has yet to gather the courage to get up. What is it? When are you going to tell Shinsu that you like him? She asked amusedly. Todoroki snorted as his boyfriend became a blushing mess and sputtered. He was about to deny that he had feelings for the boy, but his partners him too well. Lying would be of no use. Would you two be okay with that? He asked hesitantly. Sure. Besides, it's painful to watch you two pining over each other, she said with a grimace. The guy is head over heels for you. No, he is not. The greenette exclaimed, red in the face. Yes, he is. Shadow rolled his eyes. He looked like he wanted to devour you when you were on that quirkless sparring match that we had last week, he said bluntly. Izuku turned red. Putting his head on his hands, he let out a sound that resembles of a boiling kettle. Ochako giggled at this reaction. She approached him and placed a kiss on his hands. By the way, after what happened I've been meaning to ask you, Izu ... Do you want to change your hero name? Izuku looked at her confusedly. Why would I? Why, you gave it a different meaning, he said softly. The brunette's expression softened. Bringing a hand up, she caressed his cheek gently. I know, but I think you could change it to Deku then. It sounds better and you deserve to get called a nice name. I may have given it a new meaning, but I can tell you that it still hurts you when other people say it. He gulped. She was right. He was just so happy when Ochako had given his nickname a new meaning. It was the first time someone said the word Deku in a positive way. He thought that by making it his hero name he would feel better. He was the Deku who could do it. But when others called him this name, it still hurts him. He should have known better. Do you ... Do you think I can still change it? He asked quietly. Todoroki turned him and brought him into a tight, warm embrace, resting his head on his curly hair. I know that Aizawa would understand. Uraraka hummed in agreement. I'm sure he can sort it out. You'll just have to talk to him and we will be there with you. She wrapped her arms around him. I will do that. He nuzzled onto Shadow's chest and closed his eyes. Garia and Misao were waiting with the detective called Tsukashi Naomasa at the front of the gate from Aldera High School. They have been there. It's been about an hour. Both teens were distracting themselves talking with each other about Misao's current condition. Midnight had offered to be his foster parent now that his parents were in jail. He didn't expect any hero to offer taking him in, much less one of his teachers. He was glad Midoriya had helped him out despite Misao revealing to everyone about his past. Being here at Alder was one of his ways to apologize to the boy. Nedzu had asked both his and Garia's help to take the school down. Talking about the rat, they saw the mammal walking towards them exhausted. They never saw the principal look so tired. I apologize for taking so long to finally start this investigation. We were dealing with Midoriya Izuku's parents. The mouse smiled despite clearly being exhausted. Misao and Garia arched a brow, sharing a glance with each other. The white-haired girl could clearly sense the stress radiating from the big rat. The dark-skinned boy gave a brief looking on the mouse's recent memories to gather info. They exchanged a glance with each other once again, both coming to the same conclusion and turning to the mouse with an understanding look. "You got scolded, didn't you?" they both asked at the same time. They heard about what happened last night. They never thought they would ever see the day that Nedzu would shiver and look away, slightly embarrassed and horrified. Protective parents could be scary. "Let's focus on the matter ahead of us, shall we?" the rat said, walking in front of them. The three humans followed without questions. They didn't bother stopping to talk with the teachers. They went straight to the principal's office. The man was waiting for them. Looking at the eager expression on his face, he probably thought that Nedzu came here to evaluate his students' potential. Dayton and Masahiro rolled their eyes as if the principal of UA would waste his time with the school that bullied one of his favorite students. Ah yes, he was a troublemaker, always seeking attention, the man said disgustedly. "I have no idea how he managed to get into UA. I pity those who lost their chance to get in the hero course because of that waste of space," the man said, like he had the right to talk about the greenette like that. Nedzu hummed, taking a sip of his tea. He smiled dangerously. "I see, it looks like you have something against Midoriya." The man sighed. "It's more about his status. Is it even worth wasting time with the likes of him? People like him should just give up already. They would be doing anyone a favor if they just disappeared." "Are you perhaps telling me that quirkless people aren't worth living?" Nedzu asked, trying to keep the anger off his tone of voice. The teacher realized his slip-up and tried to correct himself. "That's not it. So what exactly were you trying to say?" the mammal asked sweetly. "You sir know more than anyone else that they are beneath us," the man said confidently. The mammal gave him a look that pretty much said, "Are you serious?" What did this man know about being the most intelligent animal in the world? "Actually, I think quirkless people are just as capable as any quirked person," he said calmly. "You can't be serious. They are useless." Nedzu tried his best to not go ballistic at the man. "Now sir, this is not why I'm here. I want to know if Midoriya has ever been abused by his peers and teachers." "Of course not," the man exclaimed, panicked. Nedzu looked up to the three humans. Two of them shook their heads. Garia just used her quirk to force the man's anxiety. "I would like to meet all the teachers," Nedzu asked in a tone that left no room for objections. The man gulped, looking at the others nervously. The three humans just stared at him, making him flinch. Nodding, he sent a message to all teachers to meet him in the teacher's lounge. So that was how they spent their time, asking questions to every teacher. Misao would call the out of their lies and tell what exactly had happened. Garia would make them panic and force to spill their secrets. They made Tsukashi's work way easier. Until now, every teacher was guilty of abusing Midoriya Izuku. All of them were going to face charges. Nedzu had managed to convince the principal to give him the list of the students who studied with Midoriya. He was going to pay a visit to every single one of them and make sure they had not made into any other hero school. The last teacher that they were to ask questions was a woman with white curly hair and green eyes. She looked ashamed. She didn't look at anyone in the eye. When Tsukashi asked the same questions, she answered them truthfully. I wanted to do something, anything, but I need this job. I have a daughter. My husband died, so I'm the only family she has," the woman said with saddened eyes. "This is the only place that was willing to hire me despite my mutation. Even so, they treat me like a freak. I tried talking to the principal, but he threatened to fire me if I ever brought Izuku up again in our meetings," the woman admitted guiltily. "I tended to his wounds when nobody was watching. I'm not a nurse, so I couldn't do much to help him," she said, wiping off a tear that threatened to fall. Tsukashi couldn't believe it. From everyone they have interviewed in this school, only a single person actually cared for Midoriya Izuku. "Oh, he so is going to destroy this place. If Nedzu didn't set it on fire first." He looked down at the mammal. The rat was fuming with anger. "Those poor fools, they won't even know what hit them." Shinsu stared at the door of his friend's room hesitantly. He hated seeing Izuku sad, so seeing him breaking down made his heart sink. He wanted to hug him back then when he fled the observation room, tell him how much he loves him and that he was there for him. But he couldn't do that in front of everyone, especially in front of Izuku's boyfriend and girlfriend. Nobody could tell, but he noticed the change in their behaviors. It's been a while. He knew since the beginning that those two also had feeling towards the greenette, so when both of them were clinging to the boy more than usual, he could tell that they were together. He won't lie, it broke his heart knowing that he won't ever have a chance with the boy. He wonders if that was how Kaminari felt when he rejected him. It hurts so much, but he can't help but be a little bit happy that his friends were happy together. He just wishes he could fit in, but that would be asking too much. Their friendship was already good enough. Uraraka was making her way to her boyfriend's room. He decided to stay in bed, so she went to make breakfast for him. She had a cup of coffee in one hand and a sandwich in the other. She stopped on her tracks when she noticed Shinsu in front of the door. He looked so sad. He was looking down, fists clenching. Was he about to confess? The teen turned to leave, probably giving up. Uraraka decided that she has to do something about it. Shinsu ... Do you by any chance have feelings towards Izuku? Uraraka asked, startling the lilac-haired who turned to look at her with wide eyes. The boy turned a dark shade of red. He looked at her horrified, like he couldn't believe that she found out about it. She laughed lightly. You're not exactly subtle, the girl commented, making the other sputter aggressively. After recovering himself, he looked down at his shoes sadly. It doesn't matter if I do anyway. His voice was tremulous. He is already dating both you and Todoroki. I would be just getting in the way, and I'm sure he doesn't like me back. At least Izuku was happy. That was good enough to him. As long as the greenette was happy, he could handle having his heart broken. Uraraka's expression softened. Oh, Shinsu ... You should tell him, she said softly. She didn't exactly feel surprised that he found out about their relationship. She gave up on trying to keep it a secret after last night. The boy looked at her baffled, his eyes wide and mouth agape. But he already has you too. And why you don't care that I like him? Shouldn't you be discouraging me? He asked, confused. She shrugs noncommittally. I wouldn't mind if he reciprocates your feelings. When he asked to date both of us, I was unsure at first. Sharing him with Todoroki made me feel like I was imposing. Like I should just give up on my feelings and let those two be happy together. But after a while, I found myself enjoying this relationship. It's different. I love Izuku, and if him being with both of us makes him happy, then I'm happy. I love Todoroki, but not the same way I love Izu. While I have romantic feelings towards Izuku, me and Todoroki have a queer platonic relationship. We love each other as friends. I never thought I could have such a deep friendship with someone, that I would feel comfortable sharing the same bed with him and not have that awkward tension between us. But I found myself really enjoying his presence. We both love Izuku and were more than happy to share him with each other. It was so good to have a friend from the opposite sex that you could be intimate with, without it being awkward or having any sexual tension. They cuddled and found comfort in each other. One thing they did a lot was talking about the boy they loved, things that they found adorable in the greenette. It was like talking about a show that you and your friend really liked and would point out all the things you liked about it that made you fall in love with it. Shinsu stared at the girl in awe. The way how she explained their relationship without fear of being judged and how she felt so happy talking about it made him open his mind. So ... You wouldn't mind if I... He trailed off unsure. Not at all. Go for it. If he accepts your feelings, which I know he will since I saw him giving you hard eyes a lot of times. Hitoshi flushed at that. He was looking at him that way. Did he really have a chance? Oh my god, how could have been so dense? Then I'll be more than happy to welcome you to our relationship. If you want to, you could try doing the same thing Todoroki and I have. It's platonic. There are no romantic feelings between us. To be honest, my friendship with him is the best friendship that I've ever had. I loved Sui, but I tried to be a bit touchier with her and she thought I had feelings for her. She scratched behind her neck awkwardly. I just want to express my love, you know. But people nowadays think that you need to be engaged in a romantic relationship to say I love you to someone, like there is only one type of love. I want to hug my friends, to tell them how much I love them, share the same bed and cuddle without any malice. I've always been a touchy person, so it's hard for me to suppress that side of me. The brunette trailed off sadly. Shinsu found himself sympathizing with her. He knows how she feels. He has the same problem. He has always been a touchy person. The only reason he didn't show that side of his was because everyone avoided him because of his quirk, or people would make it clear that it wasn't normal for a friend to be so intimate. It wasn't normal to be so affectionate with the friends you loved. You can only do that sort of thing with your boy, girlfriend. It never made sense to him. Thinking about it, if things went right, he would get a boyfriend and a deeper friendship with his friends. He already enjoyed being friends with both Uraraka and Todoroki. They weren't loud and were very understanding about his quirk since the beginning. He felt at ease in their presence. The way Ochako described her platonic relationship with Todoroki interested him. Uraraka perked up at seeing Todoroki. He just took breakfast and wanted to go back to cuddling his boyfriend. She gave the cup of coffee and the sandwich to the lilac-haired and tackled Shoto into a hug. The boy was unfazed by the surprise attack. His only reaction was to hug her back. He noticed the lilac-haired boy behind her and arched a brow. Did he finally admit that he has feelings for Izuku? Am I that fucking obvious? He put his head on his hands, trying to hide how red his face was at the moment. Yup, the brunette said, popping out the pee. Shinsu groaned into his hands. He wouldn't be surprised if everyone in the school knew about his feelings after this. I wanted cuddles, but it can wait, I guess, Todoroki said, shrugging. Go on, we will be waiting outside. Hitoshi looked at them. Both Uraraka and Todoroki were giving his encouraging smiles. He felt a warm feeling in his chest. With a look of determination, he opened the door. The teen expected to see his friend in bed, but instead, he saw Izuku was standing right in front of the door with a red face. Oh my god, did you hear all of that? Shinsu asked in disbelief. Izuku just chuckled nervously. Why yes, well, I like you too, he said shyly. Hitoshi just gaped at him as Uraraka cackled in the background. At the Night Eye Agency, the case has been closed, Sir, Night Eye said tiredly. But sir, they can't just close it. We were so close to finding Chisaki Kai, Mirio protested. No, the case it's closed because. The man frowned, thinking if he should really share this with his pupil. Sir Night Eye, what is it? The blonde boy asked worriedly. He let out a defeated sigh. Chisaki Kai has been delivered at our door yesterday in the evening. He was tied up with both arms and legs cut off. We have been interrogating him ever since, but the man won't say a thing about the trigger whereabouts. He looked terrified. Tagata's eyes widened in horror. Who would do something like this? What about the rest of the Shy Hasekai's members? He gulped, afraid of the answer. The green-haired man fixed his glasses, taking a more serious stance. All dead. He didn't have the heart to explain all the details to his pupil. He couldn't bring himself to tell how each member has been tortured, cut to pieces, their organs laying on the floor when they arrived at their location. Whoever did this was dangerously powerful. They have to keep an eye open on this mysterious entity that took care of the 8 precepts of death. He had a bad feeling about this.